They had already laid down spike strips across the road, and 2 heavy-duty trucks blocked the metal factory's gate. Around the area were reinforced concrete walls. This was a complete trap. Escape seemed impossible. Blood Wolf's members had set up all kinds of cover on the factory road, all armed and ready, waiting for Jiang Zhuing's group to run out of supplies and be forced into a desperate breakout. But what they didn't expect was that, after just 2 hours, the warehouse door suddenly opened, and a ragged-looking minibus burst out like a prehistoric beast. "Shit, they're charging out. Looking to die. Weapons ready, boys." The Blood Wolf members shouted like madmen. Even if they weren't all superpowered, they were all ruthless thugs. After joining Blood Wolf, they became people with vested interests. As long as you were vicious and strong, you could rise through the ranks, abuse women, torture slaves at will. After the apocalypse, all the madness and ugliness of human nature had been fully unleashed. Since its founding, the Blood Wolf organization has been plundering. They not only hunted mutant beasts and gathered food but also looted other survivors. Because Blood Wolf was so powerful, the entire industrial park fell under their control in a very short time, and all resources came into their hands. As for the survivors captured by Blood Wolf, a few good-looking women were kept, but most of the men were killed. Some were forced to collect food, gasoline, and other supplies. Once they were squeezed dry of value, they were also killed. Blood Wolf's team never kept any burdens. This brutal expansion method was very effective in the early days of the apocalypse. With more food and beast meat, they could exchange them with the military for a large number of weapons. Plus, Blood Wolf had previously looted the local police station in the industrial park, which meant they had far more guns than Jiang Zhuing's team. They had 19 combat members, but only 2 of them were ability users. One was Blood Wolf, the other was a woman wearing a leather jacket and leather pants. The other 17 all had guns. Among them, 1 light machine gun, 2 compact submachine guns used by Chinese armed police, 3 Type 95 automatic rifles, and 2 almost obsolete Type 56 semi-automatic rifles. These 8 guns were all obtained through trades with the military and armed police. In addition, from the police station they looted, they got 9 pistols, Type 54s and Type 64s. In total, 17 guns. Besides that, they also had a few bulletproof vests, worn by Blood Wolf, the woman in leather pants, and a few core combat members. The scariest thing about Blood Wolf was that they had many people and many guns. At the beginning of the apocalypse, a person with a gun and good aim could be even more dangerous than someone with a superpower. A team of 19 was already a huge force, equivalent to 2 enhanced squads. Even in a military battle, they'd be enough to do a lot. Don't forget, back during the Long March, the famous charge across the looting bridge, with its 13 iron chains over a rushing river, only used 22 warriors. Because of all those guns, Blood Wolf was fully confident in taking down Jiang Zhuing. Jiang Zhuing's group only had 2 automatic weapons and 3 pistols total. When Jiang Lusher charged out, Blood Wolf was behind cover, sitting in a chair, wearing headphones. He immediately saw Jiang Lusher and Jiang Zhuing in the passenger seat. Seeing Jiang Zhuing, Blood Wolf's eyes lit up. "So you couldn't hold back, huh? Driving a minibus trying to get out of my territory? You're just asking to die." Blood Wolf stood up and ripped off his headphones. "Shoot! But don't shoot Jiang Zhuing. Turn that little bastard into Swiss cheese first." To absorb abilities, Blood Wolf needed the person alive. If they died, the energy would quickly dissipate, and the effect of absorbing it would drop sharply. Avoid attacking Jiang Zhuing if possible, but if she got hit, as long as it wasn't a fatal shot, it was still acceptable. Got it. Blood Wolf's gang of desperados, upon hearing his command, all jumped out of cover and opened fire on the minibus. Rat-a-tat-tat. Pistols, rifles, submachine guns, flames burst out from all of them. The sound of gunfire was deafening. In an instant, the minibus's windshield was shaking violently. Crack, crack, crack. Countless small cracks spread across the windshield. Tiny glass shards the size of rice grains flew everywhere. But the windshield didn't shatter completely. Jiang Lusher continued driving the minibus straight ahead. Beep beep beep. The starseed voice sounded in Jiang Lusher's mind. Front bulletproof glass durability decreased, durability reduced by 7%. Jiang Lusher stayed calm. He floored the gas pedal, and the base vehicle's speed surged. What the hell? What's going on? Blood Wolf's members were stunned. That minibus had bulletproof glass? Even bulletproof glass only provides limited protection. If it takes sustained heavy fire, especially from light machine guns or rifles, and if one spot is hit continuously, it can still be penetrated. For example, many robbers attacking banks or jewelry stores smashed bulletproof glass with iron hammers. Keep firing. Shoot. Blood Wolf kicked over his chair, grabbed a nearby member's light machine gun, and began unloading bullets furiously at Jiang Liusher's position. By now, the base vehicle had reached a speed of 100 km per hour, and ahead was a spike strip. Blood Wolf had taken over the industrial park. Welding spike strips was easy for them. They had made plenty essential tools for robbery. Now one was laid out just in front of the cover, but the minibus didn't slow down. It charged straight over it. Shit. Is he insane? Blood Wolf's eyes were bloodshot. Hitting a spike strip at that speed should definitely blow the tires and flip the vehicle. Also, how the hell did that vehicle accelerate so fast in such a short time? In a split second, Blood Wolf didn't have time to think. The base vehicle had already run over the spike strip. Crack, clatter, crash. The 5-meter-long spike strip, with over 1,000 nails longer than a finger welded on, was crushed beneath the base vehicle. Nails burst off like bullets, scattering everywhere, bouncing off the metal body of the van. But the minibus kept charging forward like an enraged giant rhino, unhindered, heading straight for the enemy's position. Damn it, is that a tank? Blood Wolf's gang stared in disbelief. Bulletproof glass on the front, charging straight into the fire of more than a dozen guns, tires crushing the spike strip like tank treads. At that moment, Blood Wolf suddenly felt a strong sense of danger. He saw a black cannon barrel extend from the front of the vehicle. Scatter! Blood Wolf shouted. They had already suffered once before. Everyone knew how terrifying that cannon was. Its power rivaled heavy artillery. This thing was seriously a tank. Boom! The air cannon fired. A terrifying shockwave blasted toward the enemy's cover. Blood Wolf's members scattered. A massive explosion followed. Dozens of empty metal drums, blocks, and sandbags were blown apart by Jiang Liusher's shot. One Blood Wolf member, trying to flee, got hit in the head by flying metal. His skull burst open, and he fell to the ground, instantly dead. At that moment, Jiang Liusher, fully focused, instantly tracked where every enemy was running. The air cannon's weakness was its slow charge time. Plus, the Blood Wolf group had already learned to avoid that black barrel, so they scattered early. Though the blast was powerful, it only killed one person, by shrapnel. Now many Blood Wolf members had jumped into off-road vehicles. All sunroofs were open, one person driving, one person standing and shooting from the top. Jiang Liusher slammed the brakes and turned the wheel hard. Base vehicle made a 90-degree turn. Screech. At over 100 km per hour, the center of gravity shifted forward, the rear end swung out, a beautiful drift. Jiang Liusher hit the gas again, and the base vehicle roared forward like a wild beast. Many of the Blood Wolf gang had just started their engines, and stood there in shock. Damn, a minibus can drift like that? Forget a minibus, even their off-road vehicles wouldn't dare try drifting. The center of gravity is too high, easy to flip. Only low-chassis sports cars can handle that kind of move, and even then, only on dirt roads. Is this really a minibus? It's more like a tank and a sports car combined. At that moment, Jiang Liusher made a sharp turn, aligning the driver's side of the vehicle with the Blood Wolf members. He had opened a small slit in the left window, and the barrel of the Type 81 rifle was sticking out through that slit. That turn was made precisely to aim the gun barrel at the Blood Wolf members. After his brain evolution, every driving maneuver Jiang Liusher made, gear shifting, braking, gas, clutch, was as smooth as flowing water, with no error at all. It was absolutely at professional racer level. In addition, he had the starseat assisting in controlling the minibus. The minibus felt like part of his own body, he controlled it as easily as moving his arms. With the enhanced performance of the minibus, forget drifting, he could pull off even more complex moves. As the minibus accelerated sideways, due to the angle, Jiang Liusher's entire body remained shielded behind the glass. Only that narrow slit was exposed. Even if a bullet came through it, it wouldn't hit him. The vehicle sped ahead. Blood Wolf's off-road cars started moving too. As the vehicles crossed paths, the scene froze for a moment in Jiang Liusher's eyes. A man in his 30s with a vicious face and a greasy forehead seemed to appear right in front of Jiang Liusher. One hand on the wheel, one finger on the trigger. Bang! A single shot. Jiang Liusher only fired once, using the automatic rifle like a semi-automatic. That one bullet, in the instant the two vehicles passed each other, crossed 10 meters of open air and struck the windshield of the off-road vehicle. Crash! The entire windshield shattered instantly. The bullet pierced through the glass and went straight into the man's forehead. One shot, head exploded. The power of the Type 81 rifle is terrifying. It can punch through a steel helmet. How could flesh and blood stop it? A third of the man's skull was blown off, and the bullet didn't stop, it shattered the other side's window too. Blood and brain matter sprayed across the entire driver's cabin. One bullet passed through the off-road vehicle, the driver was killed instantly. The car lost control, swerved wildly, and smashed into a concrete wall. At that speed, a crash like that usually means total destruction. The gunner in the car realized the danger and immediately jumped out. But just as he leapt, still mid-air, Jiang Lushur seized the moment, turned the steering wheel slightly to align the left window, pulled the trigger again, bang. Another single bullet. The Blood Wolf member was still in the air when it pierced through his left chest. With a dull thud, his heart and lungs were completely shattered. The bullet blew out a spray of blood and exited from his back, leaving a hole the size of a bowl. Thump! He hit the ground like a dead dog. Alive when he jumped, a corpse when he landed. The Type 81, hit a limb, lose the limb. Hit the chest, guaranteed death, no exceptions. Against the Type 81, the human body is as weak as paper. If you compared human flesh to steel, it's not even 1 millimeter thick, worse than a helmet's surface. 2 shots, 2 kills. Jiang Lushur did it while driving, accelerating and drifting, making a bulky minibus look cooler than a sports car. Shooting from the side while driving, and still having that level of accuracy, is he even human? Blood Wolf's own face changed when he saw this. He had thought Jiang Lushur was just an ordinary man, and Jiang Zhuiying was the real threat. But now he realized, Jiang Lushur was a total monster. Was he a special forces soldier? Even the most elite unit in the world probably couldn't do what Jiang Lushur just did. Boss, what do we do? Blood Wolf's men were starting to panic. They were convinced Jiang Lushur was either ex-special forces or an elite African mercenary. They had never imagined this kind of combat style. He was like a war god. The minibus was bulletproof. Jiang Lushur was hiding inside, giving them no angle to shoot back. They could only take the hits. Blood Wolf gritted his teeth and said in a deep voice, "Forget Jiang Zhuiying, throw grenades. Blow up that vehicle." He had been eyeing Jiang Zhuiying's power, but now they were taking too many losses. At this rate, even if they killed half their people, they might not take Jiang Lushur down. Getting her power wasn't worth it anymore. Grenades? Got it. After being beaten like this, the Blood Wolf members were furious. So what if your vehicle is bulletproof, can it stop a grenade? High-powered grenades could blast more than just glass. If one exploded under the car, the whole thing could flip over. Flip the car, and your shooting stops. Move! Blow them up! Blood Wolf roared. Several members rushed at Jiang Lushur like sharks smelling blood. Some used off-road vehicles for cover, approaching fast from the minibus's blind spots. Others lay in wait, just waiting to throw a grenade as the minibus passed. One Blood Wolf member with a mustache and slanted triangle-shaped eyes climbed onto the container of a big truck. He hid behind it and saw Jiang Lushur's minibus heading in his direction. "Rabbit's here. Time to take you out." Triangle Eyes pulled out 3 grenades from his pocket. They were tied together, with the pins connected. It was a homemade triple grenade bundle. 3 grenades exploding together, the power was obvious. His face twisted with cruelty. "Drive all you want, let's see you dodge this." "They're here." He crouched behind the container, making sure he gave no angle for the minibus to shoot him. Jiang Lushur's gun barrel was only on the driver's side, and the window was barely open. The firing angle was very limited. Triangle Eyes was in a total blind spot for Jiang Lushur's line of fire. He was confident in success. As the minibus got closer, he yanked the pins and threw the grenade bundle straight at the driver's side. He was well hidden. Even the sharpest observer wouldn't spot someone behind a truck container as the vehicle sped by. But Jiang Lushur, with his evolved brain, had ridiculously powerful awareness, eyes and ears catching everything. Even though he was looking forward, the corner of his eye spotted a dark shape flying toward him. His eyes flicked sideways, immediately identifying it, 3 grenades bundled together. He realized they were coming straight for the left side of the driver's seat. Such an intense explosion would produce a terrifying shockwave. Even if the bulletproof glass held, the shockwave would shoot through the narrow window slit, injuring or killing him. Jiang Lushur remained calm. He raised his gun, focused to the maximum. Instantly, the grenade seemed to freeze midair, like a movie in slow motion. Rat-a-tat. Jiang Lushur pulled the trigger, burst fire, bullets hit the grenade. Boom! The grenade exploded in midair. Triangle Eyes had been smiling triumphantly, then saw a blast of fire erupt toward him. His face froze. Buzz. His brain rang. His ears exploded with blood as the shockwave shattered his eardrums. What happened? That was his final thought. His body flew off the truck container like a rag doll. He saw the world spinning, and died without ever understanding what had happened. Blood Wolf witnessed the entire scene. When the explosion lit up the sky and smoke burst out, his eyes almost popped out of his head. Watching Jiang Lushur drive while detecting a grenade flying in from a side blind spot, then shoot at midair? Unbelievable. Boss, what do we do now? The Blood Wolf members were all panicking. Their team had always been nearly unstoppable, no other squad in the area could match their strength. But now, Jiang Lushur, just an ordinary man, was using only a vehicle and an automatic rifle to suppress them so badly they couldn't even lift their heads. Boss, if you don't step in now, the brothers won't be able to hold on much longer. Another Blood Wolf member shouted. Blood Wolf frowned. He had 2 abilities, and in terms of strength, he was the strongest among his group. But his powers were meant for close combat, whether against ability users or armed opponents, he wasn't afraid. Even against Jiang Zhuiying, he had confidence. But telling him to go fight a heavily armored tank, traveling over 100 kilometers per hour and drifting around? No matter how strong he was, he couldn't do anything. Like a mouse trying to pull a turtle, he couldn't even find a way to attack. Against Jiang Lushur's minibus, all Blood Wolf could do was shoot with an automatic rifle or throw grenades. He couldn't do much more than his men. Attack the right side? His gun can only shoot to the left. As long as we go for the right side of the vehicle, he can't fight back. The driver's seat was on the left, and the Type 81 rifle was mounted at the left window. Jiang Lushur indeed couldn't shoot to the right. The right side? Everyone, go! The Blood Wolf members suddenly realized. They jumped into their SUVs, Hummers, Range Rovers, stepped on the gas, and rushed toward the right side of the minibus. Before the apocalypse, the industrial park never lacked high-end vehicles, and the Blood Wolf members had picked the best-performing ones. For SUVs approached from the right like a pack of wolves hunting a bison. Bullets from automatic rifles rained down on the vehicle's windows. Crack, crack, crack. The bulletproof glass developed large spiderweb cracks. Take them down. 2 Blood Wolf members popped their heads out from the tops of the SUVs. Their positions were far from Jiang Lushur's firing angle, otherwise, they wouldn't dare show their heads. That rifle was like the gaze of death. Once he aimed at you, you were dead the next second. Each held an automatic rifle in one hand and a grenade in the other. They bit off the grenade pins with their teeth and aimed at the right side door of the minibus, ready to throw. And just then, clack! The side door of the minibus opened, and a graceful figure stood at the entrance. It was Jiang Zhuiying. She wore a bulletproof vest, holding a heavy shield over 1 meter tall in her left hand. Her beautiful eyes peeked out from the observation slit in the shield. The Blood Wolf members saw the smile at the corner of her lips, like a little demon. Crackle! Blue electric currents pierced through the air like purple snakes, striking the 2 Blood Wolf members who had poked their heads out of the SUV roofs. Though the current wasn't strong enough to burn their bodies, it was more than enough to paralyze them. Clunk! Paralyzed, both men dropped their grenades, already armed, right through the SUV sunroofs. The drivers heard the clunk and turned to see round grenades bouncing on the leather seats. The soft seats made the grenades bounce, and the pins were already pulled. Shit! The drivers were terrified, but trapped inside the SUVs, they could do nothing. Boom! Boom! The 2 grenades exploded inside the vehicles. Both SUVs burst into flames. The drivers were instantly blown to pieces, then burned to charcoal. All the SUV windows shattered. The roofs were blown off. The vehicles lost control and slammed into the concrete wall, triggering even bigger explosions. In a flash, 4 Blood Wolf members were dead. Adding the ones Jiang Lushur had already killed, nearly half of the Blood Wolf members were now gone. With so many guns and so much ammo used up, and this many deaths, Blood Wolf was furious. And just then, rat-a-tat-tat, the sound of a light machine gun rang out. 1 Blood Wolf member was caught off guard and gunned down. And right after, boom! Boom! 2 more grenades exploded, flipping over one of Blood Wolf's SUVs. Blood Wolf's heart sank. Another ambush. He looked over, clearly the attack came from the warehouse. That's right, besides Jiang Zhuiying and that guy in the minibus, there were still 2 more ability users inside the warehouse. Though those 2 weren't very strong, showing up at this moment only made things worse. Boss, should we retreat? 1 Blood Wolf member asked shakily. Some were already thinking about running. Even though they were all ruthless, they were still afraid of death. They only stuck with Blood Wolf for profit. Loyalty? That was a joke. Originally, they thought attacking Jiang Lushur and Jiang Zhuiying would be easy, kill them, get their weapons and supplies, simple and profitable. But now? They were terrified. No more rewards, and half their team was dead. They had no more fighting spirit. No one dared to approach the minibus now. Bullets couldn't pierce the bulletproof glass, and grenades had to be thrown at close range. But the vehicle was moving at over 100 kilometers per hour, throwing accurately from a distance was nearly impossible. And once you got close, left or right, death awaited. Retreat. Blood Wolf resisted the urge to shoot the cowardly soldier. Since the apocalypse began, everything had gone his way. He enjoyed his power, especially after killing the former leader. Blood Wolf felt like his life was reaching its peak. He had the power to decide life and death. Endless women. Everyone trembled before him. He even dreamed that, as he got stronger, he could build an empire of his own. But now, against Jiang Lushi, a normal man with a modified car, he was completely helpless. He wanted to tear Jiang Lushi apart, but he knew the smart move now was to retreat. If he insisted on fighting, the rest of his team would betray him and run. His entire empire would collapse. Retreat. Blood Wolf roared. Even with the gunfire all around, his voice carried far. All the Blood Wolf members heard him. In truth, only 9 were left. Most had already been wiped out by Jiang Zhuing and Jiang Liushi's team. Hearing Blood Wolf shout, Jiang Lushi smirked. Retreat? Did you ask me if I agree? The gate of the special metals factory was still blocked by large trucks at this moment. Since retreat had already been decided, the first thing to do was to move these trucks. Several Blood Wolf members abandoned their original SUVs and rushed onto the trucks blocking the gate. There were 3 large trucks in total, all Dongfeng Tianlong trucks used in the industrial park to transport steel, with a 40-ton load capacity, followed by 13-meter-long semi-trailers, with 22 truck tires. They looked like massive beasts. A Blood Wolf member had just jumped into the cab of the heavy truck, but Blood Wolf shoved him aside. I'll do it. Blood Wolf dominantly sat in the driver's seat and started the vehicle. Compared to such a heavy truck, even the minibus looked like a small toy. What if it collided with the minibus? Even if the minibus was bulletproof, getting hit by this heavy truck would definitely crush it like an iron pancake. But there was a heavy cannon mounted in front of the minibus. Blood Wolf had experienced the power of that cannon. If it fired again, even if the truck itself wasn't destroyed, the windshield in front would definitely be blasted into fragments, and as the driver, Blood Wolf would be blown to pieces. A frontal collision was suicide. He could only strike from the side. Hit the minibus from the right and split it in half. With his team suffering heavy losses, Blood Wolf's eyes were bloodshot. He had made up his mind to retreat, but now, he was unwilling. Run that kid over. Even if Jiang Zhuing doesn't die and has only 1 breath left, I can still absorb her ability. Blood Wolf had long coveted Jiang Zhuing's power. His current ability was physical, focused on close combat, lacking long-range attacks. If paired with Jiang Zhuing's power, he could attack both near and far. It would be perfect. He shifted gears, stepped hard on the accelerator, and drove the heavy truck forward. Just the trailer was 13 meters long. The cargo on board hadn't been fully unloaded. Such a heavy truck had enough impact to knock down even concrete walls. However, right after starting the truck, Blood Wolf suddenly heard the da-da-da sound of gunfire, a burst from the Type 81 rifle, and the sound of bullets hitting metal. Blood Wolf's heart jumped. He immediately ducked under the steering wheel to avoid getting hit by bullets. The windshield of the heavy truck wasn't shattered, which made sense, because the cab wasn't facing the minibus directly, so there was no reason for it to be hit. Even so, a strong sense of danger surged up in Blood Wolf's heart. Something extremely dangerous was about to happen. Something that could take his life. What was this? Blood Wolf suddenly looked toward the right rearview mirror. In the mirror, he saw that the several hundred-liter fuel tank was leaking. That earlier burst from Jiang Liushi's rifle had hit the fuel tank of the truck. The fuel tank of Jiang's base vehicle was bulletproof, but the Dongfeng Tianlong truck didn't have that feature. Its thin iron shell was no match for automatic rifle bullets. It was riddled with holes now. Normally, just shooting a fuel tank wouldn't cause an explosion, because there's little air inside and diesel ignites at a high temperature. But once it starts leaking and a lot of air gets inside, then shooting it again, bullets striking metal, could easily cause an explosion. And this was a several hundred-liter tank. The explosion would be massive. Damn it. Blood Wolf felt an immense crisis. He roared, his entire body bulging with muscles. The shirt on his upper body burst apart from the pressure. A large patch of tough red fur burst out from his skin. His eyes began to turn green, and sharp fangs grew out from his gums. He had transformed into a red-furred werewolf. His body and face still looked human, but he had taken on the characteristics of a wolf. This was Blood Wolf's special ability. To be precise, it was the power of the previous Blood Wolf. The organization's name came from this power. Later, the second-generation Blood Wolf took advantage of the original one being gravely injured in a battle with a mutant beast. He killed him, devoured his power, and took his place. Now, with a massive threat approaching, Blood Wolf completed his transformation. Just as he changed form, another burst of bullets came, this time mixed with the blue electric currents fired by Jiang Zhuiying. The bullets hit the Dongfang Tianlong's fuel tank, and it ignited on the spot. The entire tank began to burn. Boom! A massive explosion followed. Fire serpent swept out from the lower right side of the cab, swallowing the front passenger seat. The Blood Wolf member whom Blood Wolf had pushed away earlier let out a miserable scream, his whole body turned into a ball of fire. At the same time, Blood Wolf let out a wolf-like howl. He leaped straight out from the driver's seat and slammed into the windshield. The 2.5-meter-wide windshield shattered instantly under the impact. Crash! Shards of glass and flames burst into the cab. The entire cockpit became a sea of fire, and Blood Wolf jumped out from the flames, with the red fur on his back scorched and curled. "Kid, I'm gonna kill you." After transforming, Blood Wolf became extremely aggressive, even irrational. He charged directly at Jiang Liusher's minibus. Huh? What is that? Seeing a red-furred werewolf charging at his vehicle, Jiang Liusher was shocked. He saw clearly that the werewolf had come from the heavy truck's driver's seat, and that meant it was Blood Wolf. Blood Wolf? His power is to transform into a werewolf. Jiang Liusher was a bit surprised. Since the apocalypse, human cells had mutated and genes evolved, creating all kinds of abilities. Transforming into a werewolf was clearly a higher-tier power. Regular abilities, like Yu Ji's speed boost, Zhang Hai's finger strength, or Sun Quan's wall crawling, were nothing in comparison. The werewolf had strength, speed, terrifying burst power, resistance to physical damage, and claws. One ability that included all strengths. In close combat, such an opponent would be a nightmare. Even in a gunfight, Blood Wolf wouldn't be scared. Werewolves were too fast to aim at. If you missed the first 2 shots, he'd already be in your face. And Jiang Liusher noticed something else. Blood Wolf had a kind of instinctive danger response. He could sense being targeted before shots were fired. But none of that mattered. Jiang Liusher was in a base vehicle. No matter how strong you are in melee, I'll just ram you flat. Jiang Liusher yanked the steering wheel, floored the gas, and the base vehicle roared forward, charging straight at Blood Wolf. The werewolf body had extraordinary speed. Blood Wolf's upper arms extended, his fingers turned into claws. On all fours, he ran quickly across the ground. Although Blood Wolf was fast, it was impossible for him to dodge bullets. No matter how fast an ability user is, compared to the supersonic speed of bullets, they are far too slow. However, while he couldn't dodge bullets, he could dodge the barrel. By watching the direction of the barrel and making early predictions, Blood Wolf had used this many times in close combat to rip gun-wielding enemies to pieces with his claws and fangs. After transforming, Blood Wolf became extremely cruel. Even his brain was affected, becoming more beast-like. The people he killed almost never had an intact piece of flesh left. Jiang Liusher held the steering wheel with one hand and the automatic rifle with the other. He believed that even a werewolf was still flesh and blood. One bullet would still be enough to disable him. But Blood Wolf was extremely alert and gave Jiang Liusher no chance. At the minibus window, the firing angle of the Type 81 rifle was very narrow, and Blood Wolf never entered that firing range. As for the air cannon, even less so, its muzzle could barely turn. Blood Wolf never stayed directly in front of it and always kept at an offset angle. Can't hit him. Jiang Liusher stepped on the gas for a head-on collision, but just as the minibus was about to hit, Blood Wolf jumped high and actually leaped over the 2-meter-tall minibus. Scrape! 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 The sound of claws scraping metal came from the minibus roof. Blood Wolf had landed on top and was running over it. But at a relative speed of over 150 kilometers per hour, he couldn't stay on top. Even if he stopped, it wouldn't help. The steel roof of the minibus wasn't something his claws could tear open. Thud! Blood Wolf, unable to adapt to the speed of the moving roof, fell and rolled off. Bang! He hit the ground hard, but even at over 100 kilometers per hour, he wasn't injured. As soon as he landed, he jumped up again. By now, the minibus had already sped over 100 meters away. At that speed, it was too fast. Jiang Liusher made a hard turn of the steering wheel, executing an extreme high-angle drift, 2 consecutive 90-degree turns. The rear of the vehicle whipped like a tail. At such high speed, pulling off such turns was unimaginably stressful on the tires. And for a high center of gravity minibus, it should have flipped, but Jiang Liusher's driving made it happen. Seeing the shocking tire marks on the concrete ground, Blood Wolf's subordinates shuddered. Was this still a car from Earth? Was this still a human from Earth? Do special forces have such skills? By now, all of Blood Wolf's men thought of Jiang Liusher as special forces or an elite mercenary. That vehicle was seen as a super-modified military car. Reaching speeds over 100 kilometers per hour in a narrow factory? Even pro racers might not pull that off. All the Blood Wolf members kept their distance, watching the battle. If it went badly, they'd flee. If Blood Wolf won, they'd return to share the spoils. But Blood Wolf trying to take out that minibus was like a tiger trying to bite the sky, no way to even begin. Whether his claws, fangs, or strength, none of it meant anything in front of the base vehicle. You coward hiding in the car. If you're tough, get out and fight me one-on-one. Blood Wolf roared from not far away. His voice was terrifying, like a true wolf's howl. Jiang Lushi heard it clearly. TSK. Turned into a wolf and your IQ dropped too? Trying to drag me down to your level? Keep dreaming. Jiang Lushi replied as he stomped the gas again, charging. In truth, Blood Wolf couldn't do anything to Jiang Lushi, but the reverse was also true. Jiang Lushi couldn't do anything to Blood Wolf. His automatic rifle only covered the left side, with less than a 90-degree shooting angle. As for the air cannon, no chance either. Blood Wolf would never allow it. If it continued like this, Jiang Lushi wouldn't be able to win. Should I open the door? Jiang Zhuiying suddenly asked. In her left hand she held a military-issued bulletproof shield, in her right, the high-priced chained samurai sword. Are you confident? Jiang Liushi's expression turned serious. Jiang Zhuiying's electric current couldn't pass through the bulletproof glass. To attack, she would need to open the door. I'm not afraid of him. I'm afraid I won't be able to stop him from jumping onto the minibus. Then he'll go after you. Against bullets, the shield was enough. But Blood Wolf's speed was too fast. He might use his agility to break into the vehicle while the door is open. Jiang Zhuiying was a well-known ability user in Jinling. She was confident in her strength, she only worried about Jiang Lushi. Jiang Lushi paused slightly. Opening the door was a gamble with high risk. Even if he wanted to take that gamble, it wasn't the right time. No matter how strong Blood Wolf was, he was still flesh and blood, with limited stamina. And the minibus had 8 tons of fuel as backup. With a 10 cubic meter modified fuel tank, Jiang Lushi wasn't afraid. Endurance? His minibus could circle the earth. Who wants to compete? Instant acceleration, tight turns, air cannon, he could use them all freely. He would stall. Keep ramming Blood Wolf with the minibus, even if it didn't hit him. Wear him down, until Blood Wolf couldn't move. If Blood Wolf tried to escape, he would chase him down. No need to open the door. Jiang Lushi said quickly while driving. A war of attrition was the safest, most effective method. But then, boom! A loud explosion. The minibus shook violently. The rear end jumped up. A powerful shockwave surged, flames running along the minibus's side, reaching the front windshield. A grenade? Jiang Lushi was startled. After failing to ram Blood Wolf, he had thrown a grenade at the rear of the vehicle. Since turning into a werewolf, Blood Wolf's mind leaned toward beastly instincts. He was used to solving enemies with claws and teeth, not modern weapons. But now, completely unable to match Jiang Lushi, he had resorted to grenades. A single grenade explosion didn't flip the vehicle, too heavy. But this time, Starseed alerted, tire number 3 damaged, damage level 30%. Huh? Jiang Liushi's heart sank. The tire. The minibus's tires were run flat, with many segmented air pockets. Even if riddled with bullets, it could still run. But grenades produce intense heat and flames. Even run-flat tires can't withstand fire. Brother, how's the car? Jiang Zhuiying asked anxiously. She didn't know how strong Jiang Liushi's base car really was. In her view, even if the armor and glass were bulletproof, whether it could withstand a grenade was still questionable. Not good. This grenade is too much. Jiang Lushi gritted his teeth and simply pulled back his automatic rifle. Blood Wolf was extremely alert and never gave him the chance to aim. Since that was the case, Jiang Lushi put both hands on the steering wheel and focused on driving. The vehicle's control isn't as smooth as before. Jiang Lushi felt heavy in his heart. Tire number 3 was the rear right tire, the one farthest from the driver's seat. Even through the right rearview mirror, he couldn't see it clearly. It was almost in his blind spot. Blood Wolf had chosen to attack exactly there. If it were an ordinary car, just one grenade would have blown the wheel off. Even though this was a Starseed base vehicle, once enough of the air pockets in the tire were blown, its rotation wouldn't be as smooth as before. And Blood Wolf clearly noticed this too. He saw that one of the minibus's wheels was damaged. Blow up that tire, let's see how he keeps driving. Blood Wolf grinned viciously. This vehicle had rendered all his efforts useless, but now he saw a glimmer of hope. He locked onto the base car's tire number 3, planning to destroy it first. Da-da-da. The sound of automatic gunfire rang out. Jiang Lushi looked through the rearview mirror. Blood Wolf was using an automatic rifle to shoot at tire number 3. When the base vehicle was speeding, hitting a tire wasn't easy, but Blood Wolf was close. With his werewolf speed, he was sprinting behind the vehicle. Though he couldn't catch up, a burst of bullets could still land a few hits. Tire number 3 damaged, damage level 40%. Starseed alerted again. Once a tire is damaged, its bulletproof ability drops sharply. Jiang Lushur could feel the vehicle getting harder to control. At this rate, once tire number 3 is completely destroyed, the base car will break down. Where did he get that gun? Jiang Lushur asked coldly. Earlier, when Blood Wolf was running, he didn't have a gun in hand. It was that woman in the leather jacket. She threw it to him, along with the grenade. A single fighter can only carry a limited number of weapons. Besides, when Blood Wolf transformed earlier, his upper body clothes were torn apart by his bulging muscles, he had no pockets, so he couldn't carry grenades. But now, the second ability user in the Blood Wolf team was supplying him with weapons while he ran at high speed. The grenades and guns she threw were very accurate. Blood Wolf caught them perfectly. This way, he could keep his carried weapons light, so as not to hinder his speed. Wolf bro! The leather jacket woman threw out another grenade and a loaded magazine. Blood Wolf caught the grenade and magazine, rolled on the ground, then changed the magazine while still running. Da-da-da. The automatic rifle fired again. Blood Wolf was right behind Jiang Lushur's base car. His speed was too quick, never giving Jiang Lushur a chance to ram into him. Boom! Blood Wolf threw a grenade. It exploded, but this time the aim was off. The shockwave hit, and the base car shook violently. Alert, tire number 3 damaged, damage level 60%. 60% already. Starseed issued an alert. Jiang Lushur could no longer just wait. Blood Wolf's out of bullets. Even while driving, Jiang Lushur was counting the shots. Blood Wolf used a Type 81, which only had 30 rounds. With such dense gunfire, only Jiang Lushur could keep count and know when the bullets would run out. At the moment the bullets ran out, he turned the steering wheel sharply, made a hard turn, and aimed the vehicle straight at the woman in the leather jacket. Can't handle Blood Wolf? Then kill the woman first. At that moment, the woman had just prepared a new magazine, ready to throw to Blood Wolf. But when she saw the base car charging at her, her face changed drastically. Open the door. Kill that woman first. Jiang Lushur shouted. Jiang Zhuing also understood his intention. She opened the door, threw her shield aside, and held up her human-height samurai sword, pointing it straight at the leather jacket woman. Boom! The base car rammed into the cover the leather jacket woman was hiding behind. Sandbags and iron barrels were knocked over. The woman screamed and leapt backward, flipping 360 degrees in the air to dodge the collision. Just then, Jiang Zhuing jumped out from the base car door, sword in hand, slashing at the woman's neck. The strike was too fast. The woman had no time to draw her gun. In fact, in close combat, a knife is often better than a gun. Bullets may be fast, but drawing and aiming takes longer than swinging a blade. By the time you raise your gun, your arm could already be cut off. The leather jacket woman crossed her arms in front of her chest. On her elbows, the skin split open, revealing a sharp white bone blade. That was her bone blade. Her ability was bone reinforcement. Her bones were 4 to 5 times stronger than normal, and the bones of her forearms could extend into 2 1-meter-long bone blades. Currently, she could only extend them in a fixed shape, but their strength was comparable to a military-grade tri-edged dagger. This was her weapon. Clang! The bone blade clashed with the katana, producing a harsh metallic screech. Jiang Zhuing's attack was like a storm. Even if the bone blade blocked the sword, it couldn't block the electricity. Zzz. Electric current pierced through like a venomous snake, paralyzing the woman. For an ordinary person, this shock would cause fainting, or even heart failure. But the leather jacket woman's cells were strong, she was only paralyzed. High-level ability users had activated cells and often ate mutated beast meat. Their physical attributes were far beyond average. In a fight between experts, even a moment of paralysis could be fatal. The woman's movement slowed. Panic showed on her face. Jiang Zhuing pulled back her blade and dashed forward, ready to slash again, but then she felt a sudden sense of danger. Watch out! Jiang Lushur shouted. Without even looking, Jiang Zhuing bent down to dodge. Whoosh! A dark object flew past her hair and hit an iron barrel. Bang! The barrel was knocked up and dented by the impact. Jiang Zhuing looked carefully. The dark object was an empty magazine. At the moment the leather jacket woman was about to be killed, Blood Wolf threw his magazine. With his werewolf strength, even a thrown magazine was as deadly as a bullet. Jiang Zhuing dodged it and didn't look back at Blood Wolf. Her blade swept out, sending a silver arc of electricity. Zzz. The woman had just regained a bit of movement and quickly tried to dodge. But Jiang Lushur wasn't about to let her escape. He focused his mental strength. To him, the woman's movements now looked like slow motion. To the right, Jiang Lushur shouted. Jiang Zhuing immediately slashed to the right. The electricity formed a line in the air, like lightning. The current stung the woman's skin and lifted her hair. Jiang Liushur's shout shocked her further. She really had planned to dodge right. But before she could finish the move, Jiang Lushur had already read her intent from her subtle movements. She instinctively jumped in the other direction, otherwise, she would have run straight into the blade. But the moment she jumped, her pupils shrank. Jiang Liushur's rifle muzzle. These siblings coordinated flawlessly, not giving her a moment to breathe. She dodged Jiang Zhuing's blade but couldn't dodge Jiang Liushur's shot. In that instant, pain surged, she saw blood burst from her chest. From the moment she jumped in the other direction to being shot, less than a second passed. Jiang Lushur didn't even need time to aim. He hit her heart precisely while she was still moving at high speed. Ah! Blood Wolf roared when he saw the woman thrown back like a bloody rag. Jiang Lushur and Jiang Zhuing, the brother and sister, worked together perfectly, making Blood Wolf's rescue attempt completely useless. The woman in the leather jacket was still killed instantly. Now, Blood Wolf completely lost his support. The Type 81 in his hand was already out of bullets. And those Blood Wolf members who had still been hesitating about whether to run away, after seeing the woman in the leather jacket get killed, could no longer stay. That woman, under the combined attack of Jiang Zhuing and Jiang Lushur, had no power to resist. Compared to her, they were even weaker. Run. Leave, join another team and you can still survive. These survivors only acted for profit. No matter how crazy they were, they wouldn't risk their lives on something with no chance. But just as they started to run, gunfire rang out again, and a grenade flew toward them. Sun Quan and Zhang Hai weren't much help in a direct fight, but they could definitely deal with these fleeing dogs. Once someone had thoughts of escape, they wouldn't stop to fight back seriously. When they heard gunfire, they just ran toward the gate like live targets. Facing this situation, Sun Quan and Zhang Hai wouldn't show mercy. Jiang Lushur stood at the door of the vehicle and suddenly turned his gun in the other direction. At this moment, Blood Wolf had gone completely mad. His hatred for Jiang Lushur now outweighed his desire for Jiang Zhuing's ability. Jiang Lushur had finally stopped the vehicle to kill the woman in the leather jacket. And he had opened the door. In fact, Jiang Lushur had no choice but to stop. Staying in the minibus would just give Blood Wolf more chances to attack the tires. Waiting until the minibus broke down and stopped passively was worse than stopping voluntarily. And this move had taken out the woman in leather. He had already prepared for Blood Wolf's ambush. Da-da-da. Jiang Lushur fired continuously, while Blood Wolf kept changing directions rapidly. Although Jiang Lushur had fast neural reflexes, his arms were still that of an ordinary person. He couldn't move the gun fast enough to keep up. Bullets hit the ground and sparked, but missed Blood Wolf. But just then, several electric currents burst out in front of Jiang Lushur, striking toward Blood Wolf. The crisscrossing currents formed an electric net, giving Blood Wolf no way to dodge. He suddenly darted sideways and disappeared behind the minibus. Watch out! Seeing the electric net light up above his head, Jiang Lushur immediately turned and raised his rifle. Da-da-da. More gunfire. Blood Wolf leapt over his head. Blood Wolf, exploding with full power, moved extremely fast. He was like a vicious wolf circling its prey, looking for a chance to land a fatal strike. Jiang Lushur and Jiang Zhuing stood back to back with the minibus, and Blood Wolf used it as cover. Starseed. In Jiang Liushur's mind, the rear-view camera feed from the minibus instantly appeared. Blood Wolf thought that by hiding behind the minibus, Jiang Lushur and Jiang Zhuing wouldn't dare act, unsure of when or where he would strike again. But he didn't know. Thanks to Starseed, even after getting off the minibus, Jiang Lushur could still see the camera's feed in his mind. He soon spotted Blood Wolf's figure. When Blood Wolf suddenly charged out, his terrifying speed and strength showed his power, but when he was hiding and waiting to strike, it was ironically a bit laughable. From that angle, it was hard for Jiang Lushur to shoot. He gave Jiang Zhuing a hand signal, and mouthed silently, "Attack." Although Jiang Zhuing hadn't seen anything, and didn't know what Jiang Lushur saw, she didn't hesitate. She grabbed the end of the chain and threw the long sword straight forward. At this moment, her expression turned fierce. The powerful current made her hair float without wind, and tiny electric sparks danced across her body. Wherever the blade passed, electric snakes danced. The entire sword was surrounded by electricity. Jiang Lushur had told her to attack, so Jiang Zhuing used her full power. This level of electricity could burn even dozens of zombies to ashes. Of course, Jiang Zhuing couldn't maintain this power for long. At the same time, Jiang Lushur also dropped low, aiming his gun at the ground. Blood Wolf was preparing to pounce. He was hiding behind one of the tires, but as soon as the electric current struck, he had to dodge. Seeing the blade whip toward him like it had eyes, carrying intense electric current, Blood Wolf was shocked. He instantly dodged back, and just then, bang! A sharp pain shot through one of his arms. Blood Wolf moved on all fours. When he dodged, his arm was exposed to Jiang Lushur's line of sight. Jiang Lushur didn't hesitate, he pulled the trigger. In that brief moment of exposure, he hit him with perfect precision. Blood splattered. Even bone fragments flew. That arm was immediately broken. Ah! Blood Wolf let out a shrill scream. He didn't even understand how he'd been hit. But he didn't stop moving. Even with a broken arm, he leapt backward and hid behind another tire. Click! He heard Jiang Lushur reload. The sound made Blood Wolf grit his teeth. His hand. With all his power unleashed, and the pain driving him mad, Blood Wolf's head was foggy. It felt like all the blood in his body had rushed to his brain. Kill Jiang Lushur. He had to kill Jiang Lushur. Suddenly, Blood Wolf leapt onto the roof of the vehicle, then pounced straight toward Jiang Lushur. Zzz. Above Jiang Lushur's head, dozens of electric currents instantly formed a net. Blood Wolf pounced straight into it. Blood Wolf had no other choice. Even with one arm shot, if he didn't kill Jiang Lushur or Jiang Zhuing today, he wouldn't get out alive. But it was like his every move was anticipated. The electricity instantly paralyzed him. His fur was scorched. Even paralyzed, Blood Wolf howled in rage, raised his claws, and slashed toward Jiang Lushur's head. Clang! Jiang Zhuing's long sword blocked Blood Wolf's claw. She wasn't as strong as him, but the electric current wrapped around the blade scorched his claw, smoke rose, and the flesh was charred. Jiang Lushur and Jiang Zhuing worked together flawlessly. At that moment, Jiang Lushur raised his rifle. Bang! The gunshot rang right by his ear. Blood Wolf turned his head and felt his shoulder shatter. He crashed to the ground, wailing, staring at Jiang Lushur and Jiang Zhuing in the distance. Blood Wolf slowly struggled to stand. Jiang Lushur and Jiang Zhuing were just watching him. He was in terrible shape. He had thought Jiang Lushur getting out of the vehicle meant his doom, but now, it was his own end. Damn it! Blood Wolf looked at the two with venomous hatred. His words slurred, and his muscles kept twitching from the electric shocks. He charged forward again, swinging his scorched claw at Jiang Lushur. Jiang Zhuing was about to act, but saw Jiang Lushur lift his gun. By now, Blood Wolf's speed had dropped significantly. He was still stronger than an ordinary person, but Jiang Lushur's automatic rifle spat fire. Though Jiang Lushur wasn't physically fast, this version of Blood Wolf couldn't fully dodge the bullets. Bang! Bang! 2 shots aimed for the heart. Blood Wolf saw Jiang Lushur fire and tried to dodge in advance, but failed. The bullets hit his shoulder and arm. His arm was pierced, flesh torn. Blood Wolf was covered in blood. If he weren't a werewolf, he'd have bled to death from so many gunshots. He looked at Jiang Lushur's calm eyes and face, full of hatred. If only he could land one hit on him. You only know how to shoot, you bastard. Blood Wolf swung another claw. Jiang Lushur pointed the black muzzle at Blood Wolf and said calmly, yeah. Bang! Blood sprayed. As Blood Wolf tilted his head, he suddenly saw nothing but red. His dodge had brought his own head right into Jiang Lushur's sights. A headshot. Jiang Lushur put down the gun and silently watched as Blood Wolf collapsed with a loud crash and fell heavily into a pool of blood. Those Blood Wolf members who were fleeing were already in a panic. Before they could escape the factory, they witnessed with their own eyes how Jiang Lushur killed Blood Wolf. Blood Wolf was so powerful, yet died so miserably. Now, those Blood Wolf members were even more terrified, as if their souls had left their bodies. They scrambled to flee like crazy, each trying to escape the factory before the others, even pushing people out of the way and using others' bodies to block bullets. However, the vehicles they had enthusiastically used to block Jiang Lushur and his group earlier had now become their road to death. Sun Quan and Zhang Hai kept attacking, killing with excitement. Not a single one of these people should think about escaping. Detected 1+ mutated energy. Absorb it, came the voice of the starseed. Blood Wolf was a 1+ level mutant, just like Jiang Zhuing, actually even slightly stronger than her. After Jiang Lushur killed him, the mutated energy he released was immediately detected by the starseed. Absorb. Jiang Lushur said immediately. Detected level 1 mutated energy. Absorb it. Yes. This level 1 mutated energy likely belonged to that woman in the leather jacket. The two of them were both high level, so the amount of energy absorbed this time would definitely not be small. I really didn't expect that Blood Wolf was plotting to ambush me. But with my brother here, He never imagined he would end up this badly, Jiang Zhuing said, looking at Jiang Lushi. Jiang Lushi's performance this time even surprised Jiang Zhuing. In her memory, Jiang Lushi didn't know anything about shooting. And today, his behavior clearly looked like someone holding a gun for the first time. But even so, this rookie's bullets were more accurate than if he had eyes on them. It was truly unbelievable. Someone like that should be killed early to be safe. Otherwise, you never know when he might bite you, Jiang Lushi said. Brother, are you really a mutant? Why can't I sense any energy fluctuations from you? Jiang Zhuing asked again. Well, I'm a bit different from you guys, Jiang Lushi didn't really know how to explain. He had enhanced his brain domain, which technically made him a mutant too, but he didn't have any mutated energy on him. Brother, what's with your shooting skills? Jiang Zhuing asked. Jiang Lushi could only answer, innate talent, I guess. Zhang Hai and Sun Quan, who had come out of hiding, walked over and heard Jiang Lushi's words. The two of them didn't know what kind of expression to show, they were totally bewildered. Innate? Well. But it seemed there was no better explanation. That kind of talent really made people envious, jealous, and hateful. Quick, clean up the battlefield, Jiang Zhuing said. Zhang Hai and Sun Quan were experienced. They immediately started checking the corpses and the injured Blood Wolf members lying on the ground screaming but not yet dead. They dragged them together, and then Sun Quan went around and executed them one by one. By the time he got to the last one, that person had already pissed himself, his face ashen, his whole body trembling like a leaf. He could clearly feel the spasms of the man beside him when he was shot, and the warm blood had splattered all over his face. That's what made him wet himself. Sun Quan raised the smoking gun barrel to his face, paused, then grinned and asked, Where is Blood Wolf's base? In the northern part of the industrial park. In a villa dormitory of a pharmaceutical company, the man shouted immediately. I can lead the way, don't kill me. Don't. Bang. Sun Quan put down the still smoking gun barrel, spat, and said, Who the hell wants you to lead the way? Take the road yourself. Boss, we found out Blood Wolf's base. Zhang Hai shouted. Gather up the bullets and everything else. We'll go in a bit, Jiang Zhuing said, glancing at Jiang Lushi. She saw Jiang Lushi inspecting the minibus and figured he still needed some time, so she said, in a bit. In reality, when they go depends entirely on Jiang Lushi. This victory was only possible because of the cooperation between Jiang Lushi and Jiang Zhuing. Now, even if one ignored the fact that Jiang Lushi was Jiang Zhuing's older brother, he held significant authority within the survivor team. In fact, the Starseed could provide a detailed report on the minibus's damage, so Jiang Lushi didn't need to inspect it himself. But Jiang Lushi valued the base vehicle too much, so he personally went to check the tires. The tires needed immediate repair. Tire number 3 damaged 60%, outer shell armor defense reduced by 50%, bulletproof glass durability reduced by 40%, no other damage. Base vehicle damage level, 3. The Starseed's report came through, and Jiang Lushi felt a pang of pain. That was the data even after he drove the car to its limits. If he had reacted slower, the damage might have reached level 4 or even higher. After checking the list of materials needed for repairs, Jiang Lushi saw that all of them could be found in the industrial park. Some were even abundant within this metal factory. As for gasoline and electricity needed for repairs, there was no shortage of those. The vehicle's Blood Wolf's men came and already had plenty of gasoline, so Jiang Lushi didn't even need to use his own reserves. At this point, the Starseed reported that all the mutated energy had been fully absorbed. Mutated energy absorbed. Energy stored. Mutated energy can be used for Option 1, enhance base vehicle shell armor defense. Option 2, upgrade air cannon. Option 3, add mechanical arms to base vehicle. Option 4. Option 7, initiate base vehicle's second evolution process. Option 8, activate level 1 storage space. Option 9. Second evolution. When Jiang Lushi first created the gene evolution serum, he had seen a prompt about the second evolution of the base vehicle in the biolab. Many of the gene serums listed in the biolab could only be developed after the vehicle had undergone its second evolution. Originally, Jiang Lushi had planned to ask the Starseed about it in detail later. Unexpectedly, after absorbing the mutated energy from Blood Wolf and the leather-clad woman, the base vehicle could now start its second evolution. Starting the evolution process meant gaining access to initiate it, just like opening the biolab. Since Jiang Lushi was in the industrial park and could find whatever materials he needed, there was no reason to wait. Start the second evolution of the base vehicle. Jiang Lushi said in his mind. The base vehicle's first evolution turned it from a minibus into a luxury RV, and it even gained offensive and defensive capabilities. No one knew what it would be like after the second evolution. Jiang Lushur was very excited. At this moment, the starseed prompted, "Base vehicle's second evolution process is underway. This process takes 1.5 hours. The base vehicle can still be used during this time. Still have to wait 1.5 hours. And even after starting the second evolution, there was still mutated energy left. The options changed a bit, some dimmed, others could still be selected. Also activate level 1 storage space." Jiang Lushur had been thinking about this function for a long time. His vehicle had already maximized space usage, but even so, space was still running out. Even the roof of the car was piled high with supplies. Jiang Lushur had long wanted to activate the storage space. Activating level 1 spatial storage function. Storage space volume, 10 cubic meters. Interior is low temperature and oxygen free. Can preserve food ingredients. Ordinary food can be preserved for over a year, mutated beast meat for over 3 years. The familiar voice of the starseed sounded, activation confirmed. Required materials are as follows. The materials needed for activating level 1 storage space were all metals. And these, Jiang Lushur could easily source on site. Zhang Hai and Sun Kuan were once again assigned the role of movers. They didn't know why Jiang Lushur needed more metal, but this time they had no questions. Jiang Lushur's marksmanship was terrifying. If he wanted metal, they would just move it, no matter what it was for. They secretly guessed that Jiang Lushur might have some strange collection habit. Previously, he had collected 2 mutated crystal cores. They had no idea what those were for. These things, once Jiang Lushur took them, no one knew what use he could make of them. At least, they couldn't understand. Level 1 storage space construction has begun. Estimated completion time, 1 hour, the starseed continued. 1 hour. Jiang Lushur could wait. During that time, he had Zhang Hai and Sun Kuan help him gather the materials to repair the vehicle. For rubber materials, Zhang Hai and Sun Kuan directly dismantled all the tires from Blood Wolf's vehicles and stuffed them all into Jiang Lushur's car. The rest of the required materials were found in the special metal factory and 2 nearby factories. Without the threat of Blood Wolf's men, and with few zombies in the industrial park, it was practically a giant warehouse of materials. An hour passed quickly. Level 1 storage space construction completed. The starseed's voice rang out right on time. Jiang Lushur couldn't help but smile, finally activated. In his mind, a panel appeared immediately. It showed the remaining storage of the level 1 space, 100%. At the same time, the starseed scanned all items inside the base vehicle, of course, excluding the host himself and other living beings. As long as items were inside the base vehicle, Jiang Lushur could transfer them into the storage space with a thought. But items outside the vehicle couldn't be stored. 10 cubic meters wasn't huge, but not small either, enough to fit all the materials packed inside the vehicle. He had already gathered the necessary repair materials, but couldn't fix the car directly in front of Zhang Hai and Sun Kuan. So, he had to store the materials first. Besides repair materials, there were rare metals. Jiang Lushur really wanted these. Upgrading the storage space was for this exact purpose. Zhang Hai. As soon as Jiang Lushur spoke inside the car, Zhang Hai and Sun Kuan stood up. Go move them now. The 2 of them had turned from powerful mutants into porters, but they had no complaints. Without Jiang Lushur, they really would have died today. Besides, as mutants, their physical strength combined with transport tools like carts made them much more capable than ordinary people. Even so, they were utterly exhausted. The metals Jiang Lushur wanted were spread out. Moving them onto the carts, then from the carts into the base vehicle, was hard labor. After over an hour, Zhang Hai and Sun Kuan had moved 12 tons of metal. 12 tons sounded like a lot, but it was just a cubic meter block, about the size of 7 or 8 suitcases in the vehicle, barely noticeable. Stored in the spatial space, it only took up 10%. But that 1 cubic meter took 120 trips, with each trip moving 100 kilograms. The 2 were completely wiped out. Even as mutants, they couldn't handle this much. Jiang Lushur was speechless too. During the base vehicle's basic evolution, there had been an auto material absorption option. Now that he had selected the storage space upgrade, he couldn't choose the auto-absorb function. Seeing Zhang Hai and Sun Kuan looking at him like sad puppies, exhausted to death, he realized he had basically used them like human forklifts. Looks like they've hit their limit. Jiang Lushur stared at the stockpile of materials, craving them. But he couldn't have Zhang Hai and Sun Kuan move too much, or it would be hard to explain. A few suitcase-sized metal blocks inside the car was fine, but 10 cubic meters of metal blocks? That would look strange. Jiang Lushur had collected rare metals that were hard to find under normal circumstances. These metals were often very dense, many weighed over 10 tons per cubic meter, some nearly 20 tons per cubic meter. Common metals found everywhere, Jiang Lushur didn't bother collecting, he wouldn't waste space on those. Jiang Lushur closed the base vehicle's doors. He wasn't in a hurry to transfer all the metal into the storage space. If Zhang Hai or Sun Kuan accidentally saw the metal vanish through the windshield, they would definitely think they'd seen a ghost. After storing all the metal blocks, Jiang Lushur sent Zhang Hai and Sun Kuan away, then mentally connected to the starseed to check on the second evolution of the base vehicle. Base vehicle secondary evolution contents. Complete construction of the base vehicle steward, activate a new form of the base vehicle. Host can select any vehicle for scanning. After scanning, the starseed will modify the vehicle and store it in subspace, unlocking the base vehicle's second form. Once scanned, this cannot be undone. Hearing the starseed's description, Jiang Lushur was shocked. He had thought the second evolution would just be further upgrades to the current vehicle. He didn't expect such drastic changes. A base vehicle steward? A new scanning function? Jiang Lushur didn't fully understand what the base vehicle steward meant, he could only guess from the literal meaning. But the second function, scanning a new vehicle to activate a second form of the base vehicle, what did that mean? That the base vehicle would have two forms? Jiang Lushur raised his question to the starseed. The starseed gave an explanation. This wasn't about giving the base vehicle two forms, but rather, after scanning a new type of vehicle, it would allow this new form to be summoned. Summon, this meant Jiang Lushur would have a new base vehicle that could be called upon. This was a lot more advanced than simply switching the form of one vehicle. As for subspace, it was a space specifically used to store the summonable base vehicle. This space would be automatically activated by the starseed after scanning a new vehicle, and it didn't require construction by Jiang Lushur. This point made Jiang Lushur very satisfied. Everything the starseed had activated so far required him to collect corresponding materials to build. It was rare to have something activated automatically by the starseed. Jiang Lushur felt like he had just gotten a free gift. This second evolution was really powerful. But the phrase, cannot be cancelled after scanning, slowly calmed Jiang Lushur down from his excitement. Since it couldn't be undone, this second scan opportunity had to be chosen carefully. Actually, Jiang Lushur had some ideas in his mind about what kind of vehicle to choose. And when thinking about what kind of vehicle to scan, the first thing that came to mind was that guy, but that type was probably not found around here. The matter of scanning a vehicle had to be considered thoroughly, no rushing. Let's first take a look at this base vehicle steward. Jiang Lushur shifted his attention to the base vehicle steward. When he looked at the steward option, the starseed immediately gave an explanation. The base vehicle steward also needed to be constructed. But it didn't require any metals, just energy. And this energy didn't have to be provided by Jiang Lushur. What he needed to provide was time. Another freebie. Jiang Lushur was quite curious about the steward. Subspace was understandable as an auto-provided feature by the starseed. But this steward being built with energy, it made one wonder what the final result would be. Base vehicle steward, construction time, 72 hours. Begin construction? 72 hours. After confirming that it wouldn't affect the use of the base vehicle, Jiang Lushur confirmed the build. The long wait made him feel both excited and nervous. After finishing these matters, the sky had turned completely dark. Zhang Hai and Sun Kuan started a fire in an open space, roasted some mutant beast meat, and brought 2 portions to Jiang Lushur and Jiang Zhuiying. Normally, they could only chew dried meat. It was rare to be in an industrial park with few zombies, no need to worry about firelight or smell attracting them. Of course, they took the chance to enjoy a hot meal. This mutant beast meat, though not seasoned, released juicy fat as it cooked, instantly creating a mouth-watering aroma. Jiang Lushur had been busy all day and was truly hungry. Especially after using his brain domain evolution power, now that things had quieted down, he felt a deep emptiness in his body. In the end, Jiang Lushur ate more than 3 times his usual portion of mutant meat. Good thing we brought some backup rations, Zhang Hai said with relief. They never went out with only a day's worth of food. No one could guarantee they'd return the same day. In zombie-dense areas, anything could happen. Not bringing enough food was basically the same as walking into death. Now, all those backup rations had been eaten clean by Jiang Lushur. Jiang Zhuiying also ate quite a lot. After using her electric powers today, she had consumed a huge amount of energy. Now that she was replenishing, she started to feel a strange sensation in her body, a slight tingling from within her muscles. This was different from what she'd felt during her previous evolutionary upgrades. But one thing was clear, this change definitely wasn't bad. She even instinctively felt that the change was too weak. If it had been stronger, her body would have undergone a new transformation. For now, this was just a sign, she should find a way to grasp the sensation. After the two of them ate their fill, Jiang Lushur drank a few sips of mineral water and said, "It's getting late. Let's head to Blood Wolf's base now," Jiang Lushur said. "Brother Jiang, you," Zhang Hai laughed loudly. He really liked Jiang Liushur's personality. Harvesting the spoils of victory, who cared what time it was? If it were anywhere else, going out this late would be unthinkable unless you wanted to die. But this industrial park had very few zombies. As long as they didn't draw attention from farther away, they could move freely. "Let's go." "Yeah, I'm real curious what kind of loot Blood Wolf left behind. They were always hunting, trading constantly in the satellite city. No doubt they're way richer than us." Zhang Hai and Sun Kuan excitedly jumped into their car, while Jiang Zhuiying got into Jiang Liushur's minibus. The two vehicles drove one after the other, rumbling off toward Blood Wolf's base. The industrial park had an extensive road network, with plenty of detours. No wonder Blood Wolf's men had been able to follow them secretly and then block them once they entered the warehouse. Zhang Hai followed the road signs and took the most direct route. In just a few minutes, they arrived at the gate of a pharmaceutical company. The gate was wide open. From a distance, several red dots could be seen moving around. As Jiang Lushur and the others slowly approached in their vehicle, one of the red dots even walked swaggeringly out from a hidden spot. "Back so late? Didn't you say you went to catch some fat sheep? And why did you come back with such a junk car? This thing's a piece of crap." But before he could finish speaking, his face suddenly turned alert and shocked. Because through the windshield of the minibus, he didn't see any Blood Wolf members, he saw Jiang Lushur and Jiang Zhuiying. If Jiang Zhuiying were half dead, that would have been normal. But now, she clearly looked to be in great shape. Before the man could fully react, Zhang Hai's off-road vehicle accelerated and charged forward. Sun Kuan's spear thrust out from the window, instantly skewering the man, along with his infrared night vision gun. Boom! The man crashed to the ground, and the gun fell into Sun Kuan's hands. The other red dots immediately reacted. But just then, the minibus suddenly accelerated and charged forward. Rat-a-tat-tat. The people started shooting, but the minibus kept speeding toward them. Bang! Bang! Two muffled thuds later, the red dots disappeared completely. These were the guards of Blood Wolf's base. They never even saw clearly who had arrived before being taken out. Zhang Hai's loud and excited voice came from the off-road vehicle. "Listen up, folks inside. Brother Jiang brought us here to collect our spoils. Your Blood Wolf boss has already been killed by Brother Jiang." The two vehicles quickly arrived at the entrance of the villa. The villa had a bit of light on. When they looked inside the villa, they saw someone hiding behind the curtain, secretly pulling it open slightly to peek outside. That face and the long hair, it was clearly a woman. As soon as she saw the people inside the vehicle, the woman immediately showed a panicked expression, hurriedly let go of the curtain, and the gap instantly disappeared. "Let's go." Zhang Hai and the others got out of the car first, holding their guns, slowly approaching the villa, cautiously using the car and pillars to conceal their bodies. When they reached the door, they saw that the villa's entrance had an iron lock hanging on it. Just the chain alone was as thick as a thumb. This lock was placed from the outside to lock the villa shut. "Step back." Zhang Hai rubbed his hands, hid not far away, found a good angle, and aimed the gun at the lock, then pulled the trigger. Bang! As the gunshot rang out, several screams came from behind the door, but they quickly quieted down. Boom! Zhang Hai suddenly rushed forward and kicked the door open hard, then stepped aside, aiming the gun inside the house and shouting, "Everybody stay put. Our boss and Brother Jiang are here." Inside, there were a few quiet gasps from women. Zhang Hai and Sun Kuan stayed by the doorway, aiming their guns for a while. After confirming that there were indeed no armed people inside, they rushed in and pointed their guns at the people inside. Sun Kuan flashed a flashlight, then pressed a switch on the wall, and the living room lights turned on, lighting up the whole room and everyone in it. Inside, there were about a dozen women. They were huddled in a corner. When the lights suddenly turned on, they all squinted their eyes. Some of the girls showed panicked expressions but tightly covered their mouths with their hands, as if afraid that making any sound would anger Zhang Hai and the others. It seemed they were the ones who screamed earlier when they heard the gunshot. The rest of the girls sat limp against the wall, their eyes looking at Zhang Hai, and the others appeared numb, and their faces showed confusion. "All women?" Zhang Hai was stunned for a moment, then asked, "Only you all in the house?" Other than the ones who looked totally numb, the girls who were caught in his gaze were so nervous they didn't dare look at him. "Talk. Don't just stay silent. No need to be scared, understand?" Zhang Hai said, surprised. At this time, Jiang Lushur and Jiang Zhuiying also arrived at the doorway and were speechless upon hearing Zhang Hai's words. With how you two act, like bandits robbing a house, of course they're scared. At that moment, one of the girls suddenly asked, "Where's Blood Wolf?" Jiang Lushi looked toward the voice. The speaker was a young girl, looking very frail. When Jiang Lushi and the others looked at her, she immediately trembled like she'd been shocked. But it wasn't just her, other girls were also waiting for an answer. Zhang Hai had been shouting the whole way over, they definitely heard it, they just weren't sure if it was true. Blood Wolf? Heh, already killed by our brother Jiang, Zhang Hai said. Several girls looked nervously at Zhang Hai, then at Sun Quan. Sun Quan looked a bit like a thug and appeared fierce. He's the one who killed Blood Wolf? Being stared at by the girls, Sun Quan was momentarily stunned, then quickly said, "What are you all looking at? This here is brother Jiang." When Sun Quan pointed at Jiang Lushi, the girls were all startled. This young man killed Blood Wolf? And these two fierce men were his subordinates? It's not that they didn't believe it, it's just that Jiang Lushi looked about their age, like a college student. He had a harmless appearance and didn't show the same fierce manner as Zhang Hai and Sun Quan. Blood Wolf was already a terrifying name in their minds. And this young man had actually killed him? But they had heard the gunfire and screams earlier. Blood Wolf's guards were dead. It should be true. All right, enough with the useless talk, Jiang Lushi said as he walked in. All of you, stand over here. First, tell me if there's anyone else in the house. His tone was calm and a bit cold, but much better than Zhang Hai and Sun Quan. Another girl carefully said, "There are two people in the backyard. They said they were toys." Toys? Jiang Lushi asked. "They call the ones they torture to death toys," another girl softly explained. "I see. Sun Quan, go check it out. Be careful. If they're beyond saving, end it quickly for them," Jiang Lushi said. "Got it." Sun Quan headed for the backyard immediately. The remaining three, Jiang Lushi and the others, continued watching the girls. Where did Blood Wolf and his men stay? Upstairs. Someone lead the way, Jiang Lushi said. The girls looked at each other, some turning away, others lowering their heads as much as they could. You, Jiang Lushi randomly pointed at the girl who explained what toys meant. He vaguely remembered her face, probably the one who peeked out from behind the curtain earlier. She was probably braver than the others. Jiang Lushi knew they were all scared, but he wasn't interested in giving long explanations. Explaining things wouldn't erase their fear anyway. Looking at the girls, all pale and thin, clothes torn, bodies covered in wounds, it was clear they had been captured by Blood Wolf's group and tortured regularly. Women without the ability to protect themselves were like lambs in the apocalypse. If they met decent survivor groups, it was okay. But if they were targeted by people like Blood Wolf's crew, it was tragic. Now they were all like frightened birds, uneasy and scared. But Jiang Lushi was just here to take care of business, he wouldn't stay long. The girl was startled but didn't dare refuse. She could only gather her courage and stand up. Lead the way, Jiang Lushi said. The girl slowly walked ahead, leading them to the third floor, to the innermost room. There was still a large lock hanging on the door. Zhang Hai went over and shot it open like before. The door was kicked open. Zhang Hai held his gun and went in to check. A moment later, his voice rang out with laughter. "Boss, brother Jiang, come in and see, Blood Wolf's stash is pretty big." Jiang Lushi and Jiang Zhuing exchanged a glance and walked in. The girl stood at the door, not daring to go in or leave, nervously shifting in place. The room was large. Upon entering, there was a small lounge, then a bathroom, a big bedroom, and a dressing room about the same size as the bedroom. But now, all the useless furniture had been thrown out. Aside from a bed, the whole place was piled with supplies. Apparently, Blood Wolf was a practical person. Even his tastes were practical. Compared to sleeping in a luxurious room, sleeping surrounded by supplies clearly made him feel safer. But now, the precious supplies he guarded every night had become the spoils of war for Jiang Lushi and his group. Zhang Hai immediately began to inventory the supplies. In fact, Blood Wolf's supplies were neatly sorted by category, so it was easy to compile a list. Besides a large amount of mutant beast meat, there was also plenty of dried food, weapons, and ammunition. Especially the rifle bullets, there were a lot of them, which made Zhang Hai grin from ear to ear. Even though he wouldn't get much of it based on the share, just holding these heavy, golden bullets made him happy. There was also a small box containing 10 neatly arranged grenades. Blood Wolf's team didn't bring all their stock when they ambushed Jiang Zhuing's group. But Zhang Hai thought, even if they had brought these grenades, they would have just ended up being blown up by Jiang Lushi anyway. At that moment, Sun Quan also came upstairs. When he saw the supplies, he got excited too, checking here and there. "What's this?" Sun Quan found a box in the nightstand beside Blood Wolf's bed. The box was placed closest to Blood Wolf, making it immediately draw attention. Sun Kuan's call drew the attention of Jiang Lushi and the others. In front of everyone, Sun Kuan carefully opened the box. Inside the box lay a bead the size of a pigeon egg, as clear as glass. A mutated crystal core. Sun Kuan said. One mutated crystal core was an important asset for any survivor team, equivalent to 5 tons of mutant beast meat. Blood Wolf's group had hunted often, so they likely had more than one crystal core, but the rest had probably already been traded with the military in the satellite city. This one looked freshly obtained, there were still traces of blood on it. Blood Wolf had clearly kept it carefully. This crystal core, Jiang Lushi stared at it with a burning gaze and said, "I'll take it." Since reuniting with Jiang Zhuiying, all the crystal cores of her team had gone to Jiang Lushi. When they heard him ask for this one too, Zhang Hai and Sun Kuan were briefly stunned. But Jiang Lushi contributed the most in this battle. Based on the distribution rules, a large part of the loot rightfully belonged to him. And as the person with the biggest contribution, he also had priority in choosing the loot. Even if Jiang Zhuiying said nothing, Jiang Lushi had every right to take this crystal core. Zhang Hai and Sun Kuan naturally had no objections. "Brother Jiang, if it's useful to you, take it. It's your call anyway." Taking this core wasn't a big deal for Jiang Lushi, there was plenty more he could take. In terms of share, this crystal core wasn't even that significant. Jiang Lushi nodded and put the crystal core away. Mutated crystal cores were now the rarest material for Jiang Lushi, and collecting them wasn't easy. Getting even one was a win. Blood Wolf had so much ammo and mutant meat. Compared to them, Jiang Zhuiying's team was dirt poor. But with so many supplies, moving them would take time. Plus, their current vehicles couldn't hold everything. Of course, this wasn't a big problem. In the industrial park, finding a cargo truck was easy. Once they had a vehicle, it was just a matter of time and labor. And the only ones who could drive were Zhang Hai and Sun Kuan. Jiang Zhuiying could manage a small car, but definitely not a truck. They still had to prepare for possible battles on the way back, so in reality, they could only take one cargo truck. Still, that was enough to carry most of the supplies. It was already late at night. Even if they packed the supplies, there was no way to leave tonight, they'd have to stay overnight. But Jiang Lushi wasn't interested in sleeping in Blood Wolf's place, the air was filled with a faint bloody smell. He would of course sleep in the base vehicle. Jiang Zhuiying could sleep there too. As for Zhang Hai and Sun Kuan, they planned to make do in the truck and the off-road vehicle. Although the apocalypse hadn't been going on long, they were already used to fragmented, shallow sleep. Truly sleeping deeply was no longer possible. The apocalypse had changed everything in people's lives, from small details to fundamental habits. Anyone who couldn't adapt would be eliminated sooner or later. "You guys keep moving supplies. I'll take a walk nearby," Jiang Lushi said. Besides the enslaved girls, all of Blood Wolf's combat members were dead. The industrial park was basically safe now. Plus, with the base vehicle and his Type 81 rifle, Jiang Lushi was easily the safest among them. No one objected to him going out. "Brother, come back soon," Jiang Zhuiying said. "Okay." As soon as Jiang Lushi stepped out the door, he startled the girl standing at the entrance. The moment their eyes met, she flinched as if shocked, quickly looking away with a pale face. "Am I that scary?" Jiang Lushi touched his chin, feeling a bit complicated. He had already walked past her but paused, turned around, and said, "You can go downstairs now. No need to keep standing here." The girl had heard their conversation from inside the room and knew they weren't planning to stay there overnight but would sleep in the car instead. And none of them had said anything about the girls, it was like they didn't plan to deal with them at all. At first, she was only guessing. But after hearing Jiang Liushi's words, she was now sure, they really didn't intend to harm them. Thank you." The girl was stunned and only managed to say 2 words. By the time she realized it, Jiang Lushi was already gone. To Jiang Lushi, he couldn't save these girls. In the apocalypse, everyone had to learn to survive on their own. However, Blood Wolf had stockpiled a lot of food. They prioritized taking mutant meat. The rest, like dried food that couldn't fit in the truck, was left behind. The dried food wasn't much, so if the girls wanted to survive, they'd have to figure it out themselves. When the girl returned to the others, she found them watching her nervously. She softly said, "That brother Jiang, he won't do anything to us." "Really? You sure? He's their leader, right? He killed that bastard Blood Wolf. If he wanted to hurt us, he wouldn't act like this," the girl said. The girls were still afraid of Jiang Lushi, but a part of them began to change. Once they realized he had no ill intentions, they started to feel grateful. They had finally escaped from Blood Wolf's torment. Life under him had been worse than death. Some had been white-collar workers or students, just ordinary people before the apocalypse. Then one day, they were thrown into a nightmare. Now, with Blood Wolf dead, it felt like waking from that nightmare. Although what awaited them was still a cruel world. Jiang Lushur went downstairs and returned to the base vehicle. He started it, turned it around, and drove out of the pharmaceutical company. Following the same route he'd come from, he drove back to the special metals factory. From the moment he got that mutated crystal core from Blood Wolf, Jiang Lushur had a plan. There was one function he urgently needed. Especially after having Zhang Hai and Sun Kuan haul metal today, he needed this function even more. Right now, he had help. But what about later? Moving that kind of metal alone would be backbreaking work for him. Buzz. The base vehicle drove past the abandoned cars and bodies, returning to the warehouse. Inside the dark, silent warehouse, Jiang Lushur sat in the driver's seat and took out the mutated crystal core. Starseed, Jiang Lushur communicated mentally. Click. A metal slot popped out from the base vehicle's dashboard. Jiang Lushur placed the crystal core into the slot. As the slot retracted, the Starseed's prompt sounded, mutated crystal core inserted successfully. Please choose evolution path. A light screen appeared in front of Jiang Lushur with a list of options. He had seen them before and immediately skipped to the one he wanted now. Option 3, activate automatic absorption function. The base vehicle can absorb materials via particle beam without manual labor. This was it. Without hesitation, Jiang Lushur selected activate. Automatic absorption function is activating. Estimated time, 15 minutes, the Starseed said. 15 minutes was nothing, Jiang Lushur didn't mind waiting. He looked around the warehouse. There was still a lot of metal, and his base vehicle still had an empty level 1 storage space. If he didn't take more of this metal, it would be a huge waste. What a waste! And waste is the biggest crime. While waiting, Jiang Lushur had already identified all the metals he wanted to take. Auto-absorption function activated. The Starseed's notification sounded precisely 15 minutes later. From the outside, the minibus looked unchanged, still the same as before. Jiang Lushur immediately started the base vehicle, eager to try this new feature. After instructing the Starseed to activate the auto-absorption function, Jiang Lushur slowly approached his target, a shelf loaded with a large quantity of rare metal. The metal had very high density and mass. Even a small crate required a forklift to remove it. Transporting such heavy metal one small piece at a time with a forklift, if they wanted to move it all, who knew how long it would take? As Jiang Lushur drove the base vehicle closer to the shelf, the Starseed gave another prompt, absorbable target detected. Begin auto-absorption? Of course, start absorption. Jiang Lushur immediately stepped on the brakes. He had approached the shelf very slowly and stopped the moment the Starseed gave the prompt. This distance should be the maximum range for auto-absorption. According to the Starseed's distance measurement, it was exactly 5 meters. This kind of detail might seem unimportant, but there'd always be times it came in handy. Better to know it in advance than to be clueless when needed. Jiang Lushur stared unblinkingly at the metal on the shelf, curious about how the auto-absorption function actually worked. He had some prior understanding of particle beams. For example, high-energy particle cannons were one form of particle beam application. After Jiang Lushur gave the begin absorption command, a selection screen appeared in his mind. The screen listed all absorbable items detected by the Starseed, including the shelf and its contents. As Jiang Lushur moved his line of sight, all items within 5 meters that entered his field of vision appeared on the list. However, blood and corpses were not included. Jiang Lushur asked the Starseed and learned that living beings couldn't be absorbed either. Although the energy of particle beams was extremely high, when used in auto-absorption mode, it only affected inanimate objects. Jiang Lushur selected the metals he wanted to take. Instantly, he saw those metal blocks flash with light, then disappear from their original location. Immediately after, neatly stacked metal blocks appeared in the base vehicle's level 1 storage space. The entire auto-absorption process took less than a second. If someone else saw it, they would definitely think they were seeing things. The base vehicle continued absorbing at that speed. Very quickly, the entire shelf of metal disappeared and was transferred into the level 1 storage space. Without stopping, Jiang Lushur turned to his next target. The base vehicle was like an invisible giant mouth, sucking clean everything it passed. The once fully stocked shelves were now empty. Jiang Lushur knocked over the emptied shelves with the car, then drove deeper in. By the time he drove the base vehicle out of the warehouse, everything that could be moved had been taken. The warehouse likely stored over 1,000 tons of metal, but Jiang Lushur didn't choose the common or easy-to-find types. He only selected the truly rare ones. These metals filled the storage space, but they were only a small part of the entire warehouse. The 10 cubic meter storage space held over 100 tons of metal. This weight, even for a heavy-duty truck, would be overwhelming, let alone a minibus. But when the base vehicle was moving, its performance wasn't affected at all. That 100-plus ton weight didn't affect the vehicle's total weight. This storage space design is quite reasonable, Jiang Lushi thought. With this much metal, Jiang Lushi finally didn't have to worry about material shortages anymore. As for the metal he had previously moved, Jiang Lushi still kept it inside the vehicle cabin and hadn't put it into the storage space, to avoid raising suspicion. The special metals warehouse had now been secretly cleaned out by Jiang Lushi. He drove the base vehicle back to Blood Wolf's base. Zhang Hai and Sun Kuan had guessed that Jiang Lushi might have something to do, but when he returned and the vehicle looked the same, they thought maybe they had guessed wrong. Jiang Lushi really had just taken a walk, as he said. All packed up, even the driver's cabin is full. The off-road vehicle is also stuffed, Zhang Hai said. There simply weren't enough drivers, nothing could be done about it. But there's not much left anyway, just a tiny bit, Sun Kuan added. Then just leave it, Jiang Lushi said. That little bit wasn't worth it. All the good supplies had been prioritized and loaded. Even Zhang Hai and Sun Kuan didn't feel bad about what was left. That dog Blood Wolf really had quite a stash. All top-quality stuff. Zhang Hai said, eyes shining as he talked about the loot. Sun Kuan climbed up the truck and opened the container door for Jiang Lushi to see. They had already sorted and counted everything during loading, placing different categories into separate boxes before putting them on the truck. In terms of weapons, combining Blood Wolf's stash with what they had collected from corpses, they had about 20 guns of various types. Among them were 3 Type 95 automatic rifles, 2 submachine guns, 5 valuable weapons in total, and a light machine gun. The rest were mostly pistols, including Type 54 and Type 64 models. There was 1 box of grenades, 10 in total, and a whole box of assorted bullets, about 2,000 rounds altogether. Just the bullets alone were a massive fortune. No one knew how many mutant beasts Blood Wolf's crew had hunted to trade for all these supplies. But considering how hard it was to hunt mutant beasts, it was likely their main targets were actually other survivor teams. Through killing and looting, they quickly built up their stockpile. And the better their gear, the more supplies they had, the more powerful Blood Wolf's team became, and the more efficient their looting. For them, it was a shortcut to rapid development. This positive cycle was finally broken by Jiang Lushi. There are also 4 bulletproof vests, several military triangular bayonets, and 2 riot shields. Tons of mutant beast meat too. Sun Kuan patted a stack of over 10 bags, all filled with mutant meat. At least 3 tons. We've really hit the jackpot, Sun Kuan said. Hunting a mutant beast was extremely dangerous. Back then, without Jiang Lushi, it would have been nearly impossible for Jiang Zhuiying to gather 5 tons of meat. Besides that, the truck was filled with all kinds of dried vegetables, food, rice, and drinking water. A huge haul. This time they gathered more than all their previous runs combined, several times over. Boss, Brother Jiang, you guys do the distribution, Zhang Hai said with a grin. Actually, the distribution could have been done after they returned, but Zhang Hai and Sun Kuan were a bit impatient. It was like how ordinary people who suddenly get rich want to take out the money and count it by hand. Jiang Zhuiying smiled and turned to Jiang Lushi, it's up to my brother. I don't have much say in this distribution, I have to listen to him. Sigh, it's kind of a sad feeling. Aya. Before she could finish, Jiang Lushi tapped her head. She stuck out her tongue and didn't dare joke further. Zhang Hai and Sun Kuan were momentarily stunned, not because it felt strange, but because Jiang Zhuiying looked very cute like that. For people who were used to seeing the decisive, powerful Jiang Zhuiying, this side of her felt almost like an illusion. Aside from that, they completely agreed with what she said. Whether by strength or by contribution in the battle, Jiang Lushi should absolutely lead the distribution. Then I'll handle it. Jiang Lushi jumped into the truck, tossed the Type 81 rifle back to Zhang Hai, and took out a new handgun, tossing that to Zhang Hai too. Zhang Hai caught it and happily rubbed it in his hands. The gun was well maintained. Before, he only had 1 gun and was reluctant to use it. Now he had an extra, he could carry one and use another. Jiang Lushi said, each person gets 1 gun. 1 grenade per person. 300 rounds of ammo each. Mutant beast meat, 300 kilograms for each of you and Sun Kuan. As for the rest, I don't need vegetables, give them to Zhuiying. Since I took 1 mutant crystal core, Zhuiying, you take more of the meat. The remaining supplies, we split evenly. You've already got your guns, the rest of them won't be useful to you, so I'll take those. If you have objections, speak up, Jiang Lushi said. No way, Brother Jiang is fair. Zhang Hai and Sun Kuan were very satisfied. 300 kilograms of mutant meat was a lot, and getting 300 bullets felt like winning the lottery in peaceful times. Even though they did their best, their abilities were limited. Compared to Jiang Lushi and Jiang Zhuing, their role in this battle was minimal. They basically fired a few shots and killed a few regular enemies. Their team's principle had always been to divide rewards based on combat contribution. That they got this much was purely because Blood Wolf had so much loot. Being able to get such a share was already a huge surprise, all thanks to Jiang Lushi. Actually, brother, you could take more of the meat. Those weapons. Jiang Zhuing said. It's fine. I can use those weapons. Weapons, relatively speaking, weren't as valuable as ammo, but survivors still needed to trade them in the satellite city, and they didn't go cheap. Especially powerful rifles and machine guns, those were essential for any survivor team and costly even for the military. That's why Zhang Hai had been reluctant to hand over the Type 81 rifle before. These weapons, if I sell them to survivors at slightly below military price, there'll be no shortage of buyers, right? Jiang Lushi asked. Absolutely. Every team would want that. Are you planning to trade them for meat or something? Zhang Hai asked. Mutated crystal cores, Jiang Lushi said. Mutated crystal cores. That was his most scarce material now. Upgrading and modifying the base vehicle, many options required crystal cores. The biolab especially burned through cores. If he had to rely on hunting to get them, who knew how long it would take to get one? And hunting mutant beasts was very risky. If he could trade for them with weapons or other supplies, that would be best. These items were all in high demand, hard currency. Zhang Hai and Sun Quan were stunned. This brother Jiang was really obsessed with crystal cores. They felt a little pained. What survivor wouldn't use a crystal core to trade for ammo and meat? Only Jiang Lushi was doing the opposite. But it didn't matter, the supplies were his. He could use them however he wanted. He had so much, he could afford to be willful. We'll find buyers as soon as possible. Shouldn't take long, Sun Quan said. When they reached the satellite city, they'd easily find survivors in need, no trouble at all. All right, Jiang Lushi nodded. The army had set up a camp here, which made things easier for Jiang Lushi. His base vehicle's evolution could proceed even faster. Okay, let's go, Jiang Lushi said. Vroom vroom vroom. The three vehicles started up and drove away from Blood Wolf's base. Inside the house, the girls all ran to the windows, cautiously looking out, watching the vehicles move farther and farther away. The convoy found a quiet place in the industrial park to rest for the night. Even though there were no zombies nearby, distant roars could still be heard. The truck parked at the outermost gate. The off-road vehicle parked a bit farther back, its machine guns aimed at the gate. As for the base vehicle, Jiang Lushi drove it deeper into a clearing. Once the base vehicle was away from the gate, only Jiang Lushi and Jiang Zhuing remained nearby. Jiang Zhuing sat in the vehicle, watching TV with great interest. Jiang Lushi had preloaded tons of movies and shows onto a hard drive, including a lot of anime just for her. Probably no survivor out there would guess Jiang Zhuing was a die-hard anime fan. Brother, you're the perfect brother, I love you. Jiang Zhuing was so excited she almost rolled on the bed. Having this kind of spiritual joy in the apocalypse, it felt amazing and magical. This scene, one watching TV, the other holding a tablet, made Jiang Zhuing feel like they were back in the old days, relying on each other. Back then, the two siblings lived similarly, bunk beds, doing their own things, chatting occasionally. Simple and comforting. Watch one episode, then help me with something. I'll get you a tablet later, it's full of downloads, Jiang Lushi said. Got something to do? Then I'll watch later. Let's do it first. Jiang Zhuing turned off the TV immediately. No need, keep watching, Jiang Lushi said. Nope, I want to finish the task first, then lie in bed and watch until I fall asleep. Jiang Zhuing had a longing look. A relaxed, undisturbed life like this was so rare. She had to enjoy it to the fullest. Jiang Lushi didn't know whether to laugh or cry, such ambition. Jiang Lushi glanced at the materials inside the vehicle and said, Zhuing, go down and charge the vehicle. Although the minibus was solar-powered, it also had a power battery pack. The charging method was similar to electric cars. As for why Jiang Zhuing was asked to charge it, the reason was simple. Repairs. The base vehicle was seriously damaged. Without proper repairs, Jiang Lushi wouldn't feel safe driving it out tomorrow. The energy stored from solar power was only enough for daily use. After a whole day of fighting, even more energy had been consumed. Relying on that little energy was far from enough to repair the vehicle. When he returned from the Special Metals Company earlier, he had looked for a generator, but the industrial park was huge, and so were the factories. Searching would have taken too long. But right beside him, he had a powerful energy source, and it was biological. Jiang Lushi already knew that although using abilities consumed a lot of energy for an ability user, the more they used it, the more proficient they became, and it could even promote evolution. So having her generate electricity was harmless, just feed her meat. Okay, Jiang Zhuiying obediently went to charge the vehicle. Even though she was being used as a human generator, Jiang Zhuiying actually found it quite fun. As siblings, they often thought alike. In fact, Jiang Zhuiying had secretly used her electric power to charge her phone before. Of course, the result wasn't great, the phone burned out instantly. But there was no such concern with the base vehicle. It had a built-in voltage regulator during charging, stabilizing the voltage and preventing damage to the power battery. Seeing Jiang Zhuiying go out to charge, Jiang Lushi took out a large piece of mutant beast meat and some vegetables and began cooking. Although grilled mutant meat already smelled good, it was nothing compared to Jiang Lushi's cooking with various seasonings and ingredients. Very soon, the whole vehicle was filled with fragrance. The car door was left open. While charging with her hand on the port, Jiang Zhuiying leaned her head toward the door, her little nose twitching gently. Smells so good. With meat as motivation, Jiang Zhuiying generated electricity even harder, her cheeks puffed up. She really looked like a little Pikachu. Soon, the starseed notified Jiang Lushi that enough electricity had been generated for repairs. Jiang Zhuiying continued to charge, filling the battery completely. Thanks for your effort. Come get some energy yourself. Jiang Lushi extended a hand from the door, holding a plate. It had grilled meat, crispy on the outside, juicy inside, garnished with fresh vegetables and a few fruit slices. It was mouth-watering. Food like this in the apocalypse was a luxury, the ultimate indulgence. The moment Jiang Lushi extended his hand, he felt the plate lighten. By the time he pulled it back, it was already empty. Another one. So fast. Jiang Lushi was surprised. Jiang Zhuiying ate several pounds of mutant meat. The energy from it flowed through her body, warming her all over. Her cells were slowly evolving. After watching some TV, Jiang Zhuiying soon fell into a deep sleep. Normally, even in a camp, she wouldn't sleep so soundly. But now she was with Jiang Lushi, sleeping in his minibus. Though she acted strong with her teammates and was obedient in front of Jiang Lushi, she had originally decided to protect him. But after today, Jiang Zhuiying felt like things had returned to how they used to be, with Jiang Lushi protecting her. She was still the pampered little sister. It was the first time in a long while that she had slept so peacefully. She didn't even notice when Jiang Lushi came over to tuck her in. Seeing her fast asleep, Jiang Lushi sat on the sofa and mentally instructed the starseed, start repairs. The materials in the vehicle began disappearing one by one. Electricity and fuel were consumed. The minibus's damage was quickly repaired before his eyes. The blown-out tires were restored. The spiderweb cracks on the glass disappeared as if wiped clean. Repair progress, 30%, 50%, 80%. Repair progress, 100%. Repairs complete. Base vehicle condition, good. No issues. The starseed's notification sounded. Looking at the newly repaired base vehicle, Jiang Lushi exhaled deeply. Now he could sleep peacefully. He could already imagine how, the next morning, Jiang Zhuiying would rub her eyes hard in disbelief, wondering if she was still dreaming. The next morning, as soon as it was light, Zhang Hai and Sun Kuan were already awake. They rinsed their mouths and splashed water on their faces. That was their version of washing up. Safe sleep and the luxury of waking up and washing their faces, Zhang Hai and Sun Kuan felt they were living well. In the apocalypse, most survivors weren't nearly as lucky. Forget sleeping in a vehicle, even a dirty ditch would do, as long as it was safe enough to sleep. After freshening up, the two started preparing to grill meat. Just then, the minibus drove over. Boss, Brother Jiang, we were just about to call you for breakfast. Zhang Hai and Sun Kuan's faces twitched the moment they saw the minibus, their eyes nearly popping out. Did they see wrong? They had to be mistaken, right? They quickly blinked and looked again. Clean glass, intact tires, no dents, fully restored. They weren't seeing things. Jiang Lushi had repaired vehicles before. They had always thought he was just a car enthusiast. But last time the damage wasn't bad. This time, they had clearly seen what shape the minibus was in. Normally, with that kind of damage, repairs would have been a massive project. It would take a long time, and the surface would still show lots of patches. And the materials needed for repairs? You'd have to search all over. A minibus like this one, the materials used must be top grade, and they're not easy to find. At that moment, the minibus pulled up in front of them. Jiang Lushi and Jiang Zhuiying got out. The two looked refreshed, clearly having slept well. Especially Jiang Zhuiying, her fair skin had a healthy glow, almost like she was shining. What was going on? Weren't they supposed to have been up all night fixing the car? When Jiang Hai and Sun Kuan saw Jiang Lushur, they stared at him dumbfounded. Jiang Lushur lightly coughed and said, "I have spare glass and tires in my vehicle." Spare glass? That's a thing? It's normal to carry spare tires, but spare glass, this was the first time they'd heard of it. Even if he had the materials, repairing the car to such a state overnight was just too ridiculous. Most people might not understand how time-consuming and labor-intensive car repair was, but Jiang Hai was a professional mechanic, and Sun Kuan had often helped him. They were both ability users, yet whenever they did major repairs, they would end up drenched in sweat. For significant damage, they could only patch things up. To restore something to like new condition was basically impossible, not because it couldn't be done, but because, first, there was no time or energy for it, and second, there was no need. This wasn't an era where a flashy sports car made you look cool. The car's appearance didn't matter at all, no one would waste effort on that. So, when they looked at the minibus in Jiang Lushur, it was like they were seeing a ghost. He not only fixed the car but even restored its appearance perfectly. Just how easy must the repair have been? Moreover, they had guarded the gate last night. Although they were asleep, they remained alert and would wake up at any sound. Yet they didn't hear a single noise related to car repair. That was completely unreasonable. Jiang Lushur knew this excuse wouldn't convince anyone. That morning, when Jiang Zhuiying saw the vehicle, she directly turned back inside, mumbling, "I must have gotten out of bed wrong." Looking at Jiang Hai and Sun Kuan, Jiang Lushur repeated the explanation he had used with Jiang Zhuiying. "You should have noticed that I'm similar to you in some ways, but also a bit different." "Jiang Ji, I don't really get what you mean," Jiang Hai said, confused. Sun Kuan, however, remembered when Jiang Zhuiying had asked Jiang Lushur if he was an ability user after their battle with the Blood Wolves. Jiang Lushur hadn't directly denied it, just said he was a bit different. At the time, Sun Kuan hadn't understood and Jiang Zhuiying had quickly changed the subject, so he hadn't asked further. Now Jiang Lushur was saying this again. "I suppose I can be considered an ability user too, but I'm not like you with limb or cellular mutations," Jiang Lushur said. He couldn't reveal the starseed, and even more so the special nature of the base vehicle. But being just an ordinary person was too unbelievable. Using the identity of an ability user as a cover would make things appear more normal. Then, "Jiang Ji, what's your ability?" Jiang Hai scratched his head. From his understanding, if it wasn't limb or cell mutations, then what else could mutate? Ability users were basically all mutants, wasn't that common knowledge? Even Jiang Hai knew that. "Mechanical modification," Jiang Lushur said. Lying on the sofa the night before, he had thought it through. If he said brain domain evolution, it wouldn't be hard for Jiang Zhuiying and the others to understand, but linking that to vehicle repair would be tough. So he simply invented a new ability, mechanical modification. Strictly speaking, it wasn't entirely made up. Though all the modifications were done by the starseed, it was bound to Jiang Lushur and invisible to others. To them, the repairs and modifications appeared to be his doing, and the materials were indeed gathered by him. Mechanical modification? Jiang Hai and Sun Kuan exchanged glances, both looking confused. What kind of ability was that? "I have some special abilities in repairing and modifying machines. It's hard to explain exactly. As for the principle? Don't look at me like that, I don't know either," Jiang Lushur said calmly. What he said wasn't wrong. Many ability users knew what powers they had but couldn't explain the underlying principles, maybe their hands or legs mutated, or their cells. But how, or to what extent? They didn't know. If that was true for regular powers, it was even more reasonable for something as vague as mechanical modification. Yeah, with the apocalypse and all, nothing's surprising anymore. "Jiang Ji's ability is unusual, but not weird," Sun Kuan said, acting like he understood everything. Once apocalypse was mentioned, Jiang Hai also felt it wasn't that strange anymore. Zombies, strange? Mutant beasts, strange? Even they used to be normal people, now they were low-level ability users. So what? "Jiang Ji, even if your ability is for fixing cars or whatever, I think your shooting skill is related too, it's all mechanical. So this ability is great," Jiang Hai said with admiration. His own ability wasn't meant for repairs, but that's all he could use it for. The difference was just depressing. "Yeah, Jiang Ji, if your ability evolves, maybe you can modify guns too? You fixed a whole vehicle overnight, it's super useful in the apocalypse," Sun Kuan agreed. Jiang Lushur didn't know what to say. He hadn't said much, and yet these two not only accepted it, but even helped him justify and expand on it. "But Jiang Ji, your ability doesn't emit any energy signals. If you don't say anything, everyone would just think you're an ordinary person," Jiang Hai added. He and Sun Kuan had once been normal people, only becoming special after awakening abilities. So whether others could tell you had powers was something they cared about. But before he could finish, Sun Kuan pulled him aside. Look at Jiang Ji. Do you still need energy signals to tell if he's strong? Zhang Hai thought about it and agreed. They'd once seen Jiang Lushur as a normal guy, even a burden. Now, both of them completely accepted his strength. They were pretty sure now that Jiang Lushur had killed Yang Qingqing, even though he'd said it was an accident. Still, even if they knew the truth, they wouldn't complain. It had been a warning, don't mess with Jiang Lushur. Come on, time to eat. Zhang Hai ran over and grabbed 2 freshly grilled skewers of mutant beast meat, handing them to Jiang Lushur and Jiang Zhuing. In the apocalypse, eating was top priority, and the strongest in the group ate first. After eating, Jiang Lushur and the others set off. Zhang Hai and Sun Kuan, carrying so many supplies, felt a kind of nervousness, like regular people carrying a fortune through a crowd. They were eager to return to the camp as soon as possible. The survivors who had stayed at the villa base had been nervously waiting for news from Jiang Zhuing and her team for a whole day and night. Although they weren't freeloaders, without the ability users, survival would be extremely difficult relying solely on them as ordinary people. These people all knew that Jiang Zhuing had gone out to collect some kind of metal for her brother. Metal was something that couldn't be eaten or used to trade for supplies. On the contrary, this collection must have consumed quite a bit of supplies and weapons. But there's no choice. Zhuing is totally devoted to her brother. Whatever he wants to do, she supports unconditionally, a woman said to someone beside her. This woman was considered to have some influence among the ordinary people and was on good terms with the ability user Yang Qingqing, so her words carried a certain level of credibility. You can't really blame Zhuing. He is her biological brother after all, said one survivor. Zhuing has always been reliable in what she does. Maybe she has her own considerations, another survivor said hesitantly. Without Jiang Zhuing, they might not have even survived up to now. These people were all sincerely grateful to her. I'm not blaming Zhuing, the woman quickly said. I just think her brother should think more about her too, not be so selfish. Qingqing even tried to oppose it, but unfortunately, Zhuing wouldn't listen. Sigh, maybe she's just too emotionally involved. While speaking, she was also thinking about Yang Qingqing's plan, wondering how it was progressing. Before going to collect the metal, Yang Qingqing had complained to her and had vaguely mentioned making Jiang Lushur hand over the vehicle for public use. If he refused no matter what, she might even make Jiang Lushur disappear. Calculating against someone who's unprepared, the woman thought Yang Qingqing had a good chance of succeeding. Now, by saying these things to lower Jiang Zhuing's credibility and help Yang Qingqing gain more support, she would surely benefit once Yang Qingqing returned. For example, she might be assigned to that vehicle. That would significantly raise her chances of survival. Seeing that the others weren't responding, clearly still not completely disappointed in Jiang Zhuing, the woman rolled her eyes. A bunch of brainless fools. Do they really think sucking up to Jiang Zhuing will bring them more benefits? No matter, once Yang Qingqing and the others return, they'll know she was right. They're back. They're back. A lookout survivor on the rooftop saw the convoy entering the villa area and quickly ran down to report. Over a dozen survivors rushed to gather at the gate. That woman followed behind, her expression calm, as if she hadn't said anything earlier. Why is there a truck? Is it loaded with metal? Weren't they going to collect metal? The survivors waited anxiously at the gate. But unlike before, this time they weren't hoping for supplies, instead, they were anxious about how much had been consumed. Even if they wouldn't complain about Jiang Zhuing, the woman's earlier words had cast a shadow over their hearts. Soon, the 3 vehicles arrived at the villa gate. When Zhang Hai and Sun Kuan got off the vehicle, several survivors immediately stepped up, ready to help unload. Usually, everyone would be excited at this point, but facing a truckload of metal, it was hard to feel happy. Haha, you all better get ready to work hard today, Zhang Hai said with a laugh. The survivors forced out a smile. Seems heavy, huh? You collected a lot? If it weren't for Jiang Zhuing's sake, they couldn't even bring themselves to smile. Bringing back a bunch of useless metal was tiring and troublesome, and now everyone had to help unload it. There's quite a bit, but it wasn't collected, it was taken from a bunch of bastards, Sun Kuan said as he climbed onto the truck and reached to open the cargo door. Taken? Just some metal, what's there to take? Who would guard that like it was treasure? The survivors were confused. They'd already heard from that woman that Yang Qingqing and the others were unwilling to go and had no choice. But now Zhang Hai and Sun Kuan seemed quite happy? So cheerful, were they faking it? At that moment, clunk, the truck's cargo door opened. Inside the truck, the mutant beast meat packed in bags had shifted during the bumpy ride. Because it wasn't well secured, several bags slid toward the edge of the truck bed. As soon as the door opened, several bags fell right out and nearly hit the survivors, who screamed and backed away in fright, breaking into a cold sweat. "Be careful. That's metal," a survivor shouted out, but then abruptly stopped. Metal hitting the ground, no matter the type, would definitely make a loud and distinct sound. But these bags landed with a dull thud. The shape of the bags didn't look like they contained metal either. One of the survivors sniffed lightly. I think I smell meat," he said blankly to the others. "All right, stop fooling around, it is meat," Zhang Hai said loudly. "And not just this meat, the truck is full of supplies. Guns, bullets, meat, dried vegetables, and rations. Packed full." At that, the crowd was stunned. One survivor, skeptical, went up and opened a bag. Inside was a large chunk of fresh mutant beast meat. At the same time, another survivor had climbed into the truck and was rummaging around. He soon shouted excitedly, "It's all food. So much of it. Bringing back this much in one go, this was the first time. And such variety, everything they could want." With a loud rustling, the survivors all crowded around the truck. A few climbed in and began handing down bag after bag, box after box of supplies. "What about the metal?" a survivor asked someone nearby. At that moment, Zhang Hai opened the SUV's trunk and rear door. "There's more here. I need 2 more people." A few survivors walked over, guessing this vehicle must be carrying the metal. But when they lifted the heavy boxes, they discovered ammo. All bullets. "There are also guns, handle them carefully," Zhang Hai called out. "So you actually went to collect supplies?" The woman walked over cheerfully and said, "Qingqing must have persuaded you, right? Good thing Zhuiying finally listened and stopped going after that useless metal. If that's the case, the car must have been taken too. Maybe Jiang Lusher was even killed? If he was dead, then of course there'd be no need to collect metal anymore." The woman said gleefully, "Qingqing really is rational. That's such a relief." The few survivors nearby nodded knowingly after hearing this. So that's how it was. Everyone was happy to see so many supplies. What the woman said wasn't wrong. Luckily, Yang Qingqing stopped them, which led to such a big harvest. Unexpectedly, at this moment, Zhang Hai sneered at the woman. "Rational? Heh, this is lucky? If we hadn't gone to collect metal, where would these supplies come from? It should be, luckily went to help brother Jiang collect metal, that's what it should be." The woman was stunned, choked by his words. Why was Zhang Hai reacting like this? What did he mean? If they didn't go collect metal, they wouldn't have these supplies? And who told you that we didn't go collect metal? Zhang Hai picked up a shiny, polished gun and said, "These were taken by boss and brother Jiang while collecting metal. See this Type 81 rifle? It's now a hero. Heh, you didn't see how accurate it was in brother Jiang's hands. If you had seen it, even with twice the courage, you wouldn't dare to talk behind his back here." When Zhang Hai said this, he looked at the gun and sighed, "Now holding this gun, I feel like I'm insulting it. My shooting is just too poor. There's a saying, without comparison, there's no pain." Now, whenever Zhang Hai fires a shot, he feels like an idiot who can't hit anything. He didn't notice at all that after he finished speaking, the woman was already stunned, and the other survivors also turned their heads, looking at Jiang Lusher with expressions of disbelief. Soon, among the survivors, the origin of these supplies spread quickly. That survivor's guess wasn't unique, all of them had thought the same thing. But now, their thoughts were completely overturned. Jiang Lusher wasn't someone who only took advantage of his sister. On the contrary, time and time again, he proved with actions that he was powerful. Last time on the way to Satellite City, he killed a mutant beast. People thought it was because his car was powerful. Though their opinion of him improved, they didn't really admire him that much. But this time, Zhang Hai personally said it, Jiang Lusher himself was also not to be underestimated. At this stage, the difference between ability users and ordinary people wasn't huge, unless it was someone like Jiang Zhuiying. But a sharpshooter? That kind of combat power was far above most ability users. At this moment, the woman sneakily approached the minibus. Jiang Zhuiying had just gotten off the vehicle and was organizing the moving of supplies. The woman stood at the front of the vehicle, tiptoeing to look inside. Didn't seem like anyone was there? She now desperately wanted to ask Yang Qingqing what was going on, had the plan worked or not. If Yang Qingqing succeeded, she could also benefit. But from what Zhang Hai said earlier, maybe Yang Qingqing had failed, she had to hurry and find out. Hopefully Yang Qingqing hadn't been exposed. "What are you looking for?" a voice suddenly came from behind, scaring the woman so much she jumped and quickly turned around. "Brother Jiang," the woman looked at Jiang Lusher in front of her, and her heart suddenly sank. "Brother Jiang, you scared me." The woman smiled, patting her chest. She was slightly plump, with a considerable bust, and the pat made her chest jiggle. She used this method to cover up her surprise and panic. Jiang Lushi watched her reaction with great interest and asked, "From the looks of it, you were really startled, your face is pale. What were you just looking for?" The woman smiled slightly and pretended to be calm. "Looking for Qingqing, didn't see her." "You're looking for Yang Qingqing, why are you looking on my vehicle?" Jiang Lushi asked again. "Well, just in case she was," the woman didn't know what to say. She didn't know why, but the way Jiang Lushi looked at her made her feel strange, as if he already knew everything. But it was just her and Yang Qingqing talking at the time. How could Jiang Lushi know? Even though she thought this, she suddenly didn't want to keep facing Jiang Lushi. She felt a little flustered inside. "Forget it, it's quite busy now. Maybe I missed her. I'll look for her later," the woman said. As she spoke, she turned around to leave. But just as she turned, she let out a scream. Jiang Lushi had silently appeared in front of her again. "I'll take you to her," Jiang Lushi said as he reached out to grab her arm. Seeing Jiang Lushi's smile, the woman seemed to see a hint of coldness in it. Her heart jumped, and she tried to shake him off. "Brother Jiang, what are you doing, you?" Her physical ability was stronger than average, but as she tried to shake off his hand, Jiang Lushi still firmly grabbed her arm. Her struggle had no effect at all. The survivors were still moving supplies and in shock about the collection trip, when suddenly, they heard a scream. They looked over and saw Jiang Lushi dragging the woman to the minibus. The woman's face was twisted, struggling desperately while screaming, "What are you doing? Zhuiying! Zhuiying! Look at what your brother is doing." Jiang Lushi was a young man, and naturally stronger than the woman. She had no ability to resist being held by him. But when the woman opened her mouth to bite, Jiang Lushi smirked coldly and reached to his waist. "Be honest." A cold gun barrel was pressed against her head, and the woman immediately froze, terrified. "Jiang Lushi, what are you doing? Are you crazy? Zhuiying! Zhuiying! Qingqing! Qingqing, help me!" The other survivors, including Zhang Hai, Sun Kuan, and Jiang Zhuiying, all came over. Though Zhang Hai and Sun Kuan didn't know what happened, they said nothing after seeing the scene. They had some understanding of Jiang Lushi's personality, not someone to provoke lightly, but also not someone who liked trouble. Unless this woman did something, Jiang Lushi wouldn't treat her like this. As for the other survivors, they had heard of Jiang Lushi's strength, but had never seen him act. Now, looking into Jiang Lushi's eyes, they truly felt a chill from him. He wasn't bluffing, he really had killing intent. The woman felt it even more intensely. Her face was drenched in sweat, and her screams were becoming hoarse. "What do you want? Are you all just going to watch?" "Stop him," the woman screamed. "Stop pretending. Yang Qingqing wanted me dead, to take my vehicle. Isn't that something you know well? You just came to check if I was dead, didn't you? What a pity, sorry to disappoint you. Otherwise, if Yang Qingqing had killed me and taken my car, you could have gotten a share too, right?" Jiang Lushi said. "You're looking for Yang Qingqing? I'll take you to her," Jiang Lushi said with a smile. After hearing this, the woman immediately stopped screaming. Her expression froze, her face turned pale, and she looked at Jiang Lushi in terror. "Yang Qingqing, dead? Everything exposed too? No, no, no. It has nothing to do with me. I originally wanted to warn you, but Yang Qingqing threatened me. I didn't do anything." The woman, after being stunned for a moment, immediately screamed wildly. Jiang Lushi wanted to kill her. She didn't want to die. The survivors, still confused and not knowing what had happened or why the scene suddenly broke out, were shocked the moment they heard Jiang Lushi's words. Yang Qingqing wanted to kill Jiang Lushi? Wanted to take his vehicle? Such a thing actually happened. At this time a survivor, with a complicated expression, spoke. "No wonder you kept talking about this trip. So the two of you teamed up, wanted to kill and take the car. You and Yang Qingqing, this is too heartless. Damn, really snake and scorpion heart. Brother Jiang saved her life before on the way to Satellite City. Otherwise, with her skills, just wait to die." Zhang Hai cursed angrily. He and Sun Kuan had only known that Yang Qingqing disliked Jiang Lushi, but didn't know she actually had such vicious thoughts. Before, when they guessed Yang Qingqing was killed by Jiang Lushi, they only sighed that he was ruthless and couldn't be provoked, even opposing him wasn't allowed. But now, hearing this, Yang Qingqing was simply damned. Jiang Lushi was not someone to provoke, but he also wasn't unreasonable. Killing Yang Qingqing was justified. These survivors also immediately grew angry. Yang Qingqing had acted without considering any consequences at all, completely selfish. If something happened to Jiang Lushi, how would Jiang Zhuiying react? Their hope of survival lay with these ability users, and the most important was, of course, Jiang Zhuiying. Yang Qingqing's malice could have implicated them, but she didn't care at all. Now that Yang Qingqing was already dead, they turned their angry eyes on Yang Qingqing's accomplice. No! No! The woman gave a venomous glance at the survivor who had sold her out, then wailed toward Jiang Zhuiying. Zhuiying, listen to me. Aren't we sisters? We went through life and death together. Jiang Zhuiying was usually approachable, and though she appeared calm and decisive, she was still a young girl with a soft heart. Maybe she wouldn't have the heart to kill her. However, this time, when the woman saw Jiang Zhuiying, her heart immediately sank to the bottom. Jiang Zhuiying was now looking at her in silence, with eyes like looking at a dead person. Forget sparing her. Seeing this stance, if Jiang Zhuiying didn't step up and fry her into charcoal, it was already being very restrained. Jiang Zhuiying's heart was kind, but that depended on what the matter was. Trying to harm her brother had already completely crossed her bottom line. Jiang Zhuiying's bottom line was Jiang Lushi. You're not looking for Yang Qingqing anymore? Jiang Lushi smiled at the woman screaming and asked doubtfully. No. I'm not looking for her. She deserves to die. It's all her. Nothing to do with me. Even if I said those things, I didn't do anything. I didn't act. The woman was already in tears and snot, Jiang Zhuiying's reaction making her completely despair. She had survived with difficulty, she couldn't die now over something like this. Zhang Hai, come over. Jiang Lushi had originally intended to shoot the woman dead. But killing in front of these survivors wasn't very good. A few minutes later, outside the residential area, the woman was thrown off the vehicle, dumped on the main road. Our camp can't take you anymore. You go on your own. The woman stood there, her face ashen, body trembling like a sieve. Let her go on her own? Heh. That was worse than shooting her. No, don't, But after throwing her off, the vehicle turned around without hesitation. It wasn't even Jiang Lushi personally sending her off, Zhang Hai and the others did it instead. Throwing her off the car was no different from throwing away trash. The woman stood in the street, shivering all over, for the first time truly feeling what despair meant. At this time, among more than a dozen zombies in the distance, one slowly turned its head. Seeing that ferocious face, the woman couldn't help crying. In an instant, like a chain reaction, all those zombies suddenly turned their heads. When there was no prey, these zombies just wandered slowly, but once they saw prey, they would immediately burst out with speed stronger than a sprint champion and with astonishing strength. A few seconds later, the woman's screams drifted far into the ears of Zhang Hai and the others. For them, this woman wasn't worth any sympathy at all. The survivors watched the woman being taken away. Although they didn't see it with their own eyes, they could more or less imagine the fate she was about to face. Toward Jiang Lushi, they now felt both respect and fear. His strength was proven, and his decisive killing of Yang Qingqing and the woman shocked everyone. Some people had no covetous thoughts about Jiang Liushi's vehicle but had been curious. Now that curiosity was gone. Brother Jiang should join our team, right? Don't know yet, hopefully. Without Yang Qingqing, if we could get Brother Jiang instead, that'd be great. The survivors secretly discussed among themselves. They now eagerly hoped Jiang Lushi would join. If Jiang Lushi also joined, he and Jiang Zhuiying together would make survival much easier. Of course, easy wasn't really possible, the number of zombies was too many. The area they were in now was just the suburbs where zombies were relatively few, on the city outskirts. The real zombie-dense city center was truly a forbidden zone for the living. The scene of zombies packed densely together was terrifying just to think about, let alone approach. After resting one night at the villa camp, early the next morning, Zhang Hai and Sun Kuan hurried out. They only drove one refrigerated truck, carrying no supplies, traveling light, heading to Satellite City to find buyers. Zhang Hai had reinforced his refrigerated truck again, improving safety a little. Though it was still far inferior to the minibus, going out and back should be fine. Really, car to car, it made you want to throw it away. If it were the minibus, there'd be no need for the word should. It would definitely be fine. Last time going to Satellite City, they had accidentally encountered a mutant beast. But mutant beasts weren't something you ran into often. In fact, the chance of an accidental encounter was very low. Especially just the two of them, without any mutant beast meat on them, the chance of attracting a mutant beast was even lower. So with just the two of them going, as long as they were careful enough, there wouldn't be much problem. At the villa camp, Jiang Lushi finally got a rare moment to rest. First, he had a good night's sleep, and the next morning, he moved his body a bit. Jiang Lushi knew that after his brain domain evolved, his neural response speed became very fast, but his physical reaction still couldn't keep up. Those professional athletes have very strong physical fitness, coordination, and reaction abilities. For example, football players, NBA basketball players, and fencing athletes, their physical response is very fast, and their neural response speed is also much stronger than that of ordinary people. Of course, the neural response speed they achieve through training can't compare at all with Jiang Liusher's brain evolution. But the physical response speed they gain through training is exactly what Jiang Liusher needs now. Athletes' training is the result of years of accumulation. Jiang Liusher certainly didn't expect to achieve the same results in a short time, but he could still do some targeted training. Guns are already very fast, pulling the trigger only takes a split second, which suits Jiang Liusher's current condition very well. But using a gun doesn't mean physical response speed isn't needed. Before, Jiang Liusher was in the vehicle, with a narrow shooting angle, no need to adjust. Even if he needed to adjust, it was done by moving the vehicle. But what if he got out of the car? Jiang Liusher upgraded the biological lab and developed genetic evolution serum just to ensure he could fight even when off the vehicle. There would always be times he needed to get out. Jiang Liusher chose 2 pistols. He already had a Type 54 pistol. From the weapons obtained from the Blood Wolf, he picked another Type 54. The Type 54 is a military pistol, nicknamed the Black Star, with very strong penetration power. At close range, it can shoot through 2 people with no problem, pierce bulletproof vests, and even go through a certain thickness of brick wall. Naturally, Jiang Liusher would choose a powerful weapon like this. The Type 81 rifle had great killing power, but in narrow spaces, it wasn't as good as a pistol, which was more concealed and portable. So Jiang Liusher had already decided, on the vehicle, he'd use the Type 81, once off, he'd use the pistol. Holding the 2 pistols and enough bullets, Jiang Liusher drove the base vehicle out. There weren't many zombies around this villa area. Jiang Liusher didn't drive far before stopping the car. After observing the surroundings, he sat inside and checked the guns again, loaded the bullets, and walked to the car door. Getting out of the car in a zombie-threatened area, and even actively searching for zombies, this was the first time for Jiang Liusher. He lightly exhaled and gave an order to the starseed, "Open the door." With a soft click, the door opened. As the outside air rushed in, Jiang Liusher immediately felt his skin tighten slightly. The street was filled with the faint smell of blood and the stench of rotting corpses. After getting out, Jiang Liusher stood alone on the street, giving off a feeling of desolation. The once bustling eastern central city was now dead silent. Some cars had crashed, some were abandoned by the roadside, doors wide open. Shops along the road were pitch dark inside, things scattered in disarray. Some windows were shattered and stained with blood. Just seeing such a scene made one's scalp tingle. Jiang Liusher controlled the starseed to close the car door, then slowly gripped his gun and cautiously took 2 steps forward. He stayed close to the base vehicle. If surrounded immediately, that would be too much. This way, he could return to the vehicle at any time. The door was beside him, and one command would open it instantly. Even though his steps were light, Jiang Liusher could still clearly hear the sound of his own footsteps. And he knew, he wasn't truly alone on this street, more precisely, he was the only living person. Jiang Liusher looked toward the surrounding shops and the pitch-black windows above. He vaguely felt some gazes staring at him. Click! Suddenly, Jiang Liusher heard a sound from the side and turned sharply. Hiss! At that moment, Jiang Liusher suddenly felt a strong sense of danger. A foul wind rushed from behind. From the corner of his eye, he caught sight of a zombie. It was a female zombie, with a good figure, wearing a dress, covered in blood and dirt. One foot still wore a high heel, the other barefoot, uneven, yet she ran terrifyingly fast. No time to fully turn. Jiang Liusher stretched his right hand under his left armpit, twisted his body slightly. In his view, the female zombie's speed instantly slowed. Bang! A gunshot, a bloody hole appeared in her left chest. She collapsed, still reaching toward Jiang Liusher, fingers just under 5 meters away from him. At this moment, his left hand also fired. The 2 gunshots were almost simultaneous. From the direction of the earlier sound, a child zombie, about 7 or 8 years old, came crawling out of a store. 2 gunshots in a row were like a loudspeaker shouting, "Dinner time," to the zombies with sharp hearing. Zombies could instantly judge the direction of the sound. After killing 2 zombies, Jiang Liusher exhaled again, tightened his grip on the gun. They were coming. Hiss! In the blink of an eye, more than 10 zombies appeared, at the intersection, upstairs, in the shops, at alley corners. As soon as they appeared, they charged madly toward Jiang Liusher. He stood in the middle of the street. To the zombies, he was a massive, irresistible lure. Over a dozen zombies charging at once was terrifying. Few people have experienced being attacked by a dozen at the same time, let alone zombies. So many hands reaching for one person would paralyze most people with fear. Although Jiang Lushur had been surrounded by even more zombies inside his vehicle, facing them alone like this was a first. The visual and psychological shock and fear were overwhelming. Focus. Jiang Lushur activated his ability. Instantly, the zombies moved in slow motion, like a sudden slow motion scene in an action movie. Everything he couldn't clearly see before became visible. These zombies hadn't appeared all at once. More were coming, some near, some far, and they weren't all reaching him at the same time. To ordinary people, those few seconds of difference meant nothing. But to Jiang Lushur, they were his only chance to kill them all. Exhale, in slow motion, even his breathing felt slower. The fear vanished. In his eyes, only the zombies remained. Now. Shoot. The first shot targeted the closest zombie. The second, 2 zombies nearly in a straight line. Penetrated both. Jiang Lushur's body couldn't keep up, but by minimizing his movements, he could match his eye speed. Faster. More accurate. From a zombie's perspective, Jiang Lushur was constantly rotating slightly, changing his gun's angle, no aiming, no big movements. Moving and shooting happened at the same time. Normally, changing body posture takes time. But if the gun is adjusted with minimal motion, it's faster. And the hard part isn't movement, it's aiming while doing that. That's what tests shooting precision, and that was Jiang Lushur's strength. Shoot! Jiang Lushur pulled the trigger. But not a single bullet was fired blindly. In this kind of situation, many would panic and shoot wildly, and die quickly. Only calmness and 1 shot per zombie would let him survive. At first, he shot for the left chest, a large target. But as the zombies got closer, there was no time to aim for the chest. Heads, eyes, all targets. 1 shot per zombie. If one missed, rhythm broke, and he'd have no choice but to retreat into the car. But now, Jiang Lushur didn't think of retreating. Zombies fell one after another. The last 4 were less than 3 meters away. Bang bang bang. When the last zombies fell around him, the final 2 were only 1 meter away. One had an eye blown out, the other shot precisely between the brows. When they fell, their bloody hands had touched the tips of Jiang Lushur's shoes. In just a few seconds, Jiang Lushur felt like he'd just run 2,000 meters. Sweat covered his forehead and palms. He stepped back to lean on the car, eyes still scanning around, breathing heavily. He noticed his body heating up. At the start of the fight, he was too slow, but quickly, his speed slightly improved. The improvement wasn't visible, but he could feel it through his ability. Mutant beast meat. Jiang Lushur thought about its effects. Regular people who ate it long-term could improve their constitution. People who ate mutant beast meat saw faster training results. Through this practice, Jiang Lushur also became more familiar with using his brain domain. Ability users evolve through fighting and eating mutant beast meat, so did Jiang Lushur's brain. And thanks to the meat, his physical condition also improved during the training. The gunshots attracted more and more zombies from farther away. In the end, every zombie within hearing range was drawn to Jiang Lushur's location. After firing the last shot, Jiang Lushur stood in place and waited for 3 minutes, but no new zombies appeared. He wiped his sweat, lowered his gun, and glanced around. Centered around him and the base vehicle, the street within a 30-meter radius was littered with zombie corpses. Especially in the fan-shaped area in front of him, the bodies were piled thickly. However, between him and the corpses, there was an empty space about 1 square meter wide, completely filled with spent shell casings and empty magazines. The Type 54 pistol only holds 8 rounds. Jiang Lushur wielded dual pistols, so that was 16 bullets. While shooting, he always kept count of the remaining bullets in the magazines, avoiding wasting time by firing an empty gun. Being able to do this in such extreme tension was thanks to the ability brought by his brain domain evolution. Blood flowed from the pile of corpses and trickled toward his feet. Jiang Lushur stared at the bodies for a few more seconds, then said to the starseed, "Open the door." Buzz. The base vehicle started up and bumped slightly as it crushed over the corpses, heading back toward the villa district. The street full of zombie corpses was left behind by the base vehicle, a disturbing sight. Inside the vehicle, Jiang Lushur held the steering wheel with both hands, his expression slightly excited. During the latter part of the training, as the number of zombies increased, he had nearly reached the point of firing the moment he saw a zombie, relying entirely on his strong nerves to instantly adjust his aim. What Jiang Lushur needed now was to train his sense of hand control and coordination between hand and brain. If he could attack at any time with simultaneous aiming and shooting like an instinct, then his aim could fully keep up with his neural response speed. Of course, today's training was only to familiarize Jiang Lushur with this combat style. To become proficient, he needed more practice, until his body fully memorized the muscle movement patterns. Also, the combat scenario he practiced today was relatively simple. When actually entering a building to search, zombies don't come from dozens of meters away, they appear suddenly in front or behind. In that case, the reaction time might be only 0.1 seconds. This mutant beast meat is really useful. After such high-intensity training, my muscles are just warm, without the slightest soreness. Jiang Lushi moved his fingers on the steering wheel. Despite firing repeatedly, his arms and fingers didn't feel uncomfortable at all. High-speed movement under muscle tension and repeated recoil usually lead to soreness, and a single round of training could make it hard to even lift your arms. But Jiang Lushi had no such problem. What he felt most strongly now was hunger. His stomach growled, and he felt like he could eat a whole cow. Still driving, he impatiently grabbed a few chocolate bars from the dashboard, ripped them open with his teeth, and stuffed them in his mouth. No, I need meat. I need mutant beast meat. These ordinary foods couldn't satisfy him at all. His stomach felt completely empty. Now Jiang Lushi finally understood what mutant beast meat meant to ability users. After every battle, they could eat large amounts of it. Although Jiang Lushi's body hadn't mutated, his brain had evolved, and the energy consumption from its high-speed operation wasn't any less than from physical muscles. Using such a beyond-human ability brought the same exhaustion. Back at the villa camp, Jiang Zhuiying sat to the side cupping her cheeks, eyes wide as she watched Jiang Lushi eat nearly 6 pounds of mutant beast meat in one go. There were more than 10 plates stacked beside him. Only after swallowing the last bite of tender and juicy mutant meat did Jiang Lushi finally show a satisfied expression and set down his chopsticks. Finally full, Jiang Lushi said. That gnawing hunger had been unbearable. Now that so much mutant meat was in his stomach, warm currents flowed from his abdomen to every part of his body, bringing a very comfortable feeling. He felt a faint itching sensation under his skin, as if something was crawling around inside. As this feeling spread, the stamina he had expended was quickly recovering. His mind felt clearer than ever, even without using his ability, his vision seemed sharper than usual. Brother, is it tasty? Jiang Zhuiying asked with a grin. Zhuiying's grilled meat is pretty good, Jiang Lushi also smiled. Mutant beast meat was a necessity for ability users. Without it, they couldn't use their powers at all, like cars needing fuel, or rockets needing propellant. Extraordinary power always needed a source. At that moment, loud conversation came from outside. Sun Quan and Zhang Hai walked in laughing. Brother Jiang. We've got the info. After eliminating the Blood Wolf group, they had obtained a large number of weapons. Jiang Zhuiying's squad couldn't use them all, so they wanted to trade them for mutant beast cores. Sun Quan and Zhang Hai were tasked with finding buyers. Brother Jiang, here's the situation. Blood Wolf left too many weapons, no single squad can buy that much. To sell all of them, we have two options. One is Jinling Satellite City, the military's temporary base. There are many squads there. If we sell in the city, we could probably unload everything. But the price, it'll need to be a few grades lower than the military's. As Sun Quan explained, Jiang Lushi nodded. The military's weapons were mostly new. If they tried to sell second-hand gear at the same price, why would anyone buy from them? Also, the military had more trust from civilians, people wouldn't worry about getting defective goods. But with second-hand weapons, buyers couldn't be sure, they weren't familiar with guns and wouldn't feel confident. What's the other place? The second one, it's far. A black market on the outskirts of Jinling, near Lan County. Because it's far from the military's acquisition point, many squads nearby can't make it to the satellite city. That place's market is self-organized, and weapons are rare. Just pistols go for 50 to 60% more than in the city. As for rifles, even 2 or 3 times more wouldn't be surprising. Oh? Jiang Lushi's eyes lit up. In Huaxia, rifles and submachine guns could only be found in military zones and armed police units. Ordinary police stations might have a few pistols and bulletproof vests. After the apocalypse began, pistols were still relatively easy to get. But rifles? If you were far from the military, it was really hard to get one. The pistols in the black market likely came from the satellite city, the farther the transport, the higher the value. If there's any product or service that saw the biggest price increase after the apocalypse, it probably wasn't food, but delivery. How far is the black market from here? Jiang Lushi was already tempted. Selling weapons in the satellite city would not only mean losing profit but also offending the military. After all, they'd be taking business on the military's turf. But the black market had more than double the price difference, which was enough to move Jiang Lushi. The trip was far, but with the base vehicle, it shouldn't be too dangerous. About 80 to 90 kilometers. But some highways are blocked by abandoned vehicles, and some places need detours. I used to be from Jinling, that black market is in the outskirts of Lan County. I know the place. Zhang Hai said simply. Jiang Lushur nodded. All right, no time to waste, let's head out. Got it. Zhang Hai and Sun Kuan were fired up after Jiang Lushur made the call. Since following Jiang Lushur, they had won every fight, and their blood was pumping. Many people have a hidden spirit of adventure. Although the apocalypse was brutal, it sometimes stirred people's fighting instincts. Zhang Hai jumped into the freezer truck and started the engine. Sun Kuan drove a Hummer SUV. As for Jiang Zhuiying and Jiang Lushur, of course, they still used the base vehicle. Jiang Zhuiying had completely fallen in love with Jiang Liushur's base vehicle. She could shower, charge devices anytime, and there was enough anime on board to watch for a long time. They had just started driving, and Jiang Zhuiying was already charging the vehicle's battery system. Jiang Zhuiying was a charging slave. She had to fully charge her phone every night or she'd feel uneasy. Unexpectedly, she hadn't dropped this habit even after the world ended. Jiang Lushur shook his head and didn't bother with her. Being with his sister and having this all-in-one minibus, in this crazy apocalypse, this was the only place that gave Jiang Lushur a sense of peace. Lan County was in the opposite direction of the satellite city. From Jiang Zhuiying's base to Lan County, the route passed through mostly suburban and rural areas. 80 to 90 kilometers would have taken about an hour before the apocalypse. Now, even 3 to 4 hours was a guess. If any accidents happened, it could easily take a whole day. As the base vehicle drove away from the residential area and into the outskirts, the site was full of destruction. Abandoned cars everywhere, scattered junk, burned houses. Nearby small stores had been looted by survivors, windows shattered, interiors trashed, brown bloodstains on the ground, occasional scattered corpses. These corpses were zombies, and already partially decomposed. No living person would leave a corpse here. Zombies are very sensitive to the smell of blood and especially love fresh flesh. A dead human would be devoured entirely, not even bones left, just a black puddle of blood. Even zombies, once dead, would be eaten by other zombies. But the hardened, spoiled flesh wasn't as tasty as fresh meat, which is why some of it remained. Even though the apocalypse had lasted this long, these broken zombie corpses hadn't rotted. Like mutant beast meat, they could last long even in hot, humid conditions. But that zombie stench still made it hard to breathe. Brother Jiang, there's a horde ahead, maybe 20 or 30 zombies. Zhang Hai's voice came from the front vehicle. Run them over, Jiang Lushur replied calmly. Okay. Zhang Hai stepped on the gas. The powerful freezer truck roared forward, its thickened steel plate crashing into the zombie horde. Bang bang bang. Heavy thuds rang out. A dozen zombies were knocked flying. The minibus followed behind. Any zombies that slipped through were run over by Jiang Lushur. Sun Kuan, in the middle, was much safer. His SUV couldn't handle running over zombies like the others, 1 or 2 maybe, but a group would block it. Jiang Lushur held the steering wheel with one hand, and with the other, rested his Type 81 rifle at the window. He was on guard for mutant beasts. A small group of zombies posed no threat to the base vehicle, but if there was a mutant beast, that'd be a different story. So far, all the mutant beasts Jiang Lushur had encountered were level 1. He still didn't know what a level 2 was like. At that moment, Jiang Lushur felt a slight tremor in his mental sea. The voice of the starseed sounded in his mind. Base vehicle AI completion, 75%. Host can now choose base vehicle butler form. Huh? Jiang Lushur was stunned. Choose a form? After killing Blood Wolf, the base vehicle had entered its second stage and began constructing a vehicle butler. He hadn't thought about what the base butler would be. Now, a selection panel appeared in front of his eyes. First option, choose specialization. Jiang Lushur read Starseed's explanation. The base vehicle butler would have twice the physical capacity of an average person, strength and reflexes both, but on top of that, you could select a specialization, greater strength, faster speed, stronger defense, more precise shooting, etc. Defense and precision were eliminated first. A base butler needed to assist and protect him, just having strong defense was pointless. As for precision, it overlapped with him, so also useless. Jiang Lushur didn't choose right away. He kept reading. The second option made him pause, choose gender. Gender? So the base butler was a person? Jiang Lushur hadn't been sure if the butler would be human, a robot, or just a software, like an auto-driving AI. But now, it was a person. That was interesting. He kept reading. Choosing gender wouldn't affect the butler's abilities. Male or female, same stats. The third option was the butler's appearance. It was fully customizable by the host, could be modeled after someone the host had seen before, or entirely imagined. The fine details would be filled in by the base AI. Jiang Lushur froze for a while. Based on people he'd seen before, could he pick Superman, Wolverine, Hulk? Having a Wolverine by his side would definitely look cool. But only an idiot would pick that. Sure, Wolverine looked badass. But if he didn't have Wolverine's powers, what was the point? Having a big muscular guy around, even eating would feel awkward. Since all abilities were the same, twice normal strength, one chosen specialty, then. Jiang Lushur cleared his throat. Some weird thoughts popped into his mind. This base vehicle system was kind of tempting him to commit a crime. According to the base vehicle's description, the base vehicle butler would be absolutely loyal to him. Among the choices available, Jiang Lushur first looked at the second option, gender. As for gender, since male and female abilities were the same anyway, he might as well pick a female. She'd be more pleasing to the eye. As for appearance, it was easy to imagine some celebrities from before the apocalypse, but now that the world had ended, what use were celebrities? Jiang Lushur had no interest in modeling after any stars. If he were to imagine all kinds of cute girls, stockings, long legs, soft types, lowless, long black straight hair, sweet and dumb types. Cough cough, thinking a bit too much. But imagine this kind of scene. A beautiful girl with long black straight hair, wearing stockings and a short skirt, curvy figure, long straight legs, always following him, completely obedient, but when enemies appear, she suddenly pulls out a huge battle axe taller than herself and splits a wall with one strike? Or a sweet and cute lowly, just smiling innocently a moment ago, suddenly pulling out a rocket launcher taller than herself from behind her back and blasting a building? Jiang Lushur didn't know where these twisted thoughts came from, but once they appeared, he couldn't get rid of them. Camouflage. It's all for camouflage. That's what Jiang Lushur told himself. In the apocalypse, only camouflage gives the element of surprise, only that lets you survive. If you bring along a guy built like a tower of muscles, people would treat you like a humanoid beast and be on high alert. If a fight broke out, your power would be greatly reduced. So, choosing a soft-looking girl wasn't for perversion, it was for camouflage. Jiang Lushur quickly gave himself a perfectly reasonable excuse to justify his evil thoughts with a straight face. Next, how should he choose? Jiang Lushur mentally went through many beautiful appearances. This one's too young, might be misunderstood. That one's too sexy, dressed like that in the apocalypse would be too flashy. No good. After thinking for a while and reluctantly rejecting several ideas, he finally settled on the image. In his mind, he kept building the appearance of the base vehicle butler. And so, a 17 or 18-year-old girl gradually became voluptuous. Jet black flowing long hair, like a waterfall draped over her shoulders, a high nose bridge, thin willow leaf eyebrows, big, bright eyes like a pool of autumn water. Her lips were slender and obedient looking, slightly smiling, yet within that smile, there was a hint of cold elegance. A shiny black top, with a tight-fitting short white t-shirt underneath, outlining her full and tall chest, while also exposing her slim waist. Her waist was thin but surprisingly flexible. Below was a black short skirt, revealing a pair of breathtakingly long, beautiful legs, and on her feet, dark red military boots. Done. Looking at his creation, Jiang Lushur stroked his chin, even he felt it was perfect. In real life, a figure like that, legs like that, a face like that, you'd never find one in a million. Appearance selection complete. Confirm. Confirm. Please enter a name. Name? Let's go with Ing, Shadow. Even among countless beauties, Ing would absolutely be one of the most beautiful. She combined all the beauty of Eastern girls, and most importantly, she was distinct. Her traits were very clear, those traits came from the combination of her facial features and body, forming a unique aura. She was the one. Jiang Lushur thought so. He chose Ing as her name because he hoped this girl could follow him like a shadow and fight by his side. Appearance and name confirmed. Generating? Remaining, 25%. The starseeds prompt came again. 25%, feels like it's taking forever. Jiang Lushur was starting to get impatient. He wondered how strong Ying's combat power would be. Along the bumpy road from the base to the black market, they encountered many zombie hordes. At first, the freezer truck led the way, but after just a dozen kilometers, it couldn't hold up any further, and the tires would have been bitten through. They had no choice but to switch to the minibus in front. Relying on Jiang Lushur's base vehicle, they fought through dozens of kilometers, took a detour along a side road, and finally neared Lan County. Only Jiang Lushur's base vehicle could manage this. Any other vehicle, even a heavy-duty truck, wouldn't survive plowing through zombie piles over and over. These zombies were terrifyingly strong. Just the windshield, a few crazed zombies could smash it. Once the glass shattered, you'd be partying with the zombies. Even a well-equipped elite squad would have to pay a big price to cross 100 kilometers in Jinling City. Not to mention casualties, even the amount of ammo required would be unaffordable. Shooting mutant beasts was worth it. But using bullets on zombies? Totally pointless. Zombies were much harder to kill than humans. A person hit once by an assault rifle, even if not in a vital spot, would immediately lose combat power. But zombies, unless you hit the heart or head, would keep crawling even with broken legs. These zombies seemed to have gotten a bit stronger. As they neared Lan County, Jiang Lushur looked at the small group of zombies they had just run over, and thought to himself. Since the apocalypse started, humans were slowly evolving. Ability users were all growing stronger. What about zombies? Maybe they were evolving too. Thinking of this, Jiang Lushur took a deep breath. Who knew what the world would become next? Brother Jiang. The black market is just ahead. Zhang Hai accelerated and caught up next to Jiang Lushur's base vehicle, rolled down the freezer truck's window and shouted. Jiang Lushur looked in the direction he pointed. At the far end of the road was a hazy town. In it, faintly visible, were some vehicles and tents gathered together. It was already near sunset. The sun in the west cast a reddish glow, lighting up the clouds like fire. And that grayish little town, under the brilliant sunset, stood out as a heavy patch of gray, a faint shadow quietly spreading, waiting for total darkness to fall. Jiang Lushur looked at the black market town and nodded. All right. As described by the base vehicle butler is absolutely loyal to its master. Among the available choices, Jiang Lushur first looked at the second one, gender. As for gender, since male and female abilities are the same, he might as well choose a female. More pleasing to look at, right? As for appearance, it would be easy to imagine some pre-apocalypse celebrities, but now, in the apocalypse, what use are celebrities? Jiang Lushur wasn't interested in imagining celebrity looks. If he imagined all kinds of cute girls, stockings, long legs, soft girls, Lolas, long black straight hair, sweet dumb types. Cough cough, he was thinking too much. But just imagine the scene. A beautiful girl with long black straight hair, wearing stockings and a short skirt, with a stunning figure, long straight legs, always following him, fully obedient. But when enemies show up, she suddenly pulls out a massive axe taller than herself and smashes down a wall with one strike? Or a cute and sweet-looking little lowly, who was just innocently smiling, then suddenly pulls a rocket launcher from behind, one that's taller than she is, and blows up a building? Jiang Lushur didn't know where all this twisted taste came from, but once the idea popped into his head, it wouldn't go away. Camouflage. It's all for camouflage. That's what Jiang classmate told himself. In the apocalypse, only by disguising yourself can you catch enemies off guard, that's how you survive. Otherwise, if you brought along some tower-like muscle guy, people would immediately treat you as a humanoid beast and keep their guard up. Once a fight starts, you'd lose the element of surprise. So, choosing a soft girl wasn't for perversion, it was for camouflage. Jiang Lushur quickly found a perfectly reasonable excuse that let him righteously embrace his evil plan. Next, how should he choose? In his mind, Jiang Lushur quickly scrolled through the faces of many beautiful women. This one's too young, might be misunderstood. That one's too sexy, dressing like that in the apocalypse would draw too much attention. Not good. He thought for quite a while, reluctantly rejecting several ideas, and finally settled on one. In his mind, he continuously imagined what the base vehicle butler would look like. Thus, the figure of a 17 or 18-year-old girl gradually became voluptuous. Jet black flowing long hair, like a black waterfall draping down her shoulders. A high nose bridge, thin willow leaf eyebrows, large expressive eyes like autumn water. Her lips were slim and well-shaped, as if smiling, but within that smile, there was a hint of cold beauty. A black glossy top, under it a tight short white t-shirt, outlining her full, tall chest while exposing a slender waist. Though her waist was thin, it was filled with flexibility. Below was a black short skirt, revealing a pair of breathtakingly long legs. On her feet, dark red military boots. Done. Looking at his creation, Jiang Lushur stroked his chin, even he felt it was perfect. In real life, a figure like this, legs like this, a face like this, you'd never find one in a million. Appearance selected. Confirm. Confirm. Please enter a name. Name? Let's call her Ing, Shadow. Even among countless beauties, Ing was absolutely gorgeous. She combined all the aesthetics of Eastern girls, and most importantly, she was distinct. Her traits were very prominent, a unique aura formed by the combination of her features and figure. She's the one. That's what Jiang Lushur thought. He chose the name Ing because he hoped this girl could follow him like a shadow, fighting alongside him. Appearance and name confirmed. Generating? Remaining, 25%. The Starseeds notification came again. 25%, this is taking forever. Jiang Lushur felt a bit impatient. He couldn't wait to see how powerful Ing would be. Along the bumpy journey from the base to the black market, they encountered quite a few zombie hordes. At first, the freezer truck led the way, but after just over 10 kilometers, it couldn't take it anymore. Any further and the tires would have been chewed to pieces. They had no choice but to put the minibus in front. With Jiang Liusher's base vehicle clearing the way, they fought their way through dozens of kilometers and made a detour down a side path, finally approaching Lan County. Only Jiang Liusher's base vehicle could handle this. If it were any other vehicle, even a heavy-duty truck, it wouldn't survive constantly charging through zombie packs. These zombies were insanely strong. Just the windshield, a few desperate zombies could smash it open. Once it's broken, get ready to party with the zombies. Even an elite team, trying to cross 100 kilometers in Jinling City, would pay a hefty price, not to mention potential casualties. Just the ammo consumption alone was unaffordable. Shooting mutant beasts was worth it. But shooting zombies? Totally pointless right now. Zombies are more resilient than humans. A person hit once by an assault rifle, even if it's not a vital spot, would instantly lose combat strength. But zombies? Unless you hit the heart or head, they'll crawl forward even with broken legs. These zombies seem a bit stronger now. As they neared Lan County, Jiang Liusher glanced at the small group of zombies they'd just run over, and thought to himself. Ever since the apocalypse started, humans have slowly been evolving. Ability users are getting stronger. What about zombies? Maybe they're evolving too. Thinking this, Jiang Liusher took a deep breath. Who knows what this world would turn into next? Brother Jiang, the black market is right ahead. Zhang Hai sped up and pulled his freezer truck alongside Jiang Liusher's base vehicle, rolled down the window, and shouted. Jiang Liusher looked in that direction. At the far end of the road was a gray, hazy little town. Within that town, he could vaguely make out some vehicles and tents gathered together. It was now near sunset. The western sun cast a fiery red glow across the sky, painting the clouds like flames. Under the brilliant sunset, the gray little town stood out as a deep, dark shadow, that hazy silhouette quietly spreading, waiting for complete darkness to fall. Jiang Liusher looked at the black market town and nodded. All right. Jiang Liusher usually slept on the sofa in the small living room of the base vehicle, separate from Jiang Zhuiying. Now, in the small living room, only Jiang Liusher was there. It wasn't yet dawn, and suddenly a stunning beauty appeared in front of him. The visual impact on Jiang Liusher was imaginable. If this were a typical otaku, they'd already be drooling. At that moment, the voice of the starseed sounded in Jiang Liusher's mind. Scanning host, scanning in progress, scan complete. Consciousness fully linked. Jiang Liusher immediately felt a very close and special connection between himself and this beautiful woman, simply put, a controller and the controlled. This black long-haired beauty's physical status and all kinds of details were displayed before Jiang Liusher just like Starseed's data. Like the Starseed, this beauty was now bound to Jiang Liusher, absolutely loyal to him. At first, the beauty seemed to lack awareness, until the Starseed asked whether to activate the base vehicle butler. When Jiang Liusher confirmed with a yes, her eyes gradually lit up, suddenly becoming full of life. Jiang Liusher cleared his throat and was about to greet her when the black long-haired beauty spoke first. You are the host? The words Jiang Liusher had prepared got stuck in his throat. He replied instinctively, yeah. Wait. This isn't how the script is supposed to go. When a girl with this kind of setting appears, isn't she supposed to be completely obedient and call him master? She should smile brightly, bow slightly, and gently ask, Master, do you have any commands? That's the proper line. Calling him host? Is there any term more unpleasant than that? It's fine if the Starseed calls him that, but this girl too? What, you think you're a parasite? Jiang Liusher grumbled in his heart. Meanwhile, the black-haired girl was already inspecting the various features inside the vehicle, all the modifications he'd made. She bent over and touched the steering wheel. When she bent down, her tight black short skirt outlined her perky but perfectly. It was incredibly seductive. Hey, can you not call me host? It sounds awful. Jiang Liusher voiced his protest. Then what should I call you? Ing stood up straight and turned to look at Jiang Liusher. Call me. Jiang Liusher was momentarily at a loss for words. As thick-skinned as he was, he still couldn't bring himself to say master. Call me Jiang Ji. Okay, Jiang Ji, Ing softly replied. Her gentle, sweet tone paired with that Jiang Ji sounded really pleasant. At that moment, Jiang Liusher unintentionally noticed, even though Ying's chest made her shirt bulge impressively, below that, he could vaguely see the tight t-shirt outlining a perfect curve. That meant? No bra? Jiang Liusher paused for a moment. Right, when he created her, he only said a short tight t-shirt and black jacket. He didn't specify any underwear. So, it's actually vacuum underneath? And still standing that firm. Jiang Lushur subtly swallowed a mouthful of saliva. What a visual blessing. But Ying would be going into the black market with him later. Not wearing a bra would just benefit others, that wouldn't do. He was thinking this when suddenly, the bedroom door opened. Jiang Zhuiying, in cartoon pajamas, walked out looking confused and stared at the living room. She'd heard voices. Actually, the soundproofing in the base vehicle's bedroom was excellent, and both Jiang Lushur and Ying had been speaking softly, but she still heard them. Brother, who are you talking to, huh? Jiang Zhuiying was stunned the moment she saw there was suddenly another person in the room. But seeing Jiang Lushur talking gently to the girl, it seemed she wasn't an enemy. Who are you? Jiang Zhuiying quietly reached for her waist. Cough cough. Jiang Lushur felt a headache coming. A base vehicle butler had suddenly appeared, of course he had to explain. But no matter how he said it, it all sounded weird. Zhuiying, let me introduce you. This is Ying. She's my, how do I put it? She'll be, Jiang Lushur choked. What should he say? Subordinate? Bodyguard? Driver? Mercenary? All sounded dumb. Or maybe say she was a college classmate, awakened her ability, and he just ran into her at the black market? Though that also sounded fishy, way too coincidental and off. Just then, Ying spoke up and gracefully introduced herself. You can consider me Jiang Ji's follower. Hello. By the way, our names sound a bit similar. Follower? Jiang Zhuiying was confused. She had just woken up and wasn't fully awake yet. Why does brother have a follower? And her figure is too good. Plus, Jiang Zhuiying obviously noticed too, Ying wasn't wearing a bra. It's not even dawn yet, and she's already on the vehicle with her brother, in the same room, and not even wearing a bra. Jiang Zhuiying's imagination ran wild, and her face turned a bit red. Jiang Lushur instantly realized she might have misunderstood, but he didn't know how to explain either. Bro, did you meet this pretty sister on the way to find me? Is her ability something like wall phasing? I don't remember hearing the car door open. Actually, Jiang Zhuiying had already scanned Ying. Ying didn't have the unique energy waves of an ability user, just like Jiang Lushur. She felt like an ordinary person. But still, Jiang Zhuiying's instincts told her Ying wasn't normal. Although there were things she couldn't understand, Jiang Zhuiying had a naturally carefree nature and didn't bother thinking too hard. In this apocalypse, with powers and zombies, people's ability to accept things had grown. Jiang Zhuiying was no exception. Anyway, Zhuiying, go find a bra for Ying. Jiang Lushur said awkwardly. Upon hearing this, Jiang Zhuiying stuck out her tongue. She glanced at Ying's perky chest and whispered, she probably won't fit into mine, a bit small. Jiang Zhuiying's figure was actually quite good, slender waist, long legs, proportionate, with a nicely sized chest. Bra? Ying paused, seemingly unfamiliar with the term. It's underwear, you wear it on your chest. The minibus bedroom was small. Open the door, and there's the bed. Jiang Zhuiying hadn't closed the door before, and casually grabbed a bra from the bed. She wasn't shy at all and directly waved her bra in front of Ying and Jiang Lushur, which made Jiang Lushur sweat. This girl really doesn't treat her brother like an outsider. This is battle-use chest armor? Ying looked at the two cups on the bra and, based on Jiang Zhuiying's "you wear it on your chest" explanation, made a connection. She casually took the bra and put it on her chest. Of course, she didn't take off her clothes, just wore it over her outfit. Most of Ying's memory was about combat and the base vehicle. Apparently, she hadn't been programmed with information about women's underwear. But she was smart, she quickly figured out that the back clasp could be fastened. Her slender fingers tried to buckle it behind her back, but because her chest was just too full, it was a struggle. Her soft and full breasts were squeezed in all directions, revealing an endless spring-like view. Jiang Lushur's lips went slightly dry at the sight, while Jiang Zhuiying was dumbfounded. Where did this girl come from? She didn't even know what a bra was, and she just wore it over her clothes like a superhero? How did she grow up? And grow that big? The sun rose. Zhang Hai and Sun Kuan, having stayed up all night and dozed off, didn't wake up until after 8 o'clock. They had finally gotten some proper rest. Zhang Hai casually splashed some water on his face. He was brushing his teeth with a toothbrush clenched in his mouth. Brushing teeth was a quality of life only those with abilities could afford. Toothpaste was easy to find, but ordinary people couldn't even eat enough, so who had the mood to brush their teeth? Brother Jiang, are we going to the black market today? Seems like a lot more people are around. Zhang Hai mumbled with the toothbrush in his mouth. Yeah, let's go. Jiang Lushur said as he opened the door of the base vehicle. Jiang Lushur stepped out first. Following right behind him were Jiang Zhuiying and Ying. Zhang Hai hadn't reacted when he saw Jiang Zhuiying, but when he saw Ying coming out last, his eyes froze, and the toothbrush fell from his mouth. What's with this woman? How did someone suddenly join their group, and she even got out of Brother Jiang's vehicle? This is Ying's perfectly proportioned figure, along with her contradictory aura of icy elegance and big sister next door, made Zhang Hai so stunned he didn't even realize he swallowed his toothpaste. Haizi, that's Brother Jiang's woman, what are you staring at? Sun Quan caught up from behind and smacked the back of Zhang Hai's head. Sun Quan was much sharper than Zhang Hai. Although he didn't know exactly what had happened, seeing such a stunning beauty get out of the car with Jiang Lushi, he could guess they'd spent the night together. Who knew what had gone down? Thinking about this made Sun Quan extremely envious. This was the benefit of being strong. Brother Jiang had food when he wanted it, piles of mutant beast meat, and in the apocalypse, that was better than money before the world ended. Not to mention he wasn't bad looking, had a vehicle, not just any vehicle, but one with a soft bed to sleep on, hot water for showers, and clean and aesthetically pleasing. In this filthy apocalypse, that kind of setup was lethally attractive to beautiful women. Altogether, Brother Jiang was basically the post-apocalyptic version of tall, rich, and handsome, house and car included, while everyone else suffered, he was living it up. This beauty, when did Brother Jiang meet her? Last night? Brother Jiang really had skills. While the two of them had taken turns on night watch, somehow he'd managed to bring a woman on board. And this kind of top-tier beauty was truly rare. Sis-in-law is really beautiful. Sun Quan, ever the smooth talker, immediately started flattering. Ying didn't react at all. In fact, to Ying, aside from Jiang Lushi, the host of the Starseed, everyone else was either an enemy or not an enemy. Dirty jokes wouldn't stir any emotion in her. However, Jiang Lushi and Jiang Zhuing both felt awkward at Sun Quan's words. Jiang Lushi couldn't be bothered to explain to Sun Quan and Zhang Hai. He only needed to clarify things for Jiang Zhuing. As for those two lackeys, they didn't need an explanation. She's called Ying. From now on, she's part of the team. Alright, let's cook. After breakfast, we head to the black market. Yes. Sun Quan and Zhang Hai quickly nodded. They grilled mutant beast meat and even made some vegetable porridge to replenish fiber. After everyone had eaten and drunk their fill, they drove to the entrance of the black market. It was already 9 a.m. by now. The black market had just opened. Jiang Lushi saw quite a few vehicles heading that way, as well as some ordinary people bringing all sorts of miscellaneous goods to the market stalls. There weren't many rules in the apocalypse, stalls were ownerless and free to claim. Stronger people naturally got better spots, while weaker ones were pushed to the corners. Then again, the things the weak sold were usually much less valuable. Jiang Lushi saw some ragged survivors huddled in corners selling a bag of tea or a can of cola. Others were selling half a pack of cigarettes and a lighter. Since food was hard to come by, they were trying to trade these things for something to eat. There were all kinds of odds and ends, razors, daggers, canned fruit, jewelry, even medicine with no instructions, just a name but no clear use. There were even sanitary pads and jewelry, even with diamonds over a carat, was basically worthless. Compared to food, it might be worth less than a single. In fact, had a huge market in the apocalypse. Many women, out of desperation, turned to sex work, and promiscuity often led to disease. Ordinary people didn't care, they lived day to day. But ability users wanted to survive properly, and getting sick in the apocalypse was a big deal. So had a market. Most ordinary people came to sell stuff in exchange for food. Among ability users, mutant beast meat was hard currency. For regular people, food was life itself. Tea, cola, cigarettes, those were luxuries. Things that couldn't fill your stomach were only bought by ability users with spare food to splurge on. Jiang Lushi and his crew naturally had no interest in such trinkets. However, some weaker teams paid attention to these items. Jiang Lushi saw a grown man with a gun haggling over 2 packs of cigarettes. Even in the apocalypse, people with nicotine addiction still couldn't resist. Jiang Lushi's group stood out in the black market. The two distinct beauties, plus Zhang Hai and Sun Quan with their strong builds and automatic rifles, drew plenty of eyes. Ironically, Jiang Lushi was the most unremarkable among the 5. To avoid trouble, Jiang Lushi had Zhang Hai and Sun Quan show their guns. Guns meant deterrence. On top of that, their group was well-dressed and full of energy. Surviving like this in the apocalypse made it obvious even to children, they weren't people to mess with. Jiang Lushi could feel it. Ever since they entered the black market, someone had been watching them. But the attention wasn't on him, it was on Jiang Zhuing. Jiang Lushi and Ying didn't have any visible energy fluctuations, while the other 3 did, and Jiang Zhuing was the strongest among them. Looks like they're here for big business. They don't seem interested in these little items. Not far from Jiang Lushi's group, a young man and an old man whispered to each other. They're outsiders. Maybe a fat sheep, ripe for a good slaughter. The old man licked his lips. Of course, by slaughter, he meant ripping them off hard. No one made a move in the black market, doing so would break the unspoken rules. Zhang Hua, go bring them in. Only the inner market goods might catch their interest. The black market wasn't too big, but not small either. As Jiang Lusher walked further inside, he noticed that the closer it got to the center of the market, the more valuable the goods became. On the outer edge of the black market, there were only some ordinary people selling low-value daily items. Weapons were limited to kitchen knives, daggers, and having a few fire axes was already considered high-end. But once inside the inner circle of the black market, some advanced weapons started to appear: entrenching tools, pistols, bullets, bulletproof vests, military tri-edged bayonets. These things mostly came from the police or military after the apocalypse. And those selling these items were also ability users. Jiang Lusher casually asked about the price of a few guns and found they were much more expensive than those sold by the satellite city's military. And these were just pistols, he hadn't even seen a rifle. Let me introduce myself. I'm Zhang Hua. Miss, may I ask what you're looking to buy? At that moment, a voice as warm as a spring breeze sounded. A man in a suit and dress shirt, hair neatly combed, walked up to Jiang Zhuing with a gentle smile on his face. When Jiang Lusher saw this person, he was momentarily stunned. Someone still dressed like this in the apocalypse? If he didn't know better, he'd think this was an insurance manager from before the apocalypse. But Jiang Zhuing frowned in disgust at the man's flattering smile. This guy looked slick and greasy, trying to get close to her, it was really annoying. She glanced at Jiang Lusher. Brother, what do you have? Jiang Lusher asked. What he wanted to buy first were mutant crystal cores, followed by a weapon for Ing. Ing was a strength-type warrior, so a double-handed sword would be ideal, but very hard to get. At the very least, they shouldn't give her a fire axe, that would be too humiliating. The man in the suit glanced at Jiang Lusher in surprise. He had thought Jiang Zhuing was in charge, but it turned out Jiang Lusher was her brother and seemed to be the team leader. This wasn't unusual. Sometimes in a team, the strongest person wasn't the leader, instead, the brain of the team led. Of course, these survivor teams didn't have many people. A brain didn't have to be very smart, just not an idiot. Haha, we've got plenty of stuff. Tons of grain, tons of mutant beast meat. If you want guns, we can get you pistols, semi-automatic rifles, even automatic rifles. Hand grenades too, you've seen hand grenades, right? We can get you 3 to 5 of those. As for the price, heh. Zhang Hua laughed and gave a, you know what I mean, look, while discreetly glancing at the gun in Zhang Hai's hands. Ordinary survivor teams usually had 1 or 2 ability users and 1 or 2 rifles, that was standard. This team looked like they were doing alright. 1 Type 81 rifle, and 1 semi-automatic 5.56. The 5.56 semi-auto was held by Zhang Hai. Zhang Hai wasn't really skilled at shooting. Though the 5.56 semi-auto was low-grade and only allowed for semi-auto fire, in the apocalypse, where bullets were precious, it made more sense for someone unskilled in shooting to use a semi-auto, to save bullets. Zhang Hua judged the team's strength based on the number of ability users and firearms. In his view, Jiang Liusher's team had 1 top-tier ability user, Jiang Zhuing, 2 lesser ability users, Zhang Hai and Sun Kuan, 1 team leader, who thought he was clever and important but was basically useless in a fight, Jiang Lusher, and 1 eye-candy beauty, probably just there to pass the long nights. But that beauty really was top-tier. Zhang Hua quickly estimated the team's strength based on ability users and firearms and concluded that they were much weaker than the teams running the black market. That's why he dared to approach them, hoping to take advantage of this outsider team. If they were too scary, he wouldn't have dared. He could already tell that the team had only 1 automatic rifle and 1 semi-auto. They were probably going to ask about buying guns. Around the black market, rifles were a hot commodity. If Jiang Lusher asked to buy one, and Zhang Hua didn't rip them off hard, he might as well not be called Zhang. Oh? What's the approximate price? Jiang Lusher smiled slightly. He wasn't in a rush to say he was there to sell guns. That was just a trick when dealing with shady merchants. This black market had black in its name, how could it not be shady? If you asked about prices properly, you'd never get an honest one. He'd definitely try to suppress the buying price of the gun. Jiang Lusher remembered when his parents died and he had to sell the family house. He went to a real estate agency but didn't say he was selling. He pretended to be a buyer and just looked around. The agent thought he was there to buy and went on and on about rising prices, value appreciation, saying if he didn't buy now, it'd all be gone tomorrow. Then Jiang Lusher casually said, "Ma'am, I'm actually here to list my house. Just set the price based on what you said earlier." The agent was stunned on the spot. Well, if you're looking to buy a Type 81, it'll cost this much, and that doesn't include bullets. Bullets are extra. Zhang Hua mysteriously held up 3 fingers. Jiang Lushur saw that and sneered inside. In the apocalypse, mutant beast meat was hard currency. 3 fingers meant 3 tons of meat. Damn, what a ripoff. The military sold a Type 81 rifle for just 800 kilograms of meat, and included 2 magazines with 120 bullets. But here, the gun alone cost 3 tons. Bro, that price is really fair. Seeing Jiang Lushur's reaction, Zhang Hua quickly put on a friendly face. You've looked around, right? Seen any rifles for sale? Rifles are only available in the inner market. And only a few teams sell them, with very limited stock. They're snatched up instantly. Honestly, those few teams are the ones who run the black market. They handle taxes and maintain order, especially the leader team, 7 Gods Squad. Take the 7 Gods Squad for example, they've got 4 top-tier ability users, and 3 a bit weaker. That's where the name comes from. Bro, let me tell you the truth, the strength of the 7 Gods Squad is beyond your imagination. Even though your team has a top-tier ability user, it's not the same. Even the weaker 3 in their team would be leaders in other squads. That's why they can afford to sell rifles. These are automatic rifles, man. When they fire, rat-a-tat-tat, each bullet has more penetration than a Desert Eagle. Who would normally sell these? Only top squads like 7 Gods, they're that rich. Zhang Hua boasted enthusiastically. Besides overpricing the rifle by 1.5 tons of meat, the rest of what he said was actually true. Hearing him brag, Jiang Zhuiying chuckled. She didn't expect her brother to be this sneaky. Zhang Hua didn't know why Jiang Zhuiying was laughing, but he knew she was definitely laughing at him, which made him feel very annoyed. An outsider team came to his turf and acted all arrogant, even dared to laugh at him? Clearly, they didn't know what kind of power he had. This black market belonged to the 7 Gods. If you came here, whether you were a dragon or a tiger, you had to stay low. If he weren't still planning to rip off Jiang Lushur, he would have flipped out long ago. But now, he was still holding back. At this moment, Jiang Lushur asked again, do you have bulk gun sales here? Any mutant crystal cores for sale? He didn't like Zhang Hua. That guy's eyes were like a snake's. On the surface, he seemed respectful, but he was constantly scanning them, sizing them up like prey. Bulk gun sales? Hearing this, Zhang Hua couldn't help it anymore. A team of 5 people wanting to buy guns in bulk? Did they know how rare rifles were in this world? Even if someone sold in bulk, could they even afford it? He let out a sneer and said impatiently, only the 7 Gods Squad has a lot of guns, so they sell automatic rifles. This black market hasn't been open long. Up to now, they've only sold 2 automatic rifles. All the other squads combined have only sold 1 semi-auto. Who would be willing to sell? They're so in demand. So you're saying, since the black market was set up, only 3 rifles have been sold? Jiang Lushur understood. Sure enough, guns were very limited in this Lan County. What, you think that's too few? Zhang Hua became more annoyed at Jiang Lushur's tone. They've sold a few, but they're holding on to plenty. The 7 Gods Squad alone has 1 automatic rifle per person. And lots of other teams have 3 or more guns too. Zhang Hua said proudly. Jiang Lushur nodded slightly. That's all right then. All right? Zhang Hua frowned, now completely out of patience. I'm asking, how much mutant beast meat did you bring? The entry threshold for the inner market is 1 ton, you know. Zhang Hua felt like he was wasting his time. This brain of the team asked about bulk gun deals. Was he brain dead? Bulk guns? Trying to arm a reinforced platoon? What a joke. 1 ton? Got it. Jiang Lushur smiled. 1 ton of beast meat was nothing. All right then. Zhang Hua believed that. This team looked strong enough. Killing a mutant beast wasn't that big of a deal. Go ahead and enter the inner market. Zhang Hua waved impatiently and pointed to a building in the center of the market. Seeing that building, Jiang Lushur didn't move yet. Can I drive the vehicle over? Going into someone else's turf always felt risky. Having the base vehicle nearby would make him feel more secure. If it were just him, the base vehicle couldn't enter the black market. But if a black market manager helped move a few stalls, it might be possible. Drive in. Zhang Hua looked at Jiang Lushur like he was a fool. He wanted to say, who do you think you are? But he held it in and replied rudely, only the 7 leaders of the 7 Gods Squad are allowed to drive in. Their loot is huge. They need to transport several tons of mutant beast meat. Ever seen a mutant beast that weighs 3 or 4 tons? Zhang Hua snorted. He was sure Jiang Lushur hadn't. He was just the brain, usually stayed in the base. Maybe Jiang Zhuiying had seen one, but even if she had, she probably couldn't kill it. A 3-ton mutant beast was terrifying. 3 or 4 tons. Jiang Lushur smiled. The first mutant wild boar he killed was almost 10 tons. 3 or 4 tons, that's just enough to buy a rifle. Skin it, remove the bones, might not even be enough. Based on the black market's sky-high prices, a 3 or 4 ton mutant beast really wouldn't be enough to buy a rifle, especially without the crystal core. Zhang Hua's eyes widened. Damn, met a bragger today. Didn't care about 3-ton mutant beasts, didn't care about automatic rifles. Called it, just a rifle. Easy for him to say. In the apocalypse, the lives of 100 ordinary people might not even match the value of a single gun. Wasn't he just a regular person? Bragging is pointless. If you look down on guns so much, why come to our black market to buy? Zhang Hua naturally thought Jiang Lushur had come to buy guns. Jiang Lushur didn't respond. Talking to Zhang Hua was pointless. He was just a go-between, not someone who could make decisions. And just then, beep, a loud horn blared. A medium-sized truck drove in from outside the black market. Though it slowed down, it still caused chaos, stalls scrambled, people shouted, and some even fell while dodging. Jiang Lushur had seen vehicles driving through marketplaces before. Just passing through one usually took half a day. But this truck was going fast. People screamed and jumped aside. Some tripped and fell. When Zhang Hua saw the truck, his eyes lit up. It's Boss Yuan. Boss Yuan is here too, haha. This so-called Boss Yuan was the leader of a survivor team. His vehicle was this modified medium truck. Zhang Hua recognized it instantly. Boss Yuan was also a top-tier ability user. His ability seemed especially good at hunting mutant beasts, which made him very wealthy. He was one of the black market's biggest players. Of course, to Jiang Lushur, this top tier was just a level 1 ability user. Boss Yuan scored again. Zhang Hua looked toward the truck's bed and saw a dead mutant beast, covered in black fur, soaked in blood, which kept flowing out. As it passed, the market's ground was stained red. Boss Yuan. Zhang Hua shouted and rushed over, bowing and greeting him with a big smile. Boss Yuan opened the truck door. He was a short, middle-aged man with a bit of a beer belly, a face full of fat, and a thick gold chain around his neck, as if he'd been a nouveau riche before the apocalypse. Behind Boss Yuan were several SUVs. Doors opened, and his crew jumped out with guns. Boss Yuan made a big score again. Zhang Hua grinned, but seeing how wary Boss Yuan's men were, he didn't dare get too close. Boss Yuan, you're here for a trade with the 7 gods, right? That mutant beast must weigh 4 tons, huh? Boss Yuan glanced at Zhang Hua, lit a cigar, and started puffing smoke. Jiang Lushur also walked over. This Boss Yuan really had flair. It was the apocalypse, and people couldn't even find cigarette butts, yet he had cigars. But Jiang Lushur could tell that cigar had been smoked before. Cigars weren't like regular cigarettes, you could smoke one for an hour. Sometimes people smoked half, put it out, and saved it for later. Boss Yuan was clearly like that. The cigar was just for show, he only lit it in public. Who would really smoke cigars all the time? In this apocalypse, they were almost impossible to find. Who's this guy driving in? How did this guy drive in? Jiang Lushur asked. Zhang Hua had just said that only the 7 bosses of the 7 gods squad could drive in, and now he was immediately slapped in the face. From Zhang Hua's earlier words, Jiang Lushur already knew that this Boss Yuan wasn't part of the 7 gods squad. Otherwise, why would Zhang Hua ask if he had come specifically for the 7 gods trade fair? As soon as Jiang Lushur asked this, Boss Yuan also heard him. He looked at Jiang Lushur like he was an idiot, his eyes full of disdain. With his status, he naturally couldn't be bothered to respond to Jiang Lushur. In fact, Boss Yuan didn't need to explain. Zhang Hua's face turned cold, and he looked at Jiang Lushur, speaking in an unfriendly tone. This black market belongs to the 7 gods squad. The rules are also set by the 7 gods squad. Coincidentally, I am a member of the 7 gods squad and one of the deputy managers of this black market. If we decide someone can drive in, then they can. Boss Yuan has traded more than 7 or 8 tons of mutant beast meat here since the market opened. Of course, he qualifies. Boss Yuan was a major benefactor of the black market, so Zhang Hua naturally had to back him up. As for Jiang Lushur's team, no one even knew how strong that top girl really was. Even if she was strong, so what? Only teams that could bring benefits to the black market mattered. Seeing Zhang Hua work so hard to boost his presence, Boss Yuan felt satisfied. He took another puff of his cigar, laughed loudly, and ignored Jiang Lushur. He encouragingly patted Zhang Hua's shoulder and walked into the building with his beer belly shaking. At this point, Jiang Lushur turned to Ying and said, "Bring the car over." Jiang Lushur didn't bother arguing. He would just drive the vehicle in himself. Since Boss Yuan had barged in and scattered the stalls, the base vehicle could barely make its way in too. Okay, Brother Jiang. Actually, I don't need to get in the car. The starseed can drive the car on its own now. That's a function unlocked after activating the base vehicle's AI butler. Ying quietly explained. Only Jiang Lushi could hear her voice. Originally, the base vehicle could only be driven by Jiang Lushi. Often when he got out, he had to worry about the car's safety, and his own safety couldn't be fully guaranteed either. But with Ying now, she could not only drive for him, she had also added autonomous driving to the base vehicle. Oh? Self-driving? Jiang Lushi was surprised. You drive it over. Self-driving is too showy. Before the apocalypse, autonomous driving wasn't anything extraordinary. But a minibus with that feature still seemed too suspicious. Okay. After Ying finished speaking, she weaved through the market. Soon, she returned driving the base vehicle. The vehicle was 2.5 meters wide. It barely squeezed through many stalls, almost brushing past them. But to Ying, the base vehicle's AI butler, driving it was easier than riding a bike. She didn't even scrape anything. When Jiang Lushi drove, he relied on data correction. But when Ying drove, she was the base vehicle butler. Driving was one of her instincts. Ying parked the minibus right outside the trade hall entrance. Seeing this, Zhang Hua was very displeased. This Jiang Lushi, just doing whatever he wanted on his turf? But really, it wasn't a big deal. He just snorted and let it go. After all, Jiang Liushi's team was a survivor squad, with ability users and guns. They had some strength. A conflict wouldn't be good. This brat, let him find out soon what kind of gap exists between him and the Seven Gods squad. He needs to know his place. Zhang Hua snorted and went inside. At this point, his focus had already shifted. He was following Boss Yuan. If Boss Yuan spent a lot at this trade fair, Zhang Hua would benefit too. Let's go in too. With the base vehicle parked outside, Jiang Lushi felt much more secure and led Jiang Zhuiying and the others into the trade hall. The building in the black market had a very simple layout. After entering, it was just a large hall, with 5 round tables placed in the middle. The one in the center was the biggest, the 4 around it were smaller. Jiang Lushi blinked. These tables must have been custom-made after the apocalypse. This trade fair had people sitting around to trade goods, bartering, very primitive. But since the apocalypse had only just begun, building a lively, well-organized market wasn't realistic yet. Normally, each team had 7 or 8 people. With 6 or 7 such teams gathered, without large tables, there wouldn't be enough seats. Especially that biggest table in the center, it was welded entirely from steel plates, 4 to 5 meters in diameter, with 8 steel pipes as thick as thighs for legs. The table looked incredibly heavy. One could imagine how sturdy it was. It was likely used to hold 2 or 3 tons of mutant beast meat during trade. Without heavy welding, it couldn't support the weight. Around each table were more than 10 chairs. At this time, many of the smaller tables were already full. But the big round table in the center had fewer people. Following Huaxia's tradition, even without anyone saying it, it was clear the people at the big central table held higher status. Without strength, you didn't dare sit there. For example, the 7 bosses of the 7 Gods squad were all seated at that big table. After entering, Boss Yuan also casually headed toward the big round table. At the big table sat a group of beautiful young girls serving the big shots. Some sat beside the chairs, others directly on the men's laps, being held and played with. Of course, since this was a public setting, they wouldn't go too far. Haha, brothers, long time no see. Boss Yuan cupped his fists toward the people at the big table. They returned the gesture one by one. After the apocalypse, society reverted to one of force. Outside the military and government, these civilian groups unknowingly revived the old martial world customs. These gestures seemed to fit their identities. Boss Yuan, have a seat. The speaker was a man wearing a fur cloak. His face was thin, his eyes deep and sharp like blades. He wore a large sapphire ring on his hand, a necklace with a metal skull around his neck, and knee-high military boots with metal heels. He held a fine metal chain in his hand, as if he were walking a prize dog. But when Jiang Lushi got closer, he frowned slightly. He saw that it wasn't a dog, but a young woman. A girl with barely any clothing, looking 17 or 18, was crawling on the ground like a dog. A metal collar was around her neck. She had a pretty face but looked pale. Whenever the man in the fur cloak tugged the chain slightly, the girl would move with it. The metal collar had rubbed her neck red. This man deserves to die. Jiang Zhuiying couldn't stand it. Everyone had a dark side, and after the apocalypse, laws were gone and morality collapsed. Many of humanity's darkest traits could now explode uncontrollably. Especially those in power, they acted without limits. Some people may have fantasized about keeping beautiful even before, but couldn't do it in peacetime. Now they had the chance. If he treated her well, Jiang Zhuiying might have tolerated it. But seeing how this girl had been abused, with many whip marks on her body, and still being paraded around in public like this, it was clear this fur-cloaked man was a pervert. His energy is strong. He must be the leader of the Seven Gods Squad. Jiang Zhuiying said. Her sense for ability users was sharp. But Jiang Lushur wasn't far behind either. After his brain evolved, many of his abilities were almost like those of ability users. Should be. Let's go. Jiang Lushur spoke as he led his team directly toward the central table. At that moment, many people turned to look. The large round table in the center was by default reserved for the strong, including the founders of the black market and VIPs like Boss Yuan. Ordinary teams knew their place. As soon as they saw the layout of the room, they understood where they belonged and automatically sat at the four corner tables. But Jiang Liushur's team was clearly here for the first time. They actually swaggered right up to the center table. Didn't they know the rules? Were they blind? The man in the fur cloak frowned. Boss Yuan's eyes also widened, the fat on his face trembling, and even the girl in his arms let out a little whimper, seemingly frightened. Just outside the door earlier, Boss Yuan had already heard Jiang Lushur ask a dumbass question, asking why he was allowed to drive in. And now this brat even dared to sit at the central table? Boss Yuan used to be a butcher before the apocalypse. After awakening his powers, which were related to pig slaughter, hunting mutant beasts became much easier for him. His status skyrocketed, and with it, his intolerance for being disrespected. Get lost. You think you can sit here? Boss Yuan slapped his fat hand hard on the table and said. Jiang Lushur glanced at Boss Yuan and ignored him. Instead, he looked at the man in the fur cloak. Without a doubt, he was the true master of this room. This friend doesn't seem to be an ability user, right? The man in the fur cloak narrowed his eyes and sized up Jiang Lushur. Jiang Lushur was walking in front of the team, clearly the leader, so he naturally focused on him. Does it matter whether I'm an ability user? Isn't this a trading fair? I heard the entry requirement was 1 ton of mutant beast meat. I've got goods to trade, why can't I sit? As he spoke, Jiang Lushur confidently sat down on a steel chair opposite the man in the fur cloak. There were many strong people in the room, especially at this central table. Their aura was overwhelming. Ordinary people couldn't handle the pressure. Only those with true strength and confidence could sit comfortably here. But Jiang Lushur was just an ordinary person. His sitting here stunned the group of big shots. Was this guy crazy? Not only did Jiang Lushur sit down, Jiang Zhuiying also casually sat beside him. The third was Ying. In everyone's eyes, she had no energy fluctuations at all, just a pretty vase, yet she also sat down naturally on Jiang Liushur's other side. As for Sun Kuan and Zhang Hai, they hesitated and didn't sit down in the end. It wasn't just that they lacked the presence, more importantly, they felt that if Brother Jiang was sitting, they should be standing. So they stood behind Jiang Lushur, one on the left and one on the right, each holding a rifle. With their burly builds, they looked just like door guardians. Jiang Lushur leaned fully back in the chair, with beauties on either side and 2 muscular bodyguards behind, the image of a mafia boss. Damn, this guy's acting tough. The surrounding ability users, team leaders, all stared wide-eyed. They had always thought they were the arrogant ones, but compared to Jiang Lushur, it seemed they were nothing. Was he the real boss, or were they? Who the hell is this guy? Just 'cause he brought 1 ton of mutant meat, he comes here acting all high and mighty, a bald middle-aged man cursed. Has he even seen a mutant beast? 1 ton's not even half a beast. Because they were unhappy with Jiang Lushur, people began to curse. Only the woman next to him remained friendly. She smiled and said, 1 ton of mutant beast meat is just the entry ticket. It's not little, but definitely not enough to sit here, hee hee. She looked about 30, dressed a bit provocatively, but was very well maintained. At that moment, a man in a suit rushed nervously to the central table. It was Zhang Hua. Boss Bai, this man is. Seeing Jiang Lushur sit at the central table without knowing the rules, and especially sitting directly across from the man in the fur cloak, Zhang Hua broke into a cold sweat. It was Zhang Hua who brought Jiang Lushur in. Back in the marketplace, he already felt the guy was a bit dumb. But he didn't expect him to be this dumb. Offending Boss Bai? If Jiang Lushur got killed, fine, but he, Zhang Hua, might get dragged down too. With Boss Bai's temper, he was screwed. Boss, this guy bumped into me in the market earlier, Zhang Hua braced himself and whispered into the fur cloak man's ear, glancing at Jiang Lushur now and then, his eyes filled with murderous rage. He bitterly regretted talking to Jiang Lushur earlier. This guy was a complete idiot. And to think he had planned to rip him off, now, he was just hoping not to get dragged down. You want to bulk buy automatic rifles? Hearing Zhang Hua's report, the man in the fur cloak laughed. Everyone around heard this and burst into laughter, especially Boss Yuan, who laughed the hardest. Kid, how many rifles do you mean by bulk? The apocalypse came and now you want to build an army and be a warlord? Boss Yuan's belly jiggled as he laughed. This guy's hilarious. I was wondering where he got the guts to sit here. Turns out he's just an idiot. The 30-something seductive woman beside Jiang Lushur still seemed a bit friendly. She laughed and said, "Little brother, you're really naive. Do you know how much mutant meat it takes to buy one automatic rifle now?" "How much?" Jiang Lushur asked with a faint smile, looking at the seductive woman. He had already dismissed everything Zhang Hua said as nonsense. A nobody like him couldn't be trusted. He only listened to people with real status in a setting like this. The woman held up 2 fingers. At least 2 tons of mutant beast meat per rifle. Even semi-automatics go for 1.5 tons or more. Her price was 1 ton lower than what Zhang Hua had quoted, exposing his inflated price. Normally, this would make Zhang Hua nervous, but now, with Jiang Lushur acting like an idiot, he wasn't worried anymore. Oh? 2 tons? Jiang Lushur was amused. Though the price was lower than Zhang Hua's, Jiang Lushur knew this was the real price, or at least the high end of it. In this setting, the woman would naturally quote the high side. Compared to the satellite city, where one rifle cost 800 to 900 kilograms of mutant meat, the price here had more than doubled. If he sold his entire truckload of weapons, he could exchange it for a lot of mutant crystal cores. If that's the price, would you buy? Jiang Lushur laid a trap for the seductive woman. Of course I'd buy. The woman laughed, her body swaying enchantingly. Assault rifles are really in demand right now. Even though 2 tons is a painful price for me, I can still afford to buy one. Unfortunately, they're not easy to find. The alluring young woman said this and threw a flirtatious glance at the man in the fur coat. Usually, automatic rifles were sold by the leaders of the 7 Gods Squad. Kid, had enough of your antics? If you're done, then stand up. Today is only the 2nd trading fair since the black market was founded. I don't want to ruin the atmosphere on a day like this, but I also don't want anyone making a scene for attention. The man in the fur coat suddenly spoke sharply at this point, with a faint killing intent in his voice. Making a scene? Jiang Lushur shook his head. My time is valuable. If anyone wants to cause trouble, I won't waste my time. I don't care about sitting in a seat of honor, and you call this welded table and steel chair a seat of honor? I don't like the spot, but since I've sat down, I won't be forced to stand up. I'm staying right here today. Jiang Lushur's words were very direct, with a roguish air. A fight? Their team was no weaker than anyone else's, and their base vehicle was parked just outside. The air cannon could be fired at any moment. But Jiang Lushur knew that the 7 Gods Squad, led by Boss Bai, wouldn't resort to violence easily. They had established the black market, which showed they had ambition. Now, this trading fair had gathered nearly 10 well-known squads from nearby. If they started a fight here, with blades and bullets flying, who knew how many would get hurt? That would ruin their own venue. Who would attend their future trading fairs then? Kid, you've got guts. A shadow flickered in the eyes of the man in the fur coat. Forcing Jiang Lushur to leave wouldn't be easy, especially since the big guy behind him also had 2 guns. He changed his tone and said, "But if your strength doesn't match your courage, then you're just a fool." The man in the fur coat placed one hand on the table. The solid steel surface seemed to tremble slightly. "I came to your black market to trade, naturally." Jiang Lushur gave Zhang Hai a look, signaling him to bring the goods. As for Ying, she stood up and followed Zhang Hai. Without Ying, Zhang Hai wouldn't even be able to open the vehicle door. This is getting interesting. I want to see what this kid has brought. Boss Yuan gave Jiang Lushur a disdainful look, then turned to the others. Everyone, don't let a few bad apples ruin the fun. Let's all bring out our goods. If it's too big to carry, just report what you have. I'll start things off. As Boss Yuan spoke, he pressed a cigar onto the table. I didn't bring anything special this time, just 3.5 tons of mutant pig. One whole pig, with at least 2.5 tons of pure meat, and with the mutant pig's crystal core, that's another 6 or 7 tons worth of meat. Whoever brings the best stuff, I'll buy from them. When Boss Yuan spoke, everyone was impressed by his generosity. A whole 3.5 ton mutant pig was not easy to hunt. Boss Yuan had brought the entire carcass, and with the value of the crystal core, it could easily double. For an average ability user squad, a mutant pig like this would usually be kept for personal use. After all, the daily consumption of mutant beast meat by ability users was no small matter. Seeing everyone's reaction, Boss Yuan sat down beaming, pulling his pretty companion into his arms. He was very satisfied with the effect. That young woman initially disliked this nouveau riche boss Yuan, but upon seeing all that mutant meat, her eyes lit up, and she softened, trying to please him. Maybe she could get a few bites herself? After boss Yuan, a short, skinny man stood up. He snapped his fingers, and a younger follower brought over a tri-edged army spike, a night vision scope, and a large composite metal crossbow. The black crossbow arms were full of texture, equipped with a scope, precise and beautiful. How about it? My army spike and crossbow are pretty nice, right? And they save bullets. The skinny man proudly introduced them. Crossbows also counted as ranged weapons. An arrow could pierce a skull easily. But thinking that bolts could be reused was a mistake. Real killing bolts had heads covered with sharp metal shards. Under massive impact, those shards would break, they were disposable. Replace them with standard tips, and while reusable, they'd be much weaker. So crossbows were fine for occasional use but could never replace guns. The tri-edged army spike, however, was very practical. Many ability users were strong but lacked a suitable weapon. The army spike was durable and far better than a dagger. The skinny man was ultimately selling cold weapons, he simply had no spare firearms to part with. So, many people turned their attention to the man in the fur coat. Everyone knew that only the Seven Gods squad occasionally sold rifles. Boss Yuan said, "Boss Bai, we still need you to anchor the scene. Bring out the real goods. Didn't you say you were going to sell a machine gun at this trading fair? I've been looking forward to it." "Heh. Boss Yuan, you're flattering me to death. I only have one machine gun, how could I sell it? But an 81-style semi-auto rifle should be enough, right? Accurate and good feel. Everyone keeps their best stuff in reserve. I'm selling 2 81s today, that's already showing respect, right? Not only that, I've also got one semi-automatic rifle and 600 rounds of ammo." The man in the fur coat placed one foot on the back of a beautiful woman like a dog. Her body trembled slightly, but she didn't dare move. If she struggled, the consequences would be dire. 3 rifles, 600 bullets, Boss Bai, you're really generous. Many people were envious. In the apocalypse, guns were expensive, bullets even more so. These 600 bullets alone were worth a fortune in mutant beast meat. Haha, Boss Bai really is rich. I thought I was well prepared this time, but I still can't compete when it comes to buying your guns. Boss Yuan, don't say that. How could these guns all go to just you? The bald middle-aged man who scolded Jiang Lushi earlier said cheerfully and poured the contents of his bag onto the table. Suddenly, 7 or 8 round grenades rolled out of the bag. Grenades. Good stuff. Even Boss Yuan's eyes lit up, the fat on his face jiggling hard. He was drooling over those grenades. In Lan County, bullets were already expensive, grenades were luxury items. Normally only used against mutant beasts, using one on zombies would be a complete waste. The bald man pushed the grenades forward, looking smug. With one arm around his girl and the other hand fondling her chest, he let the other bosses admire his goods. Grenades, guns, and even a military dagger, these are all good stuff. People were whispering among themselves. At these big-shot trading fairs, it's mostly mutant beast meat exchanged for weapons. Other goods were nothing compared to the price of weapons. Just as everyone was chatting, the room's door was pushed open. Zhang Hai and Ning had returned. Zhang Hai was carrying 2 large bags, and Ning had one in her hand. The bags were black with zippers and looked quite heavy. "Oh ho! You brought them." The bald man played with the grenade he had just shown off, watching Zhang Hai and Ying's bags with great interest. The others were also curious. They wanted to see what kind of goods this country bumpkin Jiang Lushi, who didn't follow the rules, had brought. What kind of stuff is that? Could it be local specialties from the countryside? If it's smoked pork and farm eggs or something, let's just cook and eat them, haha. Fatty Yuan teased. Jiang Lushi didn't care at all. He signaled Zhang Hai to put the bags on the table and said, "Just some things we can't use. We're selling them. But let me be clear, I don't want mutant beast meat. Only mutant crystals. Mutant crystals could be used directly by their base vehicle. If they took beast meat instead, their convoy couldn't even transport it. You don't want mutant meat? Only sell for mutant crystals? Damn." Fatty Yuan was speechless. With that attitude, it was like the earth couldn't contain him anymore. In Lan County, mutant crystals weren't as valuable as in the satellite cities. There, the military guaranteed to buy them at a fixed price, 5 tons of meat per crystal. In Lan County, it was the armed police who bought them, offering 4 tons per crystal. Even 4 tons was a lot. In Lan County, if a small squad had 1 mutant crystal as working capital, they were already considered rich. Don't be fooled by the fact that many brought 3 or 4 tons of beast meat today. That was squeezed out just to attend the fair. Normally, if they had a crystal, they would have already traded it for gear. Bullets alone were a major expense. So Jiang Lushur saying he'd only accept mutant crystals meant his goods were super valuable, otherwise, there'd be no need to ask for crystals. I gotta see what kind of goods you've brought. What makes you so confident, acting all high and mighty in front of me? Fatty Yuan hadn't finished speaking when, under Jiang Lushur's signal, Zhang Hai unzipped a bag. With a series of clanking sounds, a row of pitch-black objects slid out from the bag. Everyone widened their eyes. For a moment, they couldn't process what they were seeing. That black barrel, the finely crafted trigger. Damn, were these assault rifles? The rifles weren't the older Type 81s but the newer, more compact Type 95s. Sleek design, more modern. These were lighter, more accurate, had less recoil, and packed just as much punch. 3 assault rifles? There's more underneath, Fatty Yuan gaped. Just the 3 Type 95s had him shocked, but underneath them were 2 submachine guns and 1 semi-auto Type 56. Submachine guns? Fatty Yuan couldn't really tell the difference between submachine guns and assault rifles. He was just stunned by how many fully automatic weapons were in front of him. The bald middle-aged man next to him, Boss Bai, also had his jaw hanging. They looked like they'd just watched China beat Brazil 10-0 in a World Cup match, completely stunned. What the hell is going on? How could someone have this many guns? Even Boss Bai's 7 Gods squad had only sold a few guns before, and those didn't even add up to this one bag. This was 6 rifles. Clatter. At that moment, Zhang Hai unzipped the second black bag. A long, black barrel appeared. The ultra-long gun body, unfolded bipod, and a comically oversized drum magazine, about as big as someone's face. Holy crap, it was a machine gun. A Type 95 light machine gun, standard in the Chinese army. Bullet muzzle velocity close to 1,000 meters per second, effective range of 800 meters, terrifying firepower. Against zombies, this kind of treasure would never be used. One drum held 75 rounds. If all it killed was a small group of zombies, it'd be a total waste. But against mutant beasts, say, a 4 or 5-ton mutant wild boar charging like a tank, this kind of high-powered, high-rate-of-fire machine gun could provide way more suppression than an assault rifle. Kill just one mutant beast, and you'd make back everything you spent. You're selling a machine gun too? Fatty Yuan swallowed hard. He had joked about Boss Bai's machine gun earlier, but he was drooling over it himself. Machine guns were super scarce in Lan County. The armed police barely sold them, probably because they didn't have many themselves. Under that Type 95 light machine gun were 6 handguns, Type 54s, Type 64s, but compared to the eye-blinding Type 95 machine gun, those handguns were nothing. You could find those even in local police stations. And it wasn't over yet. Zhang Hai opened the third bag. Clatter. A cascade of golden yellow bullets spilled out. Heaps of ammo, loaded magazines for the assault rifles, and 2 heavy drum mags as big as watermelons. And not just that, 7 grenades too. The bald man who had shown off his grenades earlier nearly fell off his chair. He had brought 7 grenades and treated them like treasure. But the other side also had 7 grenades, just tossed casually in the corner of a bag, like they were a few hot eggs, didn't even care. This black market had only been running a short while and had only seen a handful of rifles traded. But Jiang Lushur just pulled out a whole stockpile like it was wholesale. That's about it. Like I said, I only accept mutant crystals. Jiang Lushur spread his hands. Zhang Hai had already dumped all 3 bags on the table. The open bags and the overwhelming firepower inside left everyone in the room envious. Even the bosses at the nearby small tables came over, practically drooling. Only mutant crystals accepted. People who mocked Jiang Lushur earlier now understood, why wouldn't he only accept crystals? If he took mutant meat, there'd be no way to transport that much. Little brother, how do you have so many guns? The stunning 30-something woman opened her mouth wide in disbelief at Jiang Lushur. Zhang Hua, the one who had brought Jiang Lushur here earlier, looked like he had swallowed a live rat. You have this many guns, and you were talking to me about buying guns? You weren't just. Zhang Hua had wanted to say, crazy, but the words died in his mouth. He wasn't stupid. Think about it, any squad that could get this many guns couldn't be weak, right? So how could he dare call someone like that crazy? That would be asking to die. Jiang Lushur looked coldly at Zhang Hua and asked in return, when did I say I came to buy guns? I just asked about the price. And, no matter what I said, what right do you have to question me? Jiang Lushur's words were full of presence. Zhang Hua instantly didn't dare to make a sound. He shrank back at a table in the corner and didn't have the courage to look Jiang Lushur in the eye anymore. At this point, everyone understood clearly, so this guy didn't come to buy a bunch of guns, but to sell a bunch of guns. Kid, don't act tough just yet. Fatty Yuan, who was drooling over the guns earlier, suddenly became rational. He still thought that Jiang Liusher's team wasn't strong. He couldn't figure out how a squad with only one top-tier ability user and 2 half-baked ones could be stronger than the 7 Gods squad. Are those guns real or fake? I don't believe you really have that many. The Type 95 assault rifles didn't look particularly metallic, because the Type 95 rifle body was made of plastic, though the frame was metal. They didn't look very solid and even resembled toy guns. In fact, many modern firearms, both domestic and foreign, use plastic components for the gun body. It makes them lighter and doesn't affect performance. Some, like Germany's G36 or Austria's August, are almost entirely plastic. Even stress parts like the bolt catch, hammer, and trigger are plastic. Oh? If you doubt it, I can shoot you to prove it. As Jiang Liusher spoke, he pulled a Type 95 from the black bag. It was already loaded. He released the safety, pulled the charging handle, and pointed the black muzzle straight at Fatty Yuan's forehead. Being stared down the barrel of a gun created immense pressure. Fatty Yuan's subordinates behind him immediately tensed up and pulled out their weapons. Stop! Boss Bai shouted. It was his trading fair. If people started pulling guns on each other, the whole black market would be ruined. Put the gun down. Boss Bai commanded, his gaze on Jiang Liusher flashing with a hint of intrigue. So many weapons, that was a massive fortune. He created the black market precisely to gather wealth, and now, with all that wealth laid out before him, how could he not have the thought of killing to steal? Since the apocalypse began, backstabbing was everywhere. Many people died to zombies, but not a few had also died at the hands of other survivors. He stared at Jiang Liusher, silently assessing the strength of his squad. If they dared to bring out such a fortune at the trading fair, how confident were they? Jiang Liusher looked like an ordinary man, but he sat there calmly and confidently. Where did that confidence come from? Boss Bai had originally thought Jiang Liusher was just average, but now suspected that was just a facade. Jiang Liusher must have something special about him. But even so what? Jiang Liusher plus Jiang Zhuiying, the top ability user, that was only 2 people. As for the big-breasted, long-legged beauty next to Jiang Liusher, she looked like nothing more than a bed warmer. The 2 muscle guys behind them looked impressive but were probably useless. Even with guns, could they pose a real threat? Boss Bai trusted his own judgment. He already mentally exaggerated Jiang Liusher's strength, but even then, he believed his 7 Gods squad could easily crush them. Fighting inside the black market was unrealistic. It would destroy the black market's credibility, and no one would dare come again. But outside the black market, Boss Bai was calculating the risks and benefits in his mind. "Friend, aren't you going to put down the gun?" said a young man seated nearby. This man, dressed in jeans and a t-shirt, looked like a college student. He was the 3rd member of the 7 Gods squad. He had been low-key at previous trading fairs and barely spoke. Jiang Liusher glanced at him but didn't lower the gun. He smirked slightly and said, "It was this fatty who said the gun was fake. Since he said that, what's wrong with firing a test shot?" Fatty Yuan felt enormous pressure from the muzzle pointed at him, but he still stubbornly said, "It's all plastic, how do I know it's real? Unless you go to a range and shoot, I won't believe it." Fatty Yuan still refused to admit it, but his tone was clearly softer. After all, he didn't really dare let Jiang Liusher pull the trigger. At that moment, the young man who looked like a college student gave Fatty Yuan a disdainful glance. He had indeed been a college student before the apocalypse, calm by nature, but the apocalypse had changed everything. He discovered his powers and became physically very strong. He looked down on people like Fatty Yuan, who were full of nothing but fat. "You think plastic isn't sturdy? Boss Yuan, have you never heard of engineering plastics? This stuff is high-temperature resistant, very strong, can even replace metal in many areas, and it's extremely expensive, not easy to produce. Engineering plastics can be used for gun bodies, hammers, you name it. They can fire over 100,000 rounds without damage. Some foreign guns even use it as a selling point." The young man spoke calmly, sharing his gun knowledge. Fatty Yuan's eyes widened. Plastic can replace metal? Really? It sounded unbelievable, but this was the 3rd in command of the 7 Gods squad speaking. How could he not believe him? The guy was educated, and Fatty Yuan was just a butcher. He could only grunt awkwardly and say no more. Fatty Yuan sat down with an ugly expression. Though he had to accept the guns were real, he still couldn't understand, how could there be so many guns? This was like dealing in military arms. So many Type 95s, rifles and machine guns, this is practically a whole Type 95 weapons family. The parts for rifles and machine guns are interchangeable. If something breaks, you can swap it out, even the bullets are the same. Very practical, extremely efficient. The college student-looking man gave his evaluation. Before the apocalypse, in the Chinese army, the Type 81 was the eternal classic, the most reliable partner for many veterans. But the Type 95 had many advantages that gradually made it the Army's standard-issue rifle. Especially now, with a full weapons family, when squads go out, they can't carry spare parts for every type of gun. But with one gun family, you can cannibalize parts on the spot. And the low recoil of the Type 95 made it especially good for beginners, easier to shoot accurately. The third-in-command clearly knew his military stuff, which saved Jiang Lusher the trouble of explaining. He pushed the gun forward and said, "Cash on delivery. Only accepting mutant crystals. 2 tons of mutant beast meat per assault rifle, comes with 1 extra magazine. The machine gun is sold separately." Mutant crystals were indeed the most suitable hard currency in the apocalypse. Mutant beast meat was too bulky and not easy to carry. But mutant crystals also had a drawback: their value was too high, and they couldn't be divided, making transactions inconvenient. Many squads were still at the stage of teaming up with other squads to hunt mutant beasts, or searching for pistols at the police station, or transporting fuel from gas stations to sell. Getting a complete mutant crystal? That was way too difficult. For example, right now, in this room, there were more than a dozen squads. The squad leaders were all sitting here, but most squads had only brought 1 or 2 tons of mutant beast meat. Only a few squad leaders seated at the central table had brought a mutant crystal with them. Even the beautiful mature woman beside Jiang Lusher didn't have a single mutant crystal on her. Everyone was already strapped for resources, and after hearing Jiang Lusher's prices, many felt a sting in their hearts. Just that light machine gun alone would cost around 5 tons of mutant beast meat. And a gun like that, once bought, had to be treated like a god. Truly, one shot from the gun, worth its weight in gold. Most people's goal was just to buy an assault rifle, that would already be good enough. "Bro, got a crystal? I've got beast meat. We can pool our stuff and buy 2 assault rifles, split 1 each." Buying 2 assault rifles with 1 mutant crystal, even for those seated at the main table, was not an easy deal. Pooling resources with others and keeping just 1 gun each was the smartest option. Seeing that people were already acting privately, Fatty Yuan's chubby face twitched. He did have a complete mutant crystal, but he had mocked and doubted Jiang Lusher before. Now, having to humbly ask him to sell a gun felt humiliating. He swallowed hard and still asked, "How much for the machine gun?" He had his eyes on that Type 95 machine gun. His squad already had 2 Type 81s, but no machine gun. If he could buy 1 back, it would be much safer when hunting large mutant beasts. He had looked impressive before, but in truth, hunting that black-furred mutant boar had been extremely dangerous. He was nearly gutted by the boar's tusks. Although they eventually killed it, the squad paid the price of 1 member's life. 5 tons. I'll throw in 2 spare drum magazines, but the bullets cost extra. Jiang Lusher raised 5 fingers. 5 tons. Fatty Yuan winced just hearing it. That Type 95 machine gun would be best used with a Type 95 rifle together, and he'd still need to buy a huge amount of ammo. The beast meat and crystal he brought probably weren't enough to even buy the gun alone. Even if he bargained a bit and got both guns, if he couldn't afford bullets afterward, how could he dare fire that machine gun? That thing eats bullets like water. Sure, if it killed a mutant beast, it'd pay for itself. But if it didn't, he'd be left starving. Even though it was a huge amount to spend at once, Fatty Yuan had ambitions. He wanted to grow his power, and a machine gun was essential. He picked up the cigar on the table, took several deep drags, and was just about to speak, when Boss Bai from the 7 Gods squad had already placed 2 mutant crystals on the table. 2 crystals here, equal to 8 tons of mutant meat. I'll buy 1 Type 95 rifle and 1 Type 95 machine gun. With the remaining ton of meat, I'll buy grenades and bullets. Also, I have one more condition: I want to trade a Type 81 for another Type 95 assault rifle. Boss Bai, dressed in a fur coat, stood up completely. His hand pressing on the crystals was heavy. Even as the black market's controller, putting out that kind of wealth wasn't easy. Only the 7 Gods squad could bring out 2 mutant crystals at once. And even then, it hurt them badly. Otherwise, Boss Bai wouldn't be trying to trade a Type 81 for another Type 95. Having a Type 95 rifle and machine gun formed a weapons family, increasing combat power. 1 rifle clearly wasn't enough for Boss Bai, but he couldn't bear to spend more, so he figured he'd trade the 81 for a 95, at least that he could handle. Jiang Lusher looked at Boss Bai, thin body wrapped in fur, wearing military boots, holding the leash of a beautiful woman crawling like a dog. He looked like a ruthless warlord. Maybe calling him a warlord was too much, but he was definitely a black-hearted boss. People like him were chaos makers, even in the apocalypse. Jiang Lushi knew well, bringing out so many guns today would inevitably make others envious. It might bring trouble, like getting ambushed on the way back. But Jiang Lushi wasn't worried. His fully bulletproof base vehicle was his trump card. He came to the black market to get mutant crystals. If he gave that up out of fear of robbery, how could that be? If someone comes with force, he'll fight back with force. If one comes, he'll kill one. If two come, he'll kill both. Deal. Jiang Lushi agreed immediately and pushed the Type 95 rifle and machine gun forward. 2 drum magazines, fully loaded, plus 2 grenades and a box of ammo. The deal was done. 2 mutant crystals landed in Jiang Lushi's hand. The cold mutant crystals had a hard shell. Under the light, they reflected a dazzling, rainbow-like glow, like the most perfect gemstones in the world. 2 of them. Getting 2 at once was a first for Jiang Lushi. With them, he could evolve the base vehicle or choose to configure gene evolution fluid to strengthen himself. Holding the crystals felt amazing. Jiang Lushi was very excited inside, squeezing the crystals tightly in his right hand, feeling their texture in his palm. But on the surface, he didn't show a hint of excitement. He appeared mysterious and calm, like someone used to great wealth. And really, he didn't even need to pretend. Someone who could bring out a dozen guns definitely had great wealth. Take them. Jiang Lushi casually handed the mutant crystals to Ing. This scene made people stare. Holy crap, he just handed over something that valuable to that flower vase of a woman. Ing accepted the crystals and, without needing Jiang Lushi to speak, walked out. No one knew where she was going. She walked once around the base vehicle outside. Without even entering it, she returned. As the base vehicle's manager, she could store items in the vehicle's storage space. Just like that, without anyone noticing, she stored the crystals in the base vehicle. The whole process felt like a magic trick. People guessed she had gone to hide the crystals, but no one could figure out how or where. All right, let's continue trading. Jiang Lushi let out a breath. Only in the base vehicle were mutant crystals truly safe. He didn't even dare carry them on his person, for fear of being robbed. I want the last Type 95, a submachine gun, and a grenade, Fatty Yuan said with a defeated expression. Just now, he had worked up a lot of courage, his palms were sweaty, but in the end, the machine gun was snatched by Boss Bai. Fatty Yuan was heartbroken but could do nothing. Settling for second best, he decided to buy a Type 95 rifle. After all, he didn't have the resources for more. Everyone saw Fatty Yuan's behavior. In their impression, Fatty Yuan had always been a nouveau riche, spending mutant beast meat lavishly. But now, watching him smoke that cigar like he wished he could finish it in 3 puffs, they were all reminded again of just how valuable these 3 bags of weapons were. I'll take that traded back Type 81, the semi-auto Type 56, 2 Type 54 pistols, 300 rounds of ammo, and 3 grenades. A bald middle-aged man and a skinny guy pooled a mutant crystal to buy those items. There was still some value left over in the crystal, so others quickly joined in to split it. Soon, with people forming small groups or going solo, most of the weapons Jiang Lushi had brought were sold off. Now, Jiang Lushi had only 1 submachine gun, 3 pistols, and 2 grenades left. And in his hands, he had gained 4 mutant crystals. 4 mutant crystals, that was equal to everything he had earned through hard fighting before. Once used, these mutant crystals would bring a huge leap in both Jiang Lushi's personal strength and the combat ability of his base vehicle. And Jiang Lushi didn't even lack the metal required to upgrade the vehicle. The base vehicle's storage space already held 100 tons of metal, saving the entire collection process. As long as he had the crystals, he could immediately enhance combat strength. Little brother, you're really something. Big sister is jealous, the beautiful 30-year-old woman who had been sitting next to Jiang Lushi said in a sweet voice. Jiang Lushi glanced at her. He didn't particularly like this overly familiar woman who always called herself Big Sister and others Little Brother, but he still smiled and said, I've got enough mutant crystals. The remaining guns and grenades aren't worth crystals anymore. I'll sell them for mutant meat. 1 ton for the submachine gun, 500 kilograms for the remaining 3 pistols. In this black market, not many people wanted pistols. With the police station around, pistols weren't scarce, especially the Type 64, which was too weak and often mocked as a pop gun or starter pistol. No one really wanted to sell or buy those. Only the Type 54 still had a market. 500 kilograms was about the going rate for a Type 54. As for the submachine gun, although weaker than a rifle, it was fine for shooting zombies, but much less effective against mutant beasts. The seductive woman giggled, Big Sister is broke. I didn't bring much mutant meat this time, and I still have to buy a Type 81 and several hundred rounds of ammo from Boss Bai. But I really want your submachine gun and grenades. Though less powerful, the submachine gun had one big advantage: it used pistol ammo. In the apocalypse, due to its lower power, pistol ammo was much cheaper than the highly demanded rifle rounds. Jiang Lushir had sold most of his weapons, but the trading fair wasn't over. Others still had items to sell. Many people still had things they wanted to buy or sell. Jiang Lushir was no exception. He also had things to buy, related to his base vehicle's evolution, but he didn't think he would find them at this fair. The squad leaders in the room began taking out what they had for sale. But compared to what Jiang Lushir had brought out, everything else looked underwhelming. The items at the central table were somewhat better, but the squads at the 4 smaller tables had very ordinary things. Combat knives, bulletproof vests, military tents, many of these items didn't even attract a single buyer. Jiang Lushir took a liking to 2 tri-edged military spikes and bought them on the spot, one for himself and one for Ying. As for his sister, Jiang Zhuiying, she preferred her special chain blade. That weapon wasn't cheap, the high-strength chain alone cost more than a rifle to make. He played with the spike in his hand. It felt heavy and solid. The refined blued finish made it hard to put down. If stabbed into someone, it would cause a massive bleeding wound, and even inject air into the body. Truly a deadly weapon. At that moment, Jiang Lushir noticed that nearly every squad had taken out items for trade, except the seductive woman.